entertaining even without the streamer. This is not a luxury that you can afford. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, there's a couple people watching this that are telling themselves, I only watch small streamers, okay? Get off your high horse. Because watching small streamers is also bad. No, hear me out. Some small streamers are bad examples. You'll see a small streamer, you'll feel like they're comfortable, you'll feel like they're nice, you'll love the vibe, you'll love what you see, and you'll be like, wow, I want to be exactly like this person. But then you do it, and then you become exactly like them, and you realize, wow, it sucks. Why does it suck? It looked amazing from my point of view. So grass is always greener and all that. First of all, small streamers are not doing as well. Most of the time, small streamers are not doing as well as you might think. Same thing for small YouTubers. Another thing is they might be stuck in some weird plateau or some weird limbo. They might not want to get out of it, but you starting to basically emulate what they did makes you fall into that trap. Now you're stuck in a weird niche that just doesn't have any growth. Now, if that's what you want, then you're fine. You just accomplish your mission. Just stay at like a low viewer account forever, but you're comfortable, you're happy. That's a good thing. But if not, if you actually want to have a career and actually, feed yourself, make a living, make more than a living, you may not want to follow those footsteps, is what I'm saying. I hate making negative videos like that. It feels like so negative. I want to give you hope. I will. Keep watching, please. Another bad thing is the community. All right, so community is great. You get to be part of something big, totally human thing to feel, right? But here's the thing. There's a huge thing with appearances in communities. People who are perceived as like leaders or important people in said community. Again, just like the small and even the big streamers, those people are not doing as well as you might think. Once you find yourself in their position, you're like, wow, this sucks. But also a lot of people are faking stuff. Like in the streaming community, a lot of people are faking like their whole lifestyle. So you look up to them and you think, wow, I want to be exactly like them. And you realize, no, this actually sucks. I would not want to be exactly like them. Or you just don't know what they deal with off screen. They don't even have to be fake. Some people just deal with major stuff that you wouldn't want to deal with offline because of their career, and it would be a deal breaker for you. But in general, any community is going to have myths, bad habits, weird folklore, and it's really hard to cater to a community if you cannot have an objective point of view. If you can't join a community, see everything that's good with it, but also see the bad and be able to criticize it, be able to make it even better, be able to solve a couple of problems that they're having. I know the Twitch community has a lot of those. The Twitch community is basically ran on weird folklore and myths and bad habits. And the problem is when you're too deep within that community, you will not be able to find out who's in it for the same purposes as you, right? If your goal is, I make my videos for people who want growth, who want a career, who want to make a living, more than a living and all that. Even though I know a lot of you watching do it as a hobby, nothing wrong with trying to be better at your hobby. Just don't complain to me. If you play badminton on the weekend with your friends, nothing wrong with watching like a professional competition and try to, take some advice from them. But within any community, any niche, you realize that a lot of people are mostly cosplaying as that specific thing. They're not necessarily here for the growth. They're not necessarily here to be creative. They're not necessarily here to do any of the things that you are passionate about. Most of them are just, sounds bad, but most of them are just pretending. Most of them just love the attention and they are completely fine doing it without any effort for the longest time ever. And then, I don't know, in a couple of years, they'll quit and they'll be like, wow, the world is unjust. That's why I didn't blow up. It's definitely not my fault whatsoever. But since it's a cosplay competition, you will have a hard time figuring out who's real, who's not, who's in it for the same purpose as you. Because if you ask people, no one will be honest about it. No one will actually say, hey, I'm a content creator who absolutely hates creating content. I have a daytime job, even though I absolutely hate it and I'm miserable in it, I cannot see myself ever quitting it. And if I ever get fired, I'll just apply to another job. And that's how I want to live my life forever. No one will admit to that. But everyone is living that lifestyle actively and defending it and making sure that they stay that way. Just to be clear, I'm not criticizing people who have a day job. What I'm saying is that I make content for people who don't want to have a day job, who want to do full-time content creation. So when you're in a community and everyone is pretending that they want to also quit their day job and be a full-time content creator, and they speak as an authority figure in this industry, it can be quite misleading for people who don't have that same purpose. All right, let me try to be hopeful. Let me try to give you actual advice and be a little positive. Now we have to bring it back to the attachment thing. How to find the right balance between passion and business. right? How do I treat my business with passion? And I think the first step to that is recognize that you have this drive to express yourself creatively. That is so important for you to recognize. Because I know people, when I tell them, what kind of content are you going to make? They give me that, I have ADHD, I am interested in so many things, I can't pick one. Well, your day job makes you pick one, and you do it just fine every day for years, right? So you can do it. Look, you've proven to yourself that you can do it. But at the same time, I would never tell you, hey, do not express yourself creatively. I would be such a hypocrite if I did that. I just want you to know that you can express yourself creatively. Just don't do it in a way that will hinder your growth or your career as a content creator. For example, I started this channel that you're watching right now doing one of the stupidest strategies for a Twitch streamer. It's like, oh, I'm going to stream on Twitch. I'm just going to post my clips on YouTube, or I'm going to post my full VODs unedited on YouTube. That is content, right? That is smart, right? Or I'm going to edit my even edited VODs. Every Twitch streamer thinks about this at least once. It's bad, don't do it. But at the same time, I was learning about Twitch. So when I made my first tutorial and I saw that it worked, I was like, maybe I should do more. So I started doing more. All of my tutorials were getting like a lot of views compared to my Twitch compilations, because now I can say duh, but back then I didn't know, right? But I persisted. Every time I would post like a tutorial, I would also post like, hey, here's me playing Overwatch, and just no one would care. But I wanted to express myself. I wanted a place for my Overwatch compilations, right? What I should have done is immediately stop doing it, open up like a new channel, or just open a separate channel for Twitch tutorials, right? I am passionate about Twitch tutorials. I am passionate about graphic design. I am passionate about teaching people how to do all that stuff, marketing. So that is one of my passions. I just needed a separate channel and really focus on it. Even tech reviews that totally has to do with, Twitch and content creation and all that. At some point, I realized, hey, my tech review videos are not doing as well as the rest of my videos. I should make a separate channel. And I did, and they're doing better now. So basically what I'm saying is that I want you to express yourself creatively. I want you to basically pick something or even try out a couple of things. If something looks like it's gonna be serious and it's gonna work and all that, I would say just go on with that thing and then also express yourself creatively. You can try combining things, but usually like if you have one channel where you do something, the chances of finding a target audience that loves one thing plus another thing plus another thing is like infinitely slimmer than just the one thing. And that is something that I'm still suffering from. My channel is still suffering from this. To this day, I make Discord tutorials, and I make Discord tutorials for live streamers. The problem is that a lot of people followed me because they just want to learn about Discord. They are not content creators. They are not live streamers. They are just people who love hanging out in Discord. So content creation requires passion. It doesn't mean that every single one of your passions need to be content. Okay. Something else is money versus attention. Content creation is something that usually brings you attention. And some people like the attention more than they like the money. And that's completely fine. You just need to be honest with yourself. We talk about streamers that are basically in limbo forever, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and then they end up quitting. Usually those are people who love the attention more than they like the money, because money usually requires hard work. Because if money was easy to get, then, everyone would be rich. The thing that is the easiest to get is attention. So people just do the bare minimum, or they do just the easy stuff, and they get the attention, and internally they're actually satisfied. The sun is getting real low. So you don't have to find a preference. You don't have to find, what do I prefer, money or attention? You just need to know exactly what you are doing, when it's for attention or is it for money. That's it. I'm not gonna lie, every single action that you do, you kind of have to evaluate it. Am I doing this for it? Again, that comes usually with the creative expression, because that's something that usually is the same thing as wanting attention. A big example of that is if you ask anyone who wants to start doing YouTube and you tell them, hey, what do you want to do? One of the most popular answers is, I want to do vlogs. I want to do vlogs, because it sounds like you can just put anything you want in a vlog. And I get that. Vlogs used to be very popular like 5-6 years ago. That was a huge thing. Remember Shay Carl, Tana Monjo, I think used to do vlogs. It's just lifestyle content, and it's much more difficult to get like a vlog going, especially like when you're not famous, when you don't have famous friends, when you can't collaborate with people who are already established. And let's be honest, when you're not like uber rich or practicing an activity that is super rare. Hey, this is me, I live in a van and I'm gonna go across Europe, but also I happen to be really good at editing and cinematography. To me, it's just usually people who want to express themselves. And that's completely fine. Open up like a separate account where you just vent, talk to the camera and all that. But if you're trying to make this the business, like, what are you doing? Is that a good idea? Is that a smart business idea? I'm just gonna pour everything and see what sticks, and nothing will stick. Meanwhile, one of your passions is anime and you can't shut up about it. You would have a YouTube channel where you're making like top 5 lists of animes or tier lists of anime. And yeah, in about a year, you would be richer than both your parents combined. But you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to do that. Nah, that sounds too bad. That sounds like it takes work, and some days you would wake up and you would not feel like doing it. And guess what? With this job, a lot of the days you wake up and you don't feel like doing something, you actually get to not do it, unlike your real job. When it comes to the community stuff, my solution, my advice is to be selective, be very, very selective. Don't come in thinking, I'm just gonna make a bunch of friends. You need to come in and want to make a bunch of acquaintances. You know, you can come in and you show up in a cult. You have to figure out who's gonna be your friend and who's gonna snitch on you, who's gonna backstab you, who's gonna basically trying to get you as a sacrifice to the leader. You can't come in and be like, wow, I'm you, I'm part of you. Even if it's a very, very human thing to want to do it with your hobby. Don't mix that in your business. But again, if you want to cater to that community, you need to know like how they are as a target audience. You need to understand what they like, what they dislike, what they're polarized on. And that's the best way for you to serve them. To serve them entertainment, to serve them advice, to serve them whatever it is that you do. Touchy subject is, for example, the VTuber community. When I have friends that are VTubers that are telling me what's holding me back as a content creator, as a VTuber, is my avatar is cheap. And I'm like, how much was your avatar? And they're like, $500. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, but the big ones, the big VTubers, they have $10,000 avatars, right? And I'm like, hey, I don't really watch VTubers, but if I'm starting to watch VTubers, I really don't care what they look like, as long as they don't just look like everyone else. But those people are so deep into the community and trying to cater to that community that the bad thing, the weird judgmental gatekeepy stuff, they still try to cater to it. So they think this is holding me back because I can't cater to them if I don't cater to this very, very bad perspective that they have. Instead of saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna be a VTuber, but I'm gonna be a VTuber that any normies can relate to. I don't know, instead of doing an anime voice and doing the uwu stuff, I'm gonna be a normal VTuber and I'm gonna cater to like the general public. Maybe I'll make content where I explain to normies what a VTuber is or how I do my stuff. This might be more interesting. And guess what? If you do this, you actually have access to a larger audience. I'm speculating, okay? I'm speculating. But you can become the biggest VTuber by not catering to the VTuber community. VTubers, don't come for me. I know you guys are rabid. This is just an example. This is just a theory. It's the same for any community, really. When it comes to YouTubers, people say stuff like commentary or reaction content is bad. Oh no, that's lazy content. I wouldn't want to do lazy content. And then the people who are like, lazy content? What are you talking about? Put up a reaction channel. Now, the morals of reaction channels, I don't want to talk about it, but basically I've seen people go from having a shitty day job to basically buying a house by just putting in the work. And that's just because they could see that community with an objective point of view. You produce, and then other people consume. If you become a consumer, it's going to be really, really hard for you to figure out what to produce. Looking at my notes, I think I said that before, but get a hobby. Like straight up, content creation is passion plus business if you do it seriously, if it's not just a hobby. But if you want to do it seriously and actually see results and actually make a living off of it, the sun is almost completely down. Get a hobby, straight up, do things. This creative expression I was telling you about, do it on the side. There's nothing wrong with that. I love virtual reality. I do 3D printing. I'm getting into woodworking. What else? I make music. I love photography. I love playing different kinds of video games. I love brainstorming business ideas. None of that is really part of my career. Sometimes I'll put a little bit here and there, but if my channel included all of that, most likely you wouldn't be watching right now. Well, you wouldn't be subscribed right now. By the way, subscribe if you haven't yet. So get a hobby. Get a hobby. Sometimes I make a tutorial or I make one of those videos. Probably this one is probably gonna flop really hard. And then tomorrow I won't feel like recording another one because I'll be like, oh, it's only gonna flop, blah, blah, blah. Mentally, I'm exhausted. I don't wanna be burnt out. Guess what I do? I just go and practice one of my hobbies. I have fun. There's no pressure. I get to decompress and then I can get back to work. I'm still passionate about what I do here. It just doesn't encompass all of my passions because that would be unhealthy on top of being bad for business. All right, 2 final words. 1, it's not that serious. Because I know I'm kind of telling you, hey, take it seriously. It's so serious. It is not. It is really, really not. Again, we're dealing with art and entertainment. You get to be creative. Even if you don't get to do everything you want to do, at the end of the day, you still get to set the tone and set the pace. So be easy on yourself, be easy on your craft, understand it, do things right, but don't take it too seriously. I've seen people like who are like rabid in other people's DMs being like, dude, I'm trying to network with you. What? I'm trying to network with you. What are you doing? What are you doing? Just watch other people's streams, and if you vibe with them, become friends or just be present. Just enjoy yourself. Or people who do things that are completely different than what I do. Dude, let's collab. Let's collab. Like, you just started streaming. Let's do a collab stream. You barely know OBS. Let's do a collab stream. Come on, man. And before the sun goes completely down, another thing is you're a superstar. I mean it. You're a superstar. We are talking about art, entertainment, being a public figure. You are a superstar. So start acting like one, right? This whole self-deprecating humor or self-deprecating everything, it needs to stop. You might think of yourself that way, but stop expressing it. Because you repeat something over and over and over again, you start believing it, but also other people start believing it. How can we believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? It's okay for you not to believe in yourself, but you don't have to say it every 2 sentences. I suck, I'm dumb, I'm not this, I'm not that. You're a superstar. If you are on my screen, you're a superstar. Congrats. I'm watching you, I'm entertained by you, I kind of look up to you, I want to hang out with you. That's how people view you. It doesn't matter how you look, it doesn't matter how you sound. Oh, I hate my voice. Well, too bad. There's people sitting in your chat, they don't mind your voice. So we don't care what you dislike about yourself. We like it. Give it to us. But yeah, sometimes it helps to think like that, to give you kind of a boost, is that, okay, I might dislike this part of myself right now, but at least people are enjoying it. And this is part of wanting to entertain. This is how you know that you love like live streaming or creating content. I absolutely hate that I have to record myself in those lighting conditions, but I got a couple compliments about it. And also, in the grand scheme of things, I know it doesn't really matter. You're not gonna be like, ew, I'm not gonna watch this video because because the sun is going down. The subject of the video, the content of the video is still the same. If anything, hey, this is kind of a funny thing that's happening. Makes it more engaging. So, in conclusion, you little superstar, I want you to go out there. I want you to make me proud. I really want you to subscribe. And I want to say, Gael Level out.
The bunny receptionist took out 5 beginner-level skills that mages can learn, telling Zhang Li that he could choose some that he liked. The first was Level D slowness technique that cost 600,000 flame dragon coins. Except for it, all 4 were Level D ice arrow technique, similarly costing 600,000 flame dragon coins. Seeing the price, Zhang Li was amazed, thinking, looks like my classmate. She was a little surprised to see Zhang Li there. Suddenly her attendant called her saying, "Miss, everything is ready." Hearing that, she left. On the other hand, the bunny receptionist took Zhang Li to the Golden Dragon Treasury Library. He asked her that since he needed basic mage class skills, did she have any recommendations? The bunny receptionist took out 5 beginner-level skills that mages can learn, telling Zhang Li that he could choose some that he liked. The first was Level D slowness technique that cost 600,000 flame dragon coins. Except for it, all 4 were Level D ice arrow technique, similarly costing 600,000 flame dragon coins. Seeing the price, Zhang Li was amazed, thinking, looks like my 1 million isn't really that much. He understood that for now, he could only buy some low-level ones for transition. Currently, Zhang Li knew Fireball, Arc Lightning, and Ice Arrow, so his both single target and AoE attacks were covered, and he also had light armor technique for defense. So, he chose Level D slowness technique as a control skill, thinking that although he had Arc Lightning which has a paralysis effect, the duration is too short. He bought the Slowdown technique. Slowdown technique is a level 10 spell with a cooldown of 1 second, chanting time 0.4 seconds, and duration of 2 seconds. Its effect is that it can apply a slowdown buff to the target, and the slowdown effect is linked to the user's level. But it doesn't matter to Jiang Li because when he learned it, the skill level increased to max level. Jiang Li also needed to solve the problem of mana limit, so he decided to buy some supplies with the remaining money. He asked the receptionist if they sold blue potions or similar items there. And just like that, Jiang Li spent all his 1 million coins. On the other hand, in the reception room of Golden Dragon Treasure Store, the manager personally welcomed Jiang Li's classmate, Mo Qing. She is a very high-status lady of society. Scared of her status, the manager told Mo Qing that the information has been gathered. There indeed is a black iron tier dungeon appearing in the Gale Plains. But the entrance is uncertain, so they need to spend some more time searching. Mo Qing's personality is a little bossy. She told the manager that it's okay. As long as the entrance is in the Gale Plains, she will personally take people to search tomorrow. Well, she was talking about business, but all her attention was on the person she just saw in the hall. She was wondering if she saw it wrong because she heard Jiang Li's awakening ceremony went wrong, and he ended up just an ordinary mage, so it shouldn't be possible for him to appear here. While she was thinking this, her butler noticed it and asked her what she was thinking about. She got surprised that her butler noticed her. Embarrassed, Mo Qing told him that it's nothing. The butler told her that if she can clear this dungeon, her level will definitely skyrocket. Reaching Black Ear Entire probably won't be a problem, and by the time of the trial competition in a week, she will definitely be able to surpass Miss Li from the Li family. Hearing that, Mo Qing got very happy. She told the butler there is no time to waste. She asked him to gather Mo Da and the others over here. She will lead them into the dungeon herself when the time comes. Later, at the Gale Plains which Mo Qing was talking about, 2 Gale Wolves were chasing Jiang Li. He attacked them using the Lightning Arc spell. This attack hit both of the Gale Wolves, and both of them lost half their health and were paralyzed. Jiang Li was surprised to see that with the increase in level, the damage of magic has also become higher. He thought that now, if he goes to fight goblins again, Arc Lightning should be able to one-shot them. While he was thinking that, suddenly another Gale Wolf attacked him from behind, aiming for his neck. But to his surprise, that Gale Wolf's teeth broke down after hitting Jiang Li's light armor. He had already cast the light armor spell for this moment. Seeing that this chase is endless, Jiang Li started running again, and those wolves chased him. Suddenly, he looked back and attacked a Gale Wolf with the Lightning Arc spell. But right before that spell hit the Gale Wolf, it moved to his side and dodged it. Jiang Li was surprised to see that these Gale Wolves can actually dodge his Arc Lightning. He thought, since that's the case, then he will use his new spell. Jiang Li cast his newly learned spell, Slowdown Technique. Suddenly, a purple magic circle appeared beneath those Gale Wolves, slowing their movements. Seeing it, Jiang Li said, "Is this the max-level slowdown technique? Fast casting speed, no trajectory, and the enemy can't dodge." He was very surprised, but it can only be cast on a single target, so using it 3 times in a row is a bit extravagant. Jiang Li knows that he needs to deal with other Gale Wolves before others arrive. Then, a moment later, after killing them, Jiang Li drinks a bottle of blue potion to recover his health and mana. It was a good thing he bought some supplies at the Golden Dragon Treasury yesterday. With that, today's monster grinding efficiency is much higher. Currently, Jiang Li is at level 11. At the moment, he was hiding behind a road, thinking about how he should deal with this elite monster. The monster he was aiming for is a level 20 Bloodline Wolf, triple in size compared to normal Gale Wolves. So, Jiang Li decided to make a surprise attack. He hid behind the rock, and when the Bloodline Wolf was not looking, he attacked it with the Lightning Arc spell. When the Bloodline Wolf was in a paralyzed state, Jiang Li jumped from the rock and attacked it using the Fireball spell, saying, "He will take out the mother." There was a huge explosion there, and a system notification came confirming that he successfully attacked the weak spot, making it a critical hit. The Bloodline Wolf was in bad shape, and the other Gale Wolves had already died. Jiang Li said, "Now it's 1 versus 1. Suddenly, that injured Bloodline Wolf jumped to attack him. But Jiang Li used the slowdown spell on it, telling it to behave itself. The slowdown curse tied down the Bloodline Wolf, completely restricting its movement. The Bloodline Wolf cannot reach Jiang Li, who was standing right in front of him. Looking at it, Jiang Li said that although he doesn't know where the weak spot of the Bloodline Wolf is, one thing is certain. He cast the Fireball spell and said, "It's hairy, it's weak, and it's on fire." Seeing the Fireball, the Bloodline Wolf got very scared because it has already experienced it. Jiang Li successfully attacked its weak spot, making it a critical hit. After killing the Bloodline Wolf, he leveled up by 2 levels, currently at level 13. As the loot for killing the Bloodline Wolf, Zhang Li obtained a black iron dagger and a black iron ring. He was happy, thinking that although they are only black iron grade equipment, fortunately, they are small in size. So now it would be easy to carry around. He put them in his bag, wondering how much they can be sold for. While he was collecting the loot, suddenly the ground started to shake like crazy. Zhang Li was surprised to see the ground shaking like that. And before he could even understand the situation, suddenly he heard a noise. When he looked ahead, he saw a sandstorm coming his way. But upon closer inspection, he saw that it's not a sandstorm but rather a horde of monsters. Seeing that, Zhang Li was a little scared. While taking out a blue mana recovery potion, he said, "I just fought an elite monster. There's no need to retaliate against me like this, is there?" But before he could drink the recovery potion, those monsters reached him. Instead of attacking him, they all walked past him and ran behind. Zhang Li was very nervous, but he took a sigh of relief that they didn't come here for him. However, he again got shocked when he realized what this meant. He ran towards the main base area because he knows that wolves are pack animals, and only the Wolf King can summon such a large wolf pack. So, someone triggered the area boss. He runs there shouting that he can't let anyone else get to it first. That boss monster is his. On the other hand, in front of the boss monster's cave, some bandits have surrounded the red-haired girl, Vivi, and her party, who helped Zhang Li at the beginning of the story by giving him a mana recovery potion. From Yi Yi's party, only 3 people were alive, including her. The bald guy from her party was very angry at the bandits, saying, taking advantage of the situation, "What kind of heroes are you?" But those bandits, before saying anything, hit the other guy from their party. The bandit leader told the bald guy that although they are not really heroes, if he wants to blame anyone, blame himself for being too foolish to come to fight the boss so openly without any preparation. If they don't grab it, who will? All the bandits were aiming at them. The leader laughed, telling the bald guy that his equipment is theirs, and the Bloodstripe Wolf King is equally theirs. The bald guy and Yi Yi were too scared because from their party, only they were alive. The bald guy offers the bandits that he will give them both the equipment and the Bloodstripe Wolf King, so they should let them go. The bandit leader laughs, saying of course he will let them go. But the bald guy has to bring the priest behind to him. He was a pervert. He said that after he had his fun, he will naturally let them go. Vivi was scared, so, in hope, she called her captain, the bald guy. But the bald guy had already decided what he would do. He asked Yi Yi not to blame him, saying he also wants to live. He approached Vivi so that he could hand her over to the bandits and be safe. Vivi was too scared, telling the bald guy not to come near her. As the bald guy's hand reached her, Vivi started crying, begging for help. And right at that moment, those bandits were hit by a lightning strike. Everyone was shocked by what just happened. The bandit leader was too angry, asking who dares to attack them, who dares to ruin his good fortune. He sensed someone's presence from behind, so he pulled out his sword, asking the enemy to come out. Well, the one who attacked them with lightning was Zhang Li, our main character. He smiled, saying, "Bandits, it's not even dark yet, and you are out robbing. You're so dedicated." Zhang Li readied the fireball spell to attack, but suddenly a bandit assassin attacked him from behind. Zhang Li looked back and attacked that assassin with fireball, saying, "I haven't finished speaking yet, so don't interrupt me." Seeing Zhang Li, the bald guy left Vivi and ran away, asking not to kill him. Vivi became too emotional when she saw that it's Zhang Li who came to help her. The bandit leader was too nervous, thinking if there are still allies standing because in a single strike, all his brothers were swiftly defeated. He understood that this opponent is too strong, but even after knowing all this, in the end, he still underestimated Zhang Li because he's merely a mage. The leader told the leftover bandits to attack Zhang Li together and not give him a chance to cast a spell. Annoyed, Jiang cast the fireball spell, asking, why does each one of them rush in so recklessly? Are they really so eager to die? He attacked them with the fireball and burned them alive. Seeing his fellow bandit brother's condition, the bandit leader got too scared. He couldn't understand how it is possible. It's merely a common mage's skill, yet why such a devastating impact? He threw his sword and got on his knees, saying, "My lord, this has all been a misunderstanding." Pointing at Vivi, he told Zhang Li to take her and leave because the Bloodrune Wolf King resides within the cave. Well, Zhang Li wasn't leaving him that easily. He cast the Ice Arrow spell, telling the leader that since he had chosen to attack Zhang, Then he should be prepared for Zhang's lethal retaliation. He shot the arrow, which killed the bandit leader. The dying bandit leader told Zhang Li that the Blood Wolf mercenaries wouldn't let him get away with this. Then, after killing all the bandits, Zhang Li collected all their equipment. He was happy, because now he could use so many skills in one breath. The level up brought a significant improvement. Vivi hesitated a little but approached Zhang Li and thanked him for saving her. She was a little embarrassed because she didn't expect him to be so powerful. She was worried about Zhang Li earlier. After packing up everything, Zhang told her that it's nothing. She had previously saved him as well, so now they were even. Then, before going into the boss monster's cave, he told her that he was about to go fight the boss. Did she want to come with him? Vivi hesitated at first, but seeing his power, she agreed. While Vivi was following Zhang Li, she thought he was amazing because he had just dealt with those thugs a moment ago, and now he was going to challenge the boss. She thought that Zhang Li's age didn't seem considerable. Could it be that he possessed some powerful and concealed class? Then, when both of them entered the cave, they saw the boss monster, a level 25 Blood Rune Wolf King, sleeping there. They hid behind a rock to observe it. Vivi thought that currently, she was only at level 20. She had just reached Black Iron rank not long ago. So, was it possible for only the two of them to kill the boss? She was worried looking at Zhang Li, who seemed ready to attack the boss monster with the fireball spell. Seeing her worried, Zhang Li ran towards the boss monster and attacked it using fireball, telling her that they wouldn't know until they tried. When his fireball hit the boss monster, there was a huge explosion. Seeing that there was no critical hit indicator, Zhang Li thought, is the Wolf King not vulnerable to fire? The boss monster awakened and roared loudly, saying, "Intruder, meet your end." From Zhang Li's fireball attack, the boss monster only lost a little bit of its health. Seeing that, Zhang Li confirmed one thing. Although the Wolf King showed no weakness to fire, it seemed he didn't have magic resistance either. When the Wolf King attacked, Zhang Li dodged his attack and started casting Slowdown spell, thinking he should be capable of managing this. But before Zhang Li's spell could tie down the Wolf King, it jumped, and after escaping, it again attacked Zhang Li with very fast speed. Zhang's light armor stopped the Wolf King's attack and saved him. Seeing it, Zhang admitted that it's truly a boss. Zhang's shield nearly shattered, and even after casting the slow spell, its agility remained remarkable. Zhang Li knows that he needs to take action, so he aims at the Wolf King with his ice arrow. Vivi, who was a priest, cast her magic at Zhang Li, telling him that she would enhance his magical offensive power. After being enhanced, Zhang Li attacked the Wolf King, but the Wolf King easily dodged it, and seeing that, Vivi was shocked. But Zhang Li was aiming for it to dodge it and let down its guard. Then, he changed the ice arrow's trajectory and hit the back of the Wolf King's neck. A system notification came that Zhang Li had successfully struck a vulnerable spot, resulting in a critical hit. With that, the Wolf King lost most of its health, and only a little bit remained. Zhang Li told the Wolf King that he learned this technique from bosses like him. Now Zhang Li knows that the vulnerability of the wolf beast lies within its neck. As the Wolf King was not in good health, it roared loudly, and an annoying red aura came out of its body. Vivi told Zhang Li to watch out because the boss monster was going berserk, and suddenly many small gale wolves came out from behind to fight. Zhang Li was surprised to see those ruffians from earlier. Now he understands that this boss has the ability to summon lesser creatures. Seeing that the Blood Rune Wolf King has the ability to summon lesser creatures, Zhang Li gets ready to use his fireball spell. Vivi comes to assist him with her support magic. She tells Zhang to be careful and assists in slowing down gale wolves and replenishing Zhang Li's mana. As Zhang moves forward, all the gale wolves attack him from all directions. Zhang attacks them with his fireball spell. There is a huge explosion, and in that, most of the Blood Rune Wolf King's summoned gale wolves died, leaving behind only experience points. Zhang gains 20 experience points per gale wolf he kills. With Zhang Li's attack, the confined space of this cavern is revealed. Zhang smiles because now he knows that summoning a multitude of minions has inadvertently restricted the Blood Rune Wolf King's innate agility. Zhang calls the Blood Rune Wolf King, telling him that if he uses that skill once more, Zhang may temporarily spare his life. The Blood Rune Wolf King gets angry to hear that. He again roars and summons many lesser creatures to fight. Right after those gale wolves are summoned, Zhang Li jumps to attack them using his fireball spell, saying the right moment has come. After killing this batch of gale wolves, Zhang Li levels up. Currently, he is level 14. As time passes, Zhang Li continues killing the Gale Wolves and obtaining 20 experience points. Vivi also gains 10 experience points because she was Zhang's teammate at the moment. Vivi is very exhausted because she was continuously supporting Zhang Li with her magic as he was fighting the Gale Wolves for so long. After fighting for so long, Zhang again levels up and becomes level 15. He drinks a recovery potion, then asks the Blood Rune Wolf King to, let's go again. He casts his Ice Arrows spell to fight, saying if he knew the boss had such abilities, why would he waste his time on lesser monsters? The Blood Rune Wolf King is very exhausted because it was continuously using its power to summon the lesser monsters. It was very shocked that all his minions vanished just like that. Seeing that the Blood Rune Wolf King is unable to summon more monsters, Zhang Li asks if this is his limit. Zhang sighs in disappointment because there is nothing he can do about it. Then he attacks the Blood Rune Wolf King with ice arrows, saying he will just have to reluctantly accept your last bit of value. Seeing the ice arrows coming its way, the Blood Rune Wolf King calls Zhang Li a devil. Before its death, the Blood Rune Wolf King cries for the first time in his life, saying Zhang is nothing but a devil. When it dies, suddenly Vivi gets a notification that she has leveled up. Now Vivi is level 21. She is surprised because even the search function she has leveled up. Zhang Li also levels up and becomes level 16. He gained 3 levels here and got lots of good loot. He is very happy with his win. It was very surprising for Vivi to see someone actually using the boss's summoning skill for experience. She starts to wonder who's the real boss here. When Jiang was collecting the loot, he asks Vivi to come here for a second. He gives her a wand as her share. Vivi is very shocked that it's for her, but she tells Jiang that she didn't do anything. So how can she accept it? Jiang tells her to accept it because didn't she help him restore his mana and increase his magic damage? This makes her an excellent support. He tells Vivi that if they encounter any danger, he will need her assistance. Hearing Zhang Li praise Vivi, she starts to blush. She accepts the wand, saying, all right, support is my duty. From Zhang Li's words, it seems she is quite important to him, and this makes Vivi very happy. Then both of them start heading out. On the way, Zhang Li suddenly remembers that the boss just dropped 2 skill books, and he forgot to check the effects. He remembers they're called Lightness Spell and Swamp Womp Spell. With Jiang's skill effect, both of those skill books' level has maxed out. By checking the system, Jiang finds out that the Lightness Spell technique can increase one's movement speed. Now Zhang Li understands how the Wolf King could still move after his slowdown spell. The other skill, Swamp Spell, can ensnare multiple enemies at once. Zhang Li decides to try it when he gets the chance. While he was lost in his thoughts and was walking ahead, suddenly Vivi noticed something and called Jiang to take a look at it. The thing Vivi saw was Ghost Orchid, a purple-colored health herb. Vivi told Jiang Li that though it's not much use to professionals, for ordinary people, it's a top-grade medicinal herb that can cure all kinds of diseases, so they can make a fortune selling this. Vivi tames one and gives one to Jiang Li for his perfect herb. He thanked her and told her that his mother is an ordinary person. Years of hard work have left her with many chronic illnesses. So with this, he hopes to ease her pain a bit. Vivi was happy to hear that. But suddenly, she noticed something. Pointing at the wall behind, she asked Zhang Li to look quickly. That rock wall is glowing. After seeing that, Zhang Li notices there seems to be something inside. He gets ready to use the fireball spell, telling Vivi to step back a bit. He explodes that wall with his fireball spell. After that wall was destroyed, what comes to light is very shocking. Behind that dungeon wall is a dungeon secret realm. Zhang Li gets a system notification that he has discovered a level 25 Black Iron level dungeon secret realm. They discovered one of the 2 Dark Altar entrances. Its difficulty is hard, and entry is limited to professionals level 23 and below. 2 to 6 players can go in at one time. Vivi tells Jiang Li that it looks dangerous, so should they go back and prepare first, as long as they know the entrance's location. Before she could complete her words, Jiang Li intervened, saying, no way. He told Vivi that if she feels it's dangerous, she can go back first, but if she is willing to follow him, then don't worry. He is here, and he will protect her. Vivi was very impressed with Jiang Li because what he said is good to hear. Vivi also got confident and agreed, saying she will do her best, and if they run into danger, she will buy Jiang Li time. With that, they entered the dungeon secret realm of Dark Altar. Their mission is to stop the Dark Mage Garubi's ritual. Hearing that it's a dark mage, Jiang Li realized that there's a high chance of dropping equipment related to mages. He runs fast, imagining what could be the loot, leaving behind Vivi. But suddenly, He saw something and grabbed Vivi's hand and hid behind a tree. Surprised, Vivi asked Jiang Li what happened all of a sudden. He asked her to look in front. Right in front of them was a level 20 skeleton knight riding a skeleton horse. Seeing that, Jiang Li realized that this dungeon is indeed not simple. Even the regular monsters are level 20. He smiled, saying the rewards from this dungeon must be extraordinary. Little did he know that right behind them 3 skeleton knights are standing, glaring at them. The skeleton knights ran towards them, shouting, "Outsiders!" Both Jiang Li and Vivi were too shocked and looked back. The skeleton knights attacked them, shouting, "Outsiders! Who do you think you're spying on?" Fortunately, these skeleton monsters aren't very intelligent, so they haven't launched a direct attack. Otherwise, Jiang Li wouldn't have been able to react in time. Jiang Li decided to try out a new move. He used his D-level swamp spell. This forms a swamp area with a radius of 30 meters in front. Enemies caught in the swamp area will be immobilized with their movement speed reduced by 90%. When he used the spell, the ground in front of Jiang Li turned into swamp. Those skeleton knights started to sink in that swamp without doing much. They struggled to come out, but as much as they tried, they sank more. Taking that opportunity, Jiang Li cast his fireball spell and finished off those level 20 skeleton knights in one attack. The full range of the fully upgraded swamp spell is surprisingly large. Now, when facing multiple enemies, Jiang Li won't have to deal with them one by one. He got another spell to fight groups of enemies. Suddenly, they heard someone screaming for help. Vivi was surprised, asking what was that. Could someone be fighting a boss? Jiang Li said, "It seems that other intruders have disturbed the dark mage." He told Vivi to wait here. He will go check it out. The one who screamed for help was Mo Qing with her 2 knight bodyguards. They were surrounded by skeleton knights. So Mo Qing's bodyguards asked her to use the teleportation scroll right now. But Mo Qing hesitated because they hadn't even defeated a single wild monster. The bodyguard told her not to worry about that. Her safety is the top priority. Suddenly, a skeleton knight attacked them, and seeing it, that bodyguard got scared. But when that skeleton knight was about to attack that bodyguard, suddenly Jiang Li appeared in front of them. Jiang Li immediately cast his light armor spell that stopped the skeleton knight's scythe. Mo Qing was shocked to see Jiang Li there. When the bodyguard heard Jiang Li's name from the academy, he remembered that Jiang Li and their Miss Mo Qing were in the same class. Realizing that Jiang Li just awakened a few days ago, he underestimated him. He called Jiang Li a kid, telling him that these monsters are beyond his beginner-level abilities and they can't waste time worrying about his life. Jiang Li said thank you for your concern, but you don't need to trouble yourselves. He cast the fireball spell and attacked those skeleton knights. When his fireball hit those skeleton knights, they immediately died, leaving 40 experience points for him. With this, Jiang Li finished off those skeleton knights and leveled up again. He became level 17. Mo Qing's bodyguards were too shocked that Jiang Li defeated them all with just one move. Mo Qing admits that it's truly impressive, but Mo Qing's bodyguards don't want to admit that they were saved by a level 17 kid. They told Mo Qing that they can do that too. They told Jiang Li to leave now because he is in the way, but Mo Qing is now confirmed that it's really Jiang Li. She wasn't wrong about him earlier. Surprised, Jiang Li doesn't recognize her and asks if she knows him, but looking closely, he remembers that she is Mo Qing, the genius girl who is on par with Li Moen. Seeing her bodyguard, he asks her if she is here to level up too. He advises her that this dungeon is quite challenging, so be careful. Mo Qing's bodyguards get angry to hear Jiang Li advise them. They told Jiang Li not to get too cocky. They already weakened those monsters, and Jiang Li is just finishing the job they started. They told him that they are elite members of the Black Iron rank, so he doesn't need to worry about them. Seeing them behave like that, Jiang Li said if there's nothing else, he will go on his way. Well, he was thinking that these people struggle even with small monsters, so he understands that they probably won't be able to compete for boss loot with him. But Mo Qing asks Jiang Li to wait, saying, "Jiang Li, you are probably not Black Iron rank yet." Jiang Li doesn't understand why she is asking that, so he tells her that he is already level 17. It shouldn't take long. Mo Qing is too shocked that Jiang Li reached level 17 in just a few days and with such strength. She is very curious about how he pulled that off. She takes out a green pendant and tells Jiang Li that she actually has a favor to ask. Could he help her clear this dungeon? She takes out a yellow gem from that pendant, telling Jiang Li that the reward is this Black Iron promotion gem. It might be useful for him. Jiang Li starts to blush seeing the place she took out that pendant. He thought, is this pendant a storage item? It must be expensive. Well, he was looking at the pendant, I swear. But Mo Qing gets embarrassed when she sees him staring at her. She turns around and covers herself, asking Jiang if he could please stop staring at it. Jiang Li is confused because he doesn't have an idea what she is talking about. Well, Jiang Li knows that to reach Black Iron rank, one either needs to face the Black Iron trial or directly use the promotion gem. These are the two methods, but promotion gems are rare and costly, usually not worth using. But Jiang Li thought that considering his leveling speed, he will reach level 20 before the dungeon ends. So if he doesn't get promoted to Black Iron rank, the extra experience will go to waste. Thinking all that, Jiang Li said, Mo Qing, I can help you, but you'll need to ask them to leave first. I don't want to share the experience with too many people. When Mo Kung's bodyguards hear that, they get too angry, asking Jiang Li what did he say. They told him not to be so arrogant just because he is a little strong. Another bodyguard told Mo Qing that they won't let her follow this person. She knows that if this gets out that they were unable to protect their client, how can they continue as bodyguards? Mo Qing told them that it's boring being with them. She told them to leave now, saying it's an order. The male bodyguard said that since Mo Qing insists, they will leave, but she should at least let them test Jiang Li's strength first. He points his sword at Jiang Li, shouting, Show us what you've got. Let's see what you can do. Jiang Li smiles and makes a fireball, saying, Since you want to test me, then get ready, because I won't hold back. He makes that fireball very big, telling Mo Qing's bodyguard that his fireball might be slightly oversized, so they please bear with it for a brief moment. Seeing the size of the fireball, that bodyguard questions himself. Can a mere beginner-level mage conjure up such a fireball? As Jiang Li's fireball comes near, tears come to that bodyguard's eyes, knowing that this is the end. But right before hitting the bodyguard, Jiang Li stops his fireball, saying, Let's leave it at that. Let's call it quits here. He warns the bodyguards that if they still want to continue, he won't stop them. That bodyguard laughs and takes back his sword, saying, Jiang Li, your abilities are commendable, although slightly weaker than ours. Clearing such a dungeon shouldn't be a problem. Well, they don't want to show themselves weak, but inside they know they are lucky that Jiang Li didn't act. Otherwise, they might have been in real peril. They greet Mo Qing, saying, Miss, we will take our leave then. Take care of yourself. After they left, Jiang Li took Mo Qing to Vivi. While walking, Vivi told Jiang Li that she has waited for him for so long. She asks him to please take her with him next time because she was really scared. Jiang Li tells her he will try his best. Seeing Vivi being all touchy with Jiang Li, Mo Qing gets jealous. She is curious to know what their relationship is because she hasn't heard that Jiang Li has a girlfriend. Thinking all that, Mo Qing approaches Vivi first, saying, Sister, I'm still unsure of how to address you. My name is Mo Qing, and I'm in the same class as Jiang Li. Vivi smiles and asks Mo Qing to just call her Vivi. To Mo Qing, Vivi and Jiang Li seem quite close, and that makes her jealous. So she hugs him from behind, saying, Jiang Li, I have something to discuss with you. Vivi is surprised by Mo Qing's sudden behavior. Mo Qing asks him that she has heard his awakening process was somewhat troubled. Jiang Li says yes. I'm merely an ordinary mage, but it's not like you have to be a special profession to become strong, right? He tells Mo Qing. He has his own way to get strong. Then a moment later, Jiang Li, using his lightness spell, moves very fast, and with a fireball spell, he starts killing the skeleton knights. As he was getting many experience points from killing the level 20 skeleton knights, he again levels up and becomes level 18. Mo Qing and Vivi were watching from the bushes, amazed to see him. Mo Qing asks Vivi, has Jiang Li always been like this? Vivi tells her that it startled her at first as well when she saw him fight. Mo Qing was very curious because from what she can see, all the skills Jiang Li uses are beginner level, so why is he so strong? While they were thinking all that, suddenly, a level 27 skeleton knight commander comes there. He looks very powerful as he was emitting a very dark aura. Jiang Li was surprised to see that this dungeon has other bosses. He casts Swamp Spell, and that skeleton knight commander, and all the other skeleton knights start to sink in that swamp. Jiang Li was confident, saying, no matter how many come, it's all the same. As long as I use control skills well, these skeletons are no threat to me. But it was a mistake from Jiang's side. He should not underestimate his enemies. The skeleton knight commander uses his skill, and suddenly, The shadow of the skeleton knight commander's horse comes out of its body and directly hits Jiang Li in the stomach. Jiang Li goes flying and hits a tree behind with a solid impact. Both Vivi and Mo Qing are shocked to see that because Jiang Li got hit, his swamp spell disappears, and the skeleton knight commander and other skeleton knights get free from it. They run towards Vivi and Mo Qing to attack. Vivi tells Mo Qing to go save Jiang Li while she distracts them. Even though Mo Qing is so scared, she still wants to fight the skeleton knight commander. Suddenly, an ice arrow comes and hits the skeleton knight commander. It was Jiang Li. Seeing him, Mo Qing asks if he is all right. Well, it was a good thing. The lightness spell that Jiang Li cast before hadn't ended yet. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been just a minor injury. Jiang Li didn't expect that the skeleton knight commander would have long-range attack methods. Seeing him injured, Vivi comes to heal him using her spell. Without wasting time, those skeleton knights with their commander attack Jiang, and his party, who is a priest, starts praying. The glow of holy light, bless my allies, shroud the enemy in vulnerability, intensify our assault, she said. With her power, a huge holy light appeared in the sky. In front of her spell, those skeleton knights were unable to approach them. Mo Qing told Jiang Li that this is the perfect moment to use group attack magic. Jiang Li said he got it and uses the lightning arc spell. His lightning arc spell becomes more powerful and hits all the skeleton knights and their commander. Jiang Li was too shocked to see that the damage has increased. Vivi was surprised to see the blessing of holy light. She explains that this blessing allows allies within its range to inflict holy attribute damage, and it afflicts the enemy with vulnerability and blindness. At this moment, allies' attacks on the enemy will increase several times over. Being able to use this skill means Mo Qing's profession is a special profession, Holy Priest. With this damage increase, vulnerability, blindness, they all are its effects. After a few seconds, Jiang Li's lightning arc spell's paralysis effect is removed from the skeleton knight commander. He stands up again to attack. Seeing it coming, Jiang Li asks Mo Qing to use that blessing again. Mo Qing immediately gets to it, and Vivi uses her spell to increase Jiang Li's magic damage. Jiang Li tells both of them to be careful because that skeleton knight commander is coming towards them at high speed. It reaches Jiang Li in the blink of an eye and raises its scythe to attack him. The skeleton knight commander reaches Jiang Li in the blink of an eye and raises its scythe to attack him, but Mo Qing uses her divine power to shoot at it. Mo Qing's divine power is very strong and shines brightly everywhere. The skeleton knight commander backs off and closes its eyes because of the divine light. After the divine light dissipates, the skeleton knight commander looks around to find both Mo Qing and Jiang Li, but suddenly Jiang Li's voice comes from behind, saying, "Stop searching, I'm right here." Jiang Li, who was in the sky, uses his ice arrow spell to shoot at the skeleton knight commander, creating a hole in its body. Jiang Li lands right in front of the skeleton knight commander's corpse, saying, "Victory is ours." After killing the skeleton knight commander, Jiang Li levels up and becomes level 20. He also obtains a C-grade skill book, Bone Spear Spell. With Jiang Li's special talent, the Bone Spear Spell reaches its max level. The Bone Spear Spell is a C-grade spell that launches a bone spear, weakening the hit part if it's a weak spot. If it was already a weak spot, the damage will be increased. Along with Jiang Li, Mo Qing and Vivi also level up. Mo Qing becomes level 29, and Vivi becomes level 22. Getting a C-grade skill is quite the treasure. But Jiang Li's skill slots are full. He has to decide which skill he should replace, but this skill can only be learned by Black Iron mages. So Jiang Li thought he could ponder for now and learn it later. While he was thinking about all that, Mo Qing calls him and offers a Black Iron promotion gem, telling him to take it and use it, considering it as an advanced reward because getting stronger will also benefit their dungeon raid. Plus, Jiang Li wouldn't want to miss out on future experiences. While giving him the promotion gem, Mo Qing blushes and asks Jiang Li to call her Qing Qing from now on. Lin grabs Mo Qing's hand and thanks her, saying he owes her one this time. He tells Mo Qing that he will repay her twofold later. But right after Jiang Li grabs her hand, Mo Qing doesn't hear anything and is lost in her dreams. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the dungeon, when Mo Qing's butler hears that her bodyguards left her in the dungeon, he gets very angry and slaps the bodyguards, asking why they left the young lady alone in the dungeon. Have they lost their minds? The bodyguard tells the butler that Jiang Li may be a novice, but he is quite strong. Hearing that Jiang Li is a novice, the butler gets even more angry, asking what nonsense they are talking about. Suddenly, Butler Fu's subordinate, who was standing behind, sees something and calls him to look at the dungeon because something is not right. When Butler looks at the dungeon, his expression changes immediately. The blue dungeon gate turns red, and a system notification comes, saying, "Unknown incident occurred in the current Black Iron difficulty secret dungeon, Dark Altar. Difficulty has increased to Abyss level. Because of this, exiting the dungeon is not possible once entered." Seeing it, Butler Fu moves immediately and asks his subordinates to gather all elites under level 25 because the lady is in danger. They will follow Butler Fu and go to save her. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Jiang Li is meditating after using the promotion gem, and Mo Qing and Vivi are guarding him. Suddenly, Vivi hears some voices from the forest and asks who is there. In response, a monster comes out of the forest, asking them if they are the intruders. The monster says it's impressive to be able to defeat its minions. However, this is where they meet their end. This monster is level 30, boss level Dark Mage Garubi. Mo Qing is too shocked to see a dungeon boss who is seeking out intruders. Meanwhile, Jiang Li is in the midst of a breakthrough, so disturbing him could be fatal. Mo Qing decides to stall for time, but suddenly Butler Fu arrives there with his subordinates. They come running, asking Mo Qing if she is all right. Mo Qing is also very happy to see them. Now she doesn't have to fight only with Vivi. Seeing them, Dark Mage Garubi gets more angry, thinking they are reinforcements, and this was a trap. He calls them annoying pests and attacks them using his Rock Spike spell. Hundreds of rock spikes come out of the ground and hit the knights. Some knights fall for it, but some survive. Seeing its attack, one of Mo Qing's knights smiles, saying, "Dark Mage Garubi, your rank is impressive, but that's all you've got." Well, he should not have said that. Suddenly, a huge monster appears above that knight, and with a solid impact, it curses that knight with its huge body. That huge monster is an unknown level boss, a lower demon lord. The demon looks at Mo Qing's knights and asks who dares summon him. Seeing him, the knights get scared because it was a deep abyss demon. Dark Mage Garubi calls the demon lord, telling him that it was he who summoned him, pointing at the knights. He said these souls are the sacrifices he offers to him. Looking at the knights, the demon said, "Merely these mortals? They're not even fit to plug the gaps between his teeth." When the demon said that, Mo Qing's knights get scared, saying, "It's over. We're all dead." But suddenly someone intervened, asking the Dark Mage who was becoming a sacrifice. It was Jiang Li who had been promoted to Black Iron level. His skill slot had expanded by 1, and he could now cast 2 skills. Lin used his new Bone Spear spell, telling everyone to cheer up and fight back because the outcome remained undecided. Seeing Jiang Li's Bone Spear spell, Butler Fu realized that it was a deep abyss demon skill, but he was still doubtful whether Jiang Li could fight against the demon. Meanwhile, Jiang Li attacked that demon with his bone spears, but the demon used its hand to defend its head. Some bone spears injured the demon's hand. Butler Fu, who was doubtful about Jiang Li before, was shocked to see that the bone spear spell actually wounded the demon. Now, he was wondering who this enigmatic youth was, but he knew it was still not enough, and he himself needed to risk everything to save his miss. He told the mages to attack that demon. They had to protect the lady at all costs. Those mages surrounded the demon and attacked him using fireball spells. While they were fighting the demon, Butler Fu took out his sword and requested Jiang Li to take their lady to safety. He entrusted this to Jiang Li and also went to fight the demon. That old-looking butler was actually a high-level hunter himself. The mage's continuous attacks made the demon very angry. It called them a bunch of dwarf ants and got ready to use its energy breath to attack them. It attacked Butler Fu after realizing that he was the one in charge. Butler Fu infused his aura into the sword and got ready to attack the demon. He used his aura sword to stop that demon's energy breath. He struggled, but in the end, he stopped it. Butler Fu was exhausted, but his spirit didn't fade. He used more aura to make his sword more powerful and jumped to attack the demon. He decided that he would unleash his most powerful technique, thinking that if he couldn't slay this demon, he must at least buy time for their lady. Butler Fu used his most powerful attack, Sword of Judgment, and jumped high to attack that demon. But before hitting the demon's head, that demon stopped Butler Fu's sword with his hand. Then, it grabbed Butler Fu and started choking him. It laughed at Butler Fu, asking, "Is that all you've got?" Then it threw Butler Fu on the ground. Mo Qing was scared and worried about Butler Fu, so she tried to go to help him, but Jiang Li stopped her. The demon started going towards Butler Fu, who was lying on the ground. Scared of the demon, all the hunters didn't dare to go there and just asked Butler Fu to run away from there. Butler Fu was very injured and unable to even move. The demon was about to crush him, saying, "Weak human, you overestimate yourselves." But suddenly, a huge ice spear came from the front. The demon dodged it, but that ice spear still hit that demon's wing. The demon was surprised by that attack, and Butler Fu saw this opportunity and attacked the demon's leg. The demon fell on the ground, and Butler Fu ran away from there. The demon was very angry and looked around to see who dared to attack it. Right in front of him was Jiang Li, who was aiming his ice arrow at the demon, saying he would handle this demon. Jiang Li aimed at the demon and told others that those in need of healing should tend to their wounds swiftly. Seeing that Jiang Li had not left, Butler Fu got worried about his miss, Mo Qing. He called Jiang Li, telling him that it was his duty to escort their lady to safety. They would take over the battle here. Jiang Li told Butler Fu that there was no need for that because he had discovered a method to inflict damage upon this demon. Butler Fu was surprised that despite being merely a black iron mage, Jiang Li could cast 2 spells at once. The reason he was shocked was because Jiang Li had added bones to his Ice Spear's spell. Butler Fu wondered if it was even possible to merge 2 powers and unleash an entirely new power. That demon stood up, calling them filthy creatures, and suddenly jumped to attack Jiang Li, saying, "This is unforgivable." Jiang Li jumped to the other side, dodging the demon's attack. He went behind the demon's back and attacked the demon's head with his bone ice spear. The demon lost both of its wings. Looking at the demon, Jiang Li said, "The wings, the Achilles heel of you vile creature, am I right?" What he meant was that for a demon, losing its wings is like losing its magic. Now that the demon couldn't use magic anymore, it was angry. It asked Jiang Li how he knew that. Jiang Li told the demon that abyssal demons are humanity's greatest enemy. To prevent them from returning to harm the world again, their academy had taught them numerous strategies to counter their kind. Jiang Li asked the demon to surrender now. He was bluffing because he knew that the location of the demon's heart was random. So even with its magic sealed, it all came down to luck. Hearing Jiang Li, Dark Mage Garubi got angry, telling Jiang Li not to be so arrogant because such trifling wounds meant nothing to them. Moreover, their recovery powers were formidable, so they would soon be restored to full strength. But the demon had other plans. It grabbed Dark Mage Garubi, saying it couldn't wait any longer. It must regain its power now. Dark Mage Garubi was surprised, but he understood what the demon was about to do and started asking for mercy. Everyone was too shocked to see what the demon was doing. The demon lifted Garubi and put him in its mouth, devouring him while Garubi was still alive. When the demon ate Garubi, its body started to change. It became more powerful, and new wings grew on its back. A system warning came, saying the demon lord entered the second phase and had become extremely dangerous. The demon looked at them angrily, saying, "Humans, you have incited my fury." It suddenly attacked them using energy breath, but this time, its attack was more powerful. Jiang Li ran fast and dodged the attack. He knew that with the max-level agility spell, he could survive, but he was unable to retaliate. His current armor spell couldn't withstand it. But suddenly, Jiang Li's body started glowing, and a system message came, saying, "Affected by the blessing, magic attack power has increased by 100%. Right after that, another message came, saying, "Affected by the blessing, magic attack power has increased by 200%. Jiang Li was shocked to see that and looked at Mo Qing and the others. All the hunters there were using their magic to buff Jiang Li. System messages continued coming, saying, "Affected by the blessing, defense has increased by 100%. Affected by the blessing, speed has increased by 200%. Affected by the blessing, vitality and mana are slowly regenerating." But the demon also noticed them buffing Jiang Li. It made an energy ball in its hand and aimed at them, saying, "A group of meddlesome fools, just die." Seeing it, Jiang Li realized that the situation was bad. He immediately turned to go help them. The demon threw the energy ball at them, and Jiang Li, who was behind the demon, also ran towards to save them. At the same moment, a system message came notifying Jiang Li that his speed had been boosted by 300%. With the increase in speed, he reached Mo Qing and the others. Right before the demon's energy ball hit them, Jiang Li cast his light armor spell. Because of the buff, his defense increased by 200%, and his corresponding shield skill increased by 200%. The demon's energy ball hit them, causing a huge explosion. But before the demon could get happy, it found that the ground beneath its feet had turned into swamp. The demon tried to fly away from that swamp but couldn't. It was surprised, asking, "What kind of strange trick is this?" That was Jiang Li's paralysis and action restriction, combined spell. Because of Jiang Li's light armor spell, they were all safe. They continued giving their buffs to Jiang Li. He got ready and cast a lightning spell in that swamp. Doing that created a new combo spell, Thunderstorm. This was more powerful than a simple lightning spell, and after getting hit by that, the demon was seriously injured. It was unable to even move around. As Jiang Li moved to attack the demon, Butler Fu commanded that those with enhancement items would use enhancement magic and give them all to Jiang Li because he was the only one who could save them now. Due to the blessing, Jiang Li's magic attack power continued to increase by 600%, then 700%, and then it reached 800%. Seeing that Jiang Li was daring to come forward, the demon got ready to use its energy breath, thinking Jiang Li was foolish. It aimed an attack at Jiang Li, but Jiang Li, who had an 800% boost in his magic, wasn't going down that easily. To counter the demon's attack, Jiang Li used the Bone Arrow spell. His spell cut through the demon's energy breath and went directly to its head. The demon said it was just petty tricks and used its hand to defend. Jiang Li's bone arrow broke into multiple arrows and hit the demon. The demon covered its head with its hands, with bone arrows stuck in them. Seeing this, Jiang Li said, "It seems you're very careful about protecting your head. Is there something important there?" The confident demon asked Jiang Li. What did it matter if he knew? He was going to die anyway. But suddenly, those bone pieces that were stuck in the demon's hands caught fire and exploded. The spell that Jiang Li used was Explosive Bone Spear, which was the combo of Bone Spear technique and Fireball technique. Because of the explosion, the demon was unable to see, and taking this opportunity, Jiang Li attacked him using the Ice Arrow spell. When those ice arrows hit the demon, it screamed. When others heard the demon scream, they thought it was over, but it was not. From the smoke, sounds of the demon's laughter emerged. Right because it got hit, the demon stopped the ice arrow of Jiang Li. The demon told Jiang Li that just now was his only chance to defeat him. But suddenly, the demon looked at his hands, which were injured by Jiang Li's explosive bone spears. The demon was confused as to why hadn't he recovered yet. Angrily, he asked Jiang Li what had he done to him. Jiang Li smiled and told the demon that it was just a simple slowing spell. The demon called Jiang Li a despicable person, asking if he thought these little tricks could deal with him. But Jiang Li laughed again and moved his fingers to call back, asking the demon if he thought Jiang Li only shot one arrow. Jiang Li casted multiple ice arrow spells that were just above the demon's head. On Jiang Li's command, all those ice arrows came with super speed and pierced the demon's whole body. With that, the demon's story ended, and Jiang Li leveled up 5 levels, becoming level 25. Everyone was overjoyed that it was finally over. Along with Jiang Li, everyone present there also leveled up by 2 levels. Seeing Jiang Li, Butler Fu thought that if this young man now had such strength, in the future, he would definitely become a peak powerhouse that shakes the world. It was important to maintain a good relationship with him. Zhang Lin was also surprised because he knows that in theory, reaching the Black Iron level as a mage doesn't mean one can use 2 spells simultaneously. He thought, could it be because all his skills are at maximum level? So he awakened an additional ability? Some were happy, but some were jealous of him. Mo Qing's bodyguards commented that with so many buffs on one person, if they were not injured, they might have been able to battle that demon. But Mo Qing intervened, telling Zhang Lin not to listen to her bodyguard's nonsense. Vivi agreed with her, telling Zhang Lin that they owe it to him this time. Aside from that, Zhang Lin asked Vivi what her plans are after the instance. Vivi said she feels like her strength is still lacking, and she is afraid she will hold back Zhang Lin, so she wants to train in lower-level areas first. When she becomes stronger, then they can enter instances together. Embarrassed, Mo Qing said that next time she also wants to be with Zhang Lin. He was surprised, asking if she wanted to go with him, but Butler Fu intervened and explained that his miss means that she would like to invite him to her mansion to sit for a while. He asked Zhang Lin to please be sure to honor them with his presence when the time comes. Zhang Lin nervously smiled, saying since they say so, he will definitely attend. Then Butler Fu asked Zhang Lin to let's go, take a look at the spoils because that demon was almost defeated by Zhang Lin alone. So these spoils should rightfully belong to him alone. The first thing Zhang Lin got was Shadowfang's Staff of Silver quality, and the second thing he got was Demon Cloak of Gold quality. This comes with the skill Demon's Eye that can detect stealth units below silver rank. He was happy because it's hard to find a few items like this in the whole Golden City. With this equipment, I don't have to worry about being ambushed in the future. The next thing he got was First Layer Abyss Pass of special quality. It allows entry into the first layer of the Abyss, requiring strength equivalent to or higher than a silver-ranked professional. Next was Abyss Stone of Gold quality that can be embedded in equipment to bestow the power of the Abyss, greatly increasing the chance of upgrading the equipment to the gold rank. But Zhang Lin hadn't seen these 2 things before. so he doesn't have any idea about that. Seeing that gemstone, Butler Fu was too shocked, saying, "This is a good thing. Ordinary gemstones can turn trash into treasure, but this gemstone can directly upgrade equipment to the gold rank, making it the best of the best." He said they just need to find a good blacksmith. Well, in Blue Star, apart from those combat specialized professions, there are also many professions specialized in life aspects, such as chefs, alchemists, and blacksmiths. Although they cannot directly fight monsters, they are indispensable logistics personnel in the human camp. Butler Fu told Jiang that it is said that Lin, the steward of the Golden Dragon Treasure Pavilion, knows the best blacksmith in the whole Golden City. He can try his luck there. Jiang Lin thanked Butler Fu for telling him this information, because he happened to be going to the Golden Dragon Treasure Pavilion. Jiang Lin packed his stuff and said bye to Mo Qing and others.
Immediately. Lord Ribeiro asked if what Luke said was true, but Asher remained silent. He realized that Ribeiro had become the Lord and recalled that 40 years ago, when he had just been appointed captain of the guard, he had visited the guards with the former Lord. This made him realize that 20 years had passed since he died. Ribeiro told Asher that they had treated him like their own child all this time, and despite his countless misdeeds, they hadn't cast him out, allowing him to remain in the castle as an employee. However, this time he seemed to have crossed the line too far and deserved severe punishment. But considering their affection for him, they would be lenient. Ribeiro then ordered him to leave the territory immediately. The queen begged the Lord to do anything but don't make Asher leave, yet Ribeiro ordered his wife to stay quiet, reminding her that he had tolerated Asher because of her, but this time he could no longer forgive him. Ribeiro asked how long they should continue to show affection to an ungrateful child who didn't recognize the grace of being raised in their home. He added that it was fortunate Asher was only being expelled in good health. Just then, someone interrupted. Leica appeared and told her father that Asher did nothing wrong and that Luke was the one at fault. Luke shouted at Leica that it was enough, but she continued, explaining that Luke had hurt himself with his own sword while swinging it at Asher. Asher had simply been teaching her swordsmanship, and Luke's terrible swordsmanship was the real disgrace to the nobility. Luke shook with anger, but Ribeiro and the queen were shocked to hear this. Ribeiro asked Leica if Asher was teaching her swordsmanship, saying it was the first time he had heard of it. Leica confidently replied that Asher possessed a high level of imperial swordsmanship, to the extent that she wished to have him as her mentor. She added that Asher had changed because he was earnestly committed to his swordsmanship training. Luke teasingly asked Leica if she really wanted to learn swordsmanship from Asher, who had barely even held a sword. He mocked her, saying she not only wanted Asher as her mentor but also wished to learn the worthless imperial swordsmanship style. Luke questioned if she was in her right mind. She replied that she had witnessed Asher's swordsmanship with her own eyes, and if they didn't believe her, they should have him demonstrate his skills directly. Asher, still kneeling, had no idea what was going on. Ribeiro then called Karen, who immediately responded. Ribeiro ordered Karen to test Asher's swordsmanship. The queen, stuttering with fear, told Ribeiro that Karen might be too much for a simple assessment, but he reassured her not to worry. Ribeiro then stared at Asher, accusing him of using some trick to suddenly start practicing swordsmanship and bewitching Leica. He warned him that if this was a joke, he'd be crawling out of the castle half dead. When Ribeiro ordered him to pick up a sword, Asher complied, though he knew the situation was getting out of hand. Ribeiro declared that if Asher could last more than 5 minutes against Karen, he would acknowledge his skills. Karen, facing Asher, angrily wondered how Asher dared to teach Leica and insulted him for being insolent. Even in front of Queen Benija, Karen had no intention of going easy on him. He planned to beat him up and have him thrown out of the territory. Karen then charged at Asher, shouting his intent. Asher managed to block Karen's first attack while Leica watched seriously from the side, thinking that if what she had seen was right, Asher could definitely hold his own against Karen. Karen arrogantly taunted Asher, saying he was already trembling and asking if he thought swordsmanship was easy. Karen then declared he would teach Asher a lesson and attacked with a strong blow, which Asher blocked again. Karen glared at him, thinking that Asher hadn't even mastered the basics but was daring to talk about swordsmanship. Karen launched a series of continuous attacks, which Asher struggled to block. Seeing Asher struggle, Karen thought as he had expected, Asher was a weak, arrogant fool and wondered how he dared to sully the great art of swordsmanship. Asher fell to one knee, making Ribeiro remark that it seemed too much to go against Karen. Leica was shocked and thought it wasn't right. On the other hand, Luke praised Karen, shouting that as expected of the top graduate of the Imperial Academy, he was truly befitting of a knight commander from an elite swordsman background, and there was no way Asher could stand against someone like him, one of the best in the Empire. Asher smirked when he heard this while Karen glared at him, thinking he was weak and pathetic, and should remember the vast difference between them and what true swordsmanship looked like. But Asher stood up, telling Karen that it was a nice little performance and mocking it as an adorable display of swordsmanship. Karen, enraged, asked him what he meant, but Asher simply said he would return Karen's words back to him. He then asked Karen if he thought the position of Knight Commander was something to be taken lightly and told him to let him teach him a lesson. Asher then swung his sword down with force, causing Karen to be thrown and slam into a nearby pillar, shocking the siblings and the lords. Karen, bleeding, wondered what had suddenly gotten into Asher, but Asher just walked closer to Karen, telling him that he had barely hit him and he couldn't even block it, which was pathetic. He then ordered Karen to pick up his sword and stand up. Asher teasingly called Karen an esteemed elite swordsman, wondering if it was because this era was one of peace without demons or wars that the era had become too dull and weak. He then thought to himself that he must correct the military discipline. Asher then faced Karen seriously, addressing him as the chief of the Empire and head of the Templars in the Alak territory. He asked if Karen would just fall into the hands of a commoner, successfully provoking him. Enraged, Karen grabbed his sword and called him a bastard. Karen then charged at Asher, shouting and asking how dare a commoner defeat him. He swung his sword, but Asher easily dodged and teasingly told Karen that he was too slow. Asher then raised his fist and punched Karen's face, slamming him to the floor. Everyone was shocked, unable to believe that he had punched Karen so hard that he broke the floor, causing Karen to collapse. Asher thought it was a shame and told Karen that he might think he was an old man talking about the old days. But back then, not only were commanders like him better, but even regular soldiers were incomparably better. Countless skilled and rigorously trained soldiers, hundreds, perhaps thousands, died helplessly against the demons, unable to do anything. He then told Karen that although this was supposed to be a peaceful era without demons or wars, they must always keep a tight grip on discipline and cannot afford to be weak. Suddenly, the other knights surrounded him, causing Benija to panic and beg Riberok to wait in horror. Riberok, seriously questioning Asher, demanded to know who he was, stating that he was not the Asher they knew. Asher noticed the clear hostility and doubt and wondered what he could say to make them believe him. He then responded that he had lost his memory. Riberok, surprised, asked if he had heard correctly that Asher had lost his memory. Asher confirmed and explained that when he woke up that morning, he couldn't remember anything about who he was or who they were. He added that all that remained was his memory of swordsmanship, and he thought wielding a sword would help him recover more memories, but it was still an empty void. Asher then let go of the sword and told Riberok that it was clear he had caused harm to the chief. He kneeled and expressed his willingness to accept any punishment, making everyone fall silent and Benija worriedly call his name. A moment later, Asher was back in his room, sitting on the edge of his bed, knowing he needed time to organize his thoughts. He remembered Riberok telling him that until then, he shouldn't leave his room. He then glanced to his side and saw the wooden sword standing against the wall, making him stare at it. On the other hand, Leica was walking down the corridor holding bread and a glass of water, thinking that Asher had changed as if he had become a completely different person. She knew that Asher wasn't like that until yesterday. He had never held a sword, and his language and behavior were poor and vulgar, which was a constant annoyance. Asher was her mother's adopted son before her brother and she were born. Her mother had found Asher abandoned outside the castle. At that time, their mother was depressed about not having children, so she raised Asher herself, without the help of the maids, pouring her love into him. Since Luke and she were born, Asher had been like family, but their relationship had become increasingly delicate, almost feeling like favoritism because their mother showered Asher with love and obsession. Despite their mother's efforts, Asher grew apart, and his behavior caused resentment within the estate. Asher was about to be kicked out of the castle, but with her mother's urging, he was allowed to stay under the condition that he would work as an employee. Luke loudly declared that Asher was a piece of trash, and Leica silently thought that Asher was a pathetic kid. But then Asher suddenly changed. She noticed the way Asher spoke, his behavior, and his personality, all of which had transformed. He now seemed like a swordmaster who had trained for years to reach that level. She then arrived at Asher's room and knocked, telling him that it was her and that she had brought him some food. When Asher didn't answer, she opened the door and asked if he was there, but she was shocked to see Asher lifting a sword in front of her, causing her to panic and drop the food she was holding. When the food fell to the floor and the plate shattered, Leica collapsed, shaking in fear. Asher apologized to her, explaining that he had seen a sword in the room and thought of practicing swordsmanship. She was confused and asked if he meant sword practice. A moment later, he was in the corner of his room, continuously swinging the sword while Leica watched him, unable to stand it any longer. She realized he was truly obsessed with swordsmanship. almost fanatical. He then called her name, making her snap out of her thoughts. He asked her what kind of person he was before because, from Luke and Ribero's reactions, their feelings toward him didn't seem favorable. She replied that even without saying much, he wasn't a good kid. Except for her mother, their family, and the people in the castle didn't look kindly upon him. He often resorted to violence against residents or destroyed property, engaging in acts that defied the employer's name and status. This made him realize that he had crossed lines that even a servant wouldn't cross, recognizing the disdain his actions had caused. He then asked why she was calmly conversing with him and told her it wouldn't be strange if she held him in contempt. She responded that she didn't despise him because he had lost his memories, and it didn't concern her. In fact, it was for the better, as there would be no more bothersome tasks. She then asked if his current demeanor wasn't an improvement and told him to take care of her, making him realize she wasn't contemptuous or indifferent. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and asked if it was okay to come in. Asher's adoptive mother, Benija, entered the room. She smiled softly at him while he wondered if her name was Benija. He respectfully knelt in front of her and asked what he owed the pleasure of her visit, but she gently held his face and told him he didn't have to address her so formally. Regardless of what happened to him, she had raised him, and he should speak as he used to. He called her mother, surprising her. She asked how he could remember that she was his mother if he had lost his memories. He told her that the Asher she knew was not him and that he knew he was not the Asher she remembered. He wondered why she should look at him with such affection. He told her that he had forgotten her face, her name, everything, so to him, she was a stranger. But Benija just hugged him and told him that she was the one who first found him. By the time she was in her 20s, she hadn't yet produced an heir. One day, burdened with guilt and self-doubt, Benija found Asher abandoned outside the castle walls. When she held him in her arms and saw him smile, her world changed. Despite opposition from others, she raised him with love and care. Even if he now considered her a stranger, it was not a problem because he was her child, and she had raised and loved him as her own. Asher kept silent, pondering if he could start anew and become someone else. He wondered if Asher had truly meant nothing to her to be so indifferent and unconcerned, making him sad for Asher. Yet, he replied to Benija that he understood. Meanwhile, in the Lord's office, Luke shouted at Ribeiro, asking if he had just said demon and suggested that it could be Asher. Karen couldn't believe it either. Ribeiro explained that it seemed like an excessive assumption because demons had disappeared a long time ago. Even if there was a demon, it wouldn't matter and had no connection to Asher. If there were a demon, it would probably infiltrate lords or nobles to wield power, so there was no reason to target the body of a mere commoner. However, Ribeiro couldn't believe that a child could defeat a high-ranking knight like Karen and that someone as exceptional as Leica would acknowledge and follow Asher. Suddenly, someone interrupted Ribeiro's explanation, saying he was having an interesting conversation. They were all shocked to see a man with a huge sword on his back sitting in the window. The man smiled at them, and Karen rushed to attack, demanding to know who he was. The man showed no reaction, so Karen swung his sword at him. The man effortlessly stopped Karen's sword with just 2 fingers and complimented his solid stance and decent swordsmanship. The man then remarked to Ribeiro that he had hired a decent squire, surprising Ribeiro. The man then threw Karen, who slammed onto the floor next to a frightened Luke. Karen coughed in pain, ashamed to be in that state again. The man told Karen it was a shame that if he were a bit younger, he might have put up a fight. He then asked Ribeiro if he was right. Ribeiro, maintaining his composure, told the man that Karen was still his knight, and that he was going overboard. Karen, shocked, remembered someone. Ribeiro then respectfully bowed to the man, welcoming him and acknowledging that it had been 20 years. He greeted the man as Swordmaster Haben Esther, the one who had reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship, and welcomed him to his home. Ribeiro then asked Haben where he had been, mentioning that he had vanished suddenly 20 years ago, and they thought he was surely dead. Haben just laughed and said he had something to investigate. He told Ribeiro that he traveled to the ends of the continent and to the horizon of the world, but he still hadn't figured everything out. He then asked Ribeiro if he had heard right that there was a kid who defeated the knight guarding him. Karen shamefully replied yes, while Luke couldn't believe that he was sitting at the noble's desk. Ribeiro explained that Asher was a commoner who had never properly studied swordsmanship. Haben replied that the child must possess exceptional talent and ordered Ribeiro to tell him more about it. The next day, at the training ground, Asher told Leica to attack him with all her strength. She asked if it was really okay, reminding him that he hadn't even drawn his sword. He replied that it wasn't about swordsmanship and explained that it was training for real combat, even before she drew her sword. He reiterated that she must attack with the intent to stab him. Although Asher barely managed to stay in the castle, Leica had requested to be his disciple. He had tried to refuse due to their difference in status, but her determination was unyielding, and she had even bowed her head to him. She shakily held her sword and ran toward him, continuously attacking while he effortlessly dodged her moves. Asher knew that she used heroic swordsmanship, the swordsmanship of Revenia. Leica certainly had talent, and her skills were decent, but she was weak, and her moves were straight out of a textbook. He easily lifted her and slammed her to the ground. Then, reaching out to help her up, he told her that she was strong, but only as far as swordsmanship was concerned. He explained that real combat was a different story altogether. He wondered about the chances of talented people surviving on the battlefield and remembered seeing countless people die because they overestimated themselves. Asher then told her that before mastering swordsmanship, she needed to train her body and mind. Leica, pointing the wooden sword at him, asked who he was and attacked him, suggesting that he had experienced war. He dodged her attack and explained that he just wanted to give her some common sense, that swordsmanship and real combat were different. He easily pinned her to the ground. She told him that what he did wasn't swordsmanship, but he countered that she must abandon blind faith in swordsmanship alone. Merely possessing swordsmanship skills wouldn't help her survive in real combat. She needed to apply those skills and learn to control her emotions. He told her that she must never lose her cool and composure in front of her opponent. She had to be able to swing her sword flexibly and overpower her opponent's swordsmanship. As he swung the sword down, she realized that his strikes were always flawless. He then told her that he would teach her real combat skills that applied swordsmanship. She praised him while standing up, saying that they should train properly. Later, when the sun was about to set, Leica was panting in exhaustion as she walked through the castle. She felt like she was going to collapse, her whole body aching. She muttered that Asher didn't know the meaning of moderation because he had pushed her, a noble lady, to such an extent. He never seemed to lose energy, making her think he had monstrous stamina. However, she was happy, feeling like she had gotten stronger in just one day. Then someone called out to her. It was Luke. He asked if she was playing with Asher, but she asked him back what he meant by playing when it was training. Luke dismissed her explanation, saying it was training his ass, and insinuated that being with a man wasn't proper training. Leica, unfazed, told him to think what he wanted to think. Luke seriously told her to mind her manners because she was disgracing the dignity of a noble. He reminded her that she was a noble and Asher was a commoner. Nobles were supposed to show generosity to commoners, so she shouldn't learn from someone like Asher. This made her angry, and she pointed the wooden sword at Luke, who screamed in fear and shock. She asked if he couldn't just shut up, but Luke retorted, asking if she was going to hit him, the heir of the Lord. He shouted in fear that if she hit him, it wouldn't end well for her, but she simply replied that she didn't care. However, she looked back in shock when someone laughingly remarked that a daughter trying to hit the eldest son was quite a rare sight. Ribeiro apologized to Haben for showing such disgraceful behavior. He then seriously addressed Leica, telling her that while she managed to get past Asher, she shouldn't let Luke get hurt any further. Even she wouldn't be able to get away with it quietly, to which she replied, yes, and apologized. She then looked at Haben, who was still smiling, and wondered who this old man was. She noticed there was something extraordinary about Haben. Luke then called the old man Swordmaster Haben, which shocked her. Luke respectfully introduced himself to Haben as Luke Havark, the heir of the great Havark family. Hearing Luke, she remembered the Swordmaster and the pinnacle of swordsmanship, respected beyond position and rank, with fewer than 10 such superhumans across the vast empire. Luke then told Haben that as a swordsman himself, he had long admired his heroic swordsmanship and wished to become his disciple. Luke proudly laughed, telling Leica that even among masters, there were ranks, and only a swordmaster could truly teach swordsmanship. However, Luke was stunned when Haben ignored him and approached Leica. Haben greeted her, noting that she felt no intimidation even in front of him and was ready to attack at any time, which made him wonder if he should test her. Haben then grabbed his sword from his back in front of Leica, causing Ribeiro and Luke to shout in horror, but she didn't flinch and moved away, wondering if the old man in front of her was indeed a swordmaster. She then remembered Asher telling her not to be overwhelmed by her opponent's aura and that the moment she instinctively swung her sword out of fear, she would be defeated. Maintaining composure in front of any opponent was fundamental. This was why she didn't become afraid when Haben released his aura and grabbed his sword. She focused and stared at Haben. When Haben attacked her, she managed to block it with her sword. Haben told her it was impressive and knew it was a first. When he saw promising young talents, he usually approached them aggressively to gauge their reactions, but normally they either fled in fear of his overwhelming presence or couldn't withstand a light sword strike. Yet, the young woman in front of him stood her ground with a wooden stick, fearlessly facing his sword strike, making him think that Leica had the makings of a warrior. She then forcefully swung her sword to the side to push him, and he jumped away as she did it. She ran to him and used her snake move to attack, making Haben notice the swordsmanship that moved like a snake. He wondered if she could be from Ravenia's sword technique school. He easily blocked Leica's attack and told her she had impressive skill. He then simply pushed her a little and she was thrown away. She slammed onto the ground, dropping her sword and feeling pain. But Haben pointed his sword at her, making Ribeiro panic and beg Haben to stop. Haben just told Ribeiro that, unlike his cowardly son, he had a very commendable and brave daughter. Haben then asked Ribeiro if Leica was that child's disciple, to which Ribeiro stutteringly replied yes, while Luke stood behind his father in shame. Haven was about to tell Leica something, but then she saw an opening and kicked Haven's chest. She immediately grabbed her sword and was ready to face him once again. But then a hand appeared behind her, holding her head. He told her it was impressive that she even counterattacked while he was distracted. She was shocked and asked when he had managed to get behind her, but he simply told her that she might rival Revenia in time and asked if she could guide him to her master. She replied yes, confirming to herself that Haven was definitely not an ordinary man. A moment later, they were in a carriage while she stared at Haven, thinking that he had handled her full force attack like it was child's play, and even her father was being so cautious around him. Haven then asked if he was right that her name was Leica, to which she replied yes. He then asked what she felt watching her friend's swordsmanship, and she replied that it felt like watching the swordsmanship of a seasoned veteran. Haven laughed because he couldn't believe she was calling an 18-year-old a veteran. A minute later, they arrived at the training ground, and Haven remarked to Ribeiro that it had been a long time since he visited this place. He reminisced about once sparring there with a dear friend. Ribeiro asked how his friend was doing, and Haven replied that his friend was a good man but was no longer with them. Ribeiro offered his condolences, but Haven laughed it off, saying it was alright because it had been 20 years. Leica silently listened to their conversation. Leica then approached Asher, who was busy training with his sword. When he was about to swing it again, she called his name, making him stop and turn. He was stunned when he saw Haven and Ribeiro approaching him. He panicked, wondering why Haven was even there. Haven greeted him, and Asher remembered that Haven had been Ribeiro's guardian. Back when Ribeiro was young, during the tenure of the previous lord, he had specifically asked Haven to look after Ribeiro, so Haven should be somewhat familiar with him. Asher addressed Haven as a swordmaster, and Haven laughed happily, pleased that Asher knew him. Haven told him that he had been wanting to meet him and, smiling, grabbed his sword once again. Asher realized that this was Haven's habit, testing the skills of young talents. Thinking it had been a while, Asher swung his wooden sword at Haven with great speed, shocking and stunning him. Haven then remembered his old friend telling that he truly had impeccable swordsmanship, and that imperial swordsmanship was just for self-defense and was nothing compared to a swordmaster like Haven. Haven responded that they had simply taken different paths and that he had achieved another level. Haven then asked him how about sparring for old time's sake, to which he replied that it sounded good. They both attacked each other with their swords, and Haven saw his old friend in Asher. This realization made Haven snap in shock, and he called out, "Guards Captain," leaving Asher stunned in shock and disbelief. They were all in silence when Ribeiro asked Haven what he had just said, but Haven replied not to mind it, saying it was nothing. Haven then called him a kid, which made him jump a little in surprise, wondering if Haven had noticed something. But then Haven asked him if he was perhaps the disciple of that guy. He was glad that Haven thought that way and replied that he didn't know who Haven was talking about, but he didn't have a master. Haven smirked upon hearing this and suggested he become his disciple instead. Ribeiro couldn't believe that the swordmaster wanted to take Asher as a disciple. But then Leica told everyone to hold on a second and told Haven that whether he was a swordmaster or not, but he had been attacking someone who was just standing still. She asked what kind of behavior that was, making Haven panic. She then asked Haven if it meant he could swing his sword at anyone just because he was a swordmaster. Ribeiro panicked about her daughter's behavior and told her that it was rude. But Haven told Ribeiro that it was alright, saying that young folks these days didn't know who he was. Haven then grabbed his sword and released his aura while smilingly telling them that he would show them himself. Haven then released a strong power which shocked Leica, but he just calmly looked at it and said that it was an aura. Haven replied that he was right and that it was the mark of a swordmaster, the aura. Haven then stared at him for a moment and swung his sword down in the other direction. The force from his attack cut the ground. They all covered their faces to avoid the smoke in their eyes, and when they opened them, they were all shocked to witness the power of a swordmaster in front of them. Haven then proudly told him that he was a swordmaster, a talented individual destined to reach great heights. He asked him how about it and if he wouldn't become his disciple. Ribeiro knew that being a disciple of a swordmaster carried immense authority, and Leica was amazed at Haven's unbelievable power. On the other hand, Asher knew that if he became a disciple of someone like Haven, he wondered how strong he could become. But he replied that he refused, making Haven's strong aura disappear, and they were all shocked and stunned by his answer. Meanwhile, outside the castle, people were gathering, asking if it was true that the swordmaster had come to the territory and expressing their desire to become Haven's disciple. Karen told them to return because Haven already had a disciple, making the people ask in shock who it was and beg him to tell Haven to accept them as disciples too. Back at the training ground, Asher was practicing again when he heard people cheering for Haven outside. He knew that it was chaos outside the castle. He then peeked back and asked Haven, who was sitting and drinking, if he wasn't going. Haven just drank his beer and asked him where that old man would go, adding that he'd be sticking around for a while. Haven then asked him again if he was really not considering becoming his disciple, and Asher replied that he had already said no. Asher was annoyed that Haven was already clinging to him, begging him to become his disciple. He thought the idea of becoming the disciple of his friend was ridiculous. He then pointed in front of him and told Haben to look after that kid instead of him because she'd be more worth teaching, indicating Leica, who was fuming in anger. Haben replied that he had already asked her, but she politely declined, saying that she already had a master and couldn't learn from anyone else. Haben then laughed, commenting that Leica was a polite kid, which Asher couldn't believe. He then looked at her, wondering if she had really turned down the offer to become a swordmaster's disciple just to learn from him, and he told Haben that there was no need for it. Later, when night came and the castle was silent, Luke was stumbling around in the dark, cursing in anger. He was drunk and cursing his life. Luke then remembered Haben telling his father that, unlike his cowardly son, he had a brave and admirable daughter. This made Luke angrily ask what the use of being a noble was, thinking that it was all because of Asher and that Asher needed to disappear. Luke continued walking, thinking that because of Asher, his life was a mess. Suddenly, a dark shadow launched at Luke as he drank alcohol, making him drop the bottle and panic. The dark shadow wrapped around him until it completely absorbed him. The dark shadow then laughed and smiled like a demon, having successfully executed its plan. A moment later, Luke regained consciousness and tried to stand up. As he looked around, he wondered where he was. His thoughts were interrupted when someone called him heir to the territory, Luke Havark. Turning around, he saw a man floating in the air with a dark shadow. The figure smiled at him and greeted him. The next morning, in the castle of Arak, Leica told Asher that she couldn't stand the old man Haben. Asher reminded her that Haben was still a swordmaster and asked if she shouldn't show some respect. She retorted that Asher didn't look at Haben with respect either. Feeling awkward, Asher wanted to explain that it was because Haben was his friend and that he had also reached the level of swordmaster. He then told her that it wouldn't hurt to learn from Haben, as he was the one who mastered the heroic swordsmanship that she aimed for. Leica replied that she wanted to be like Asher, making him glance back at her in surprise and ask what she had just said. She repeated that he was the one she aspired to be, making him question why someone like him. She responded that she truly respected him and considered him her master, so he shouldn't put himself down like that. Asher thought he had no talent in swordsmanship and that all the swordsmanship in their world was created by heroes of the past. Every swordsman learned heroic swordsmanship and wished to surpass human limitations like those heroes, but he was different. Imperial swordsmanship was basic and simple, created and distributed by the Empire so anyone could learn it. It was the only style someone without talent, like him, could master. He had spent his whole life wielding a sword, adhering strictly to Imperial swordsmanship, and wondered why a talented child like Leica would respect him. In Leica's mind, however, he had made her strong. In the past, she wouldn't have been able to withstand Haben's pressure without his guidance and teaching, which had helped her immensely. She was confident that he was her guiding light. Haben then appeared and asked if they were having a lover's quarrel. Asher dismissed the idea and asked what Haben was holding. Haben replied that they were a present for him and suggested that if Asher wasn't so fixated on the form of weapons beyond swordsmanship, he'd be able to handle various weapons. Asher stuttered a reply, agreeing that Haben was right, but he knew that Imperial swordsmanship was for building a foundation. It was a straightforward and practical style, unlike heroic swordsmanship, which was built on profound principles and superhuman techniques. Its advantage was its applicability to various weapons. Asher had learned to handle different weapons because he needed every skill to survive actual battles. He then put the gloves on his hands and asked Haben if they were iron gloves. Haben replied that they were not just gauntlets, they were something more interesting. Haben instructed him to put strength into his arm and imagine any weapon. Asher imagined a dagger, and the gloves released a lightning power. He was astonished when the gloves materialized a dagger in his hand. Haben asked him how it was and if he was right that it was usable, while Leica looked at the dagger in amazement. Asher asked Haben if it was magic, and Haben explained that it was spatial magic and that the gauntlets were weapon storage gauntlets. If Asher wanted to store something, he just needed to imagine putting it in. Haben cautioned him that only weapons could be stored inside. Asher acknowledged that the gauntlets would be useful for him but might be useless for swordsmen fixated on the form of their weapons. He then asked Haben why he made them. Haben replied that he didn't make them for himself, they were made for a friend, though that friend died before receiving them. Leica asked if it was the friend from 20 years ago that Haben had mentioned before. Haben confirmed, explaining that his friend also used Imperial swordsmanship. Although they took different paths, Haben liked him because he accepted his lack of talent yet didn't give up, calmly walking his own path, which was a form of enlightenment. Haben then expressed his respect for his friend, making Asher realize that he had been distancing himself because he thought someone without talent like him would have no value to heroes. He couldn't believe Haben cared enough to make something like that. Haben then told Asher that he resembled his friend. The blunt way of speaking, the behaviors, the eyes, and the swordsmanship stance were all the same, making Haben feel envious. Haben asked once again if Asher would become his disciple. Leica was annoyed that Haben was asking again. Asher responded that he would accept the offer, but only temporarily, and assured Leica that he would continue to teach her. He then pointed his spear at Haben and suggested they spar right away, while thanking him. Haben pointed his sword at Asher as well, telling him to listen up. Leica watched from the side, thinking that Asher seemed satisfied with the present and had gained a master with quite a reputation. She then observed how Haben and Asher fought back to back. Back at the destroyed castle, the man told Luke that he had heard a rumor that a swordmaster was in the village and had come looking. Luke stutteringly asked the demon who he was. The man replied that they were from the assassination guild Motorolia and had come to seek permission from the Lord's Son to establish themselves there. Luke was horrified when he realized what the Motorolia guild was and remembered that the world's largest assassination guild, which appeared 50 years ago, was Motorolia. He wondered why they were in a territory like this. Luke then thought about the demon's assassination offer and told the man that he would allow it, but on the condition that the man accepted his offer. The man smiled widely and laughingly told Luke to tell him about it. Luke then ordered the man to kill Asher without any hesitation. When the sun was about to set once more, Asher and Haben were still fighting. Seeing Haben pull his sword back a little, Asher noticed an opening and swung his sword forward, shouting that it was a good strike. He attacked Haben, who blocked it in time and praised him back. Haben told him that his raw combat ability was on par with his own and that his movements were honed to perfection, but clarified that it was all he had to offer. Haben then released his aura and swung his sword backward to push Asher away, but Asher managed to stand his ground. Haben told him that it was a shame that besides imperial swordsmanship, he didn't seem to have a knack for heroic swordsmanship. Haben then silently stared at him, but suddenly caught a knife with his fingers, noting that Asher seemed to have adapted to using tools. Asher replied that it was why he needed to make good use of small tricks. Haben threw the knife away, agreeing with him, and told him that he couldn't unleash the overwhelming power of heroic swordsmanship with just imperial swordsmanship in actual combat, so magic that complements the limitations of swordsmanship would be useful. Asher caught the falling knife while agreeing with Haben, saying that it would indeed be quite useful. Since receiving the gauntlet, he had been training with Haben every single day to adapt to the tool while still teaching Leica. He then told Haben that in terms of talent, Leica was a cut above him. Haben asked if he wasn't worried about his heart with that kid always around and was about to remind him of the situation last time. But Asher cut him off, replying that he was not affected at all. The truth was, he would like to be affected, yet the old man was frustratingly cautious. Haben then told him that his stoic personality was boring and just like his old friends. This made Asher ask if he meant his old friend, to which Haben replied yes. Haben explained that just like Asher, his old friend only learned imperial swordsmanship and was a guy who despaired, thinking he had no talent. Haben laughed, saying that what his old friend thought was his own business, but that they also thought he had no talent. Then, Haben became serious and told Asher that now, he didn't know what talent even was. Asher was surprised to hear this and couldn't believe Haben would say such a thing. He knew that Haben believed in talent and considered his own talent a blessing, so he couldn't believe that the arrogant man had changed his values in just a few years. It made him wonder what had happened. Suddenly, Leica appeared, calling Haben. Haben asked her what the matter was. She hesitated for a moment before replying that they had a guest from the Empire, which surprised them. Haben was annoyed but replied that they were finally there, calling them a troublesome bunch. They then went out, and the captain of the Imperial Knights greeted Haben respectfully, reporting that the Emperor summoned him and that he should return to the capital with them. Haben told the Imperial Knight captain that he had expected the successor to the captain of the guard to arrive. The captain stutteringly replied that the captain of the guard was currently occupied with other matters. Haben said that he had been planning to go anyway, so they should leave tomorrow, as it was already late, and they should get some rest. The knights thanked him and left. Haben then told Ribeiro that it was good to see him after a long time, and Ribeiro said his farewell to him. Haben then called Leica, who was surprised, and told her that it was nice to meet her and he was sure they'd see each other again someday, though he didn't know what path she would take. She replied yes and thanked him. The full moon appeared over the castle, and inside his room, Asher dreamed about his past self practicing. Someone told him that he had no talent and asked if it wouldn't be better to find another job. He replied that he did it because he wanted to, and if he had planned to crumble at the lack of talent, he would have given up long ago. He told her to stop watching and leave, but Lapinia kept watching him and gave a word of advice that he would achieve nothing, and that his talent was pathetic and worthless. She said he would return to the earth as a third-rate swordsman at best and that it was his future. This caused him to wake up. Sitting up in bed, he realized it was a dream from his past life. He thought to himself that it was a disgusting dream. He knew that Lapinia was the youngest swordmaster and a genius with the sword. He remembered her telling him he would not achieve anything, but he wanted to tell her to look at him now because he became a swordmaster at the end of his life. Moreover, he was now mentoring a child who might become her successor. He then asked her if it wasn't funny and told her that she was wrong. Haben appeared and asked him why he was training at such a late hour. He replied that he had a nightmare and couldn't sleep. He then asked Haben why he was awake too, and Haben replied that he was leaving for the Empire at dawn. Haben then suggested they should have some quality time together since they wouldn't see each other for a while. Haben stared at him seriously and told him that he had been traveling the world for the past 20 years to find contradictions and experience the changing world. After meeting him, Haben thought he had figured it out. This made him wonder what it was and why there was bloodlust emanating from Haben. Haben then grabbed his sword and told him that he knew how false the things he believed in were, but he maintained his stance and silence. Haben then swung his sword at him. He didn't move, and Haben's attack speared his sides, causing the ground to shatter and slashing the three figures behind him. He immediately looked back and saw a swarm of demons being thrown away by Haben's attack. Haben told him that this was the truth he had uncovered after 20 years of traveling. He looked down and saw dead demons. Haben explained that those demons had been relentlessly chasing him, lurking behind him since earlier. He asked Haben why they were there, stating that those creatures should have been banished from the world by the heroes. Haben replied that while the heroes surely defeated the Demon King and all dark beings like demons and monsters disappeared, that was the truth known to the world and the history he had experienced. However, it was all a lie. The demons were still chasing him, likely trying to eliminate him and keep the truth hidden. He then told Haben that for now, dealing with those demons took priority, which Haben agreed to. The demons then ran toward them, screaming, and he swung his sword at them, instantly killing the demons on his side. Other demons launched an attack from behind, and he immediately grabbed another weapon, swung it behind him to gain force, and swing it around, killing the demons surrounding him. While he was busy fighting, Haben watched him while fighting the demons on his side, thinking that his movement was just as he had said and that it was the skill of a seasoned veteran. Haben smiled, thinking that watching him was like looking at his old friend. He confirmed to himself that this boy was no ordinary child. He had true swordsmanship talent, far surpassing even his own hero's swordsmanship. Haben then attacked with his aura, killing many demons while marveling at the level of mastery he witnessed. A moment later, all the demons were down and dead. When one of the demons still made a noise, Haben stabbed its head, explaining that the demonic beings had returned to the world. He also suspected that the boy might be a demonic entity, thinking he could be a demon imitating the appearance of a child after consuming the memories of his old friend Jinwoo. He asked if Haben was referring to a doppelganger, to which Haben replied yes. However, Haben clarified that demons could not mimic the swordsmanship of a human who had reached such mastery, so he was sure that the boy was indeed human and simply resembled his deceased friend. Haben then told him that he would go to the Empire to reveal the truth and warn them of the impending danger. He also mentioned that he must search for the missing hero and hoped they would meet again someday, as he wanted to have a longer conversation next time. Later, as the sun was starting to rise, he lay awake in bed thinking about the heroes and wondering if the warrior really failed to defeat the Demon King. He remembered that when the world was burning due to the Demon King's arrival, the warrior appeared like a comet and repelled the demons. The warrior was strong and radiant, like a hero from a fairy tale. But just like Haben, the warrior disappeared 20 years ago, abandoning the land and people he ruled. This made him wonder where the warrior could have vanished to and how to explain the peace the world had enjoyed all that time if the heroes had failed to defeat the Demon King. However, he knew that his duty remained unchanged. Whether he uncovered the secret or not, whether he knew the truth or not, he would continue to wield his sword, and that one thing would never change for him. He then met Luke in the hallway and saw that Luke looked exhausted and hadn't slept. Luke smiled creepily at him and handed him a piece of paper. In another castle, a man told their leader that he could handle it alone and asked if the leader really needed to accompany him. The leader reminded the man that Asher was the sword master's disciple. The man dismissed this, saying Asher was just a kid with no talent who only knew imperial swordsmanship. However, the leader insisted that Asher was dangerous and different. He reminded the man that when their organization first revealed itself to the world, the person who brought it to the brink of destruction was also someone who had learned imperial swordsmanship, so they shouldn't forget about that. Despite this, the man took his sword and replied that it was because their organization was weak back then, but now things were different. He swore that Asher would fall by his hand, and as the one who carried on the legacy of the hero, he wouldn't be defeated by something as inferior as imperial swordsmanship. This made the leader pause and think for a moment. Later, in the street, Asher walked to where Luke had ordered him to go, using the map on the piece of paper. Luke had instructed him to head to a specific alleyway. Asher chuckled upon seeing it, finding it interesting. He then stopped walking when he arrived at the alleyway and told the people he felt following him to come out. A black shadow appeared above him, and when he looked up, he saw 4 men floating above. He recognized them as members of Motorola. He asked them what business they had with his humble self. The other members were shocked to hear that Asher knew about them and asked how he knew. The man just laughed, finding it interesting as he hadn't expected Asher to know. The man then asked if Asher's swordmaster had told him about them. Asher replied that he knew well enough because he had fought them in his past life, too. Back then, they had settled in that territory as well, which he had found and completely destroyed their base. The man then teasingly told him that he had come to seek his own grave. Asher just smiled back, sensing someone behind him. He immediately turned and stabbed the person behind him. He then told the man that the past was the same as before because they were still chatty scum, even after being mercilessly cut down by Imperial swordsmanship. The man, surprised, asked how he knew about that. Asher replied that it was not important, as his goal was what mattered, which meant there was only one thing he needed to do. Meanwhile, in the Empire's castle, Haben arrived, and the Emperor welcomed him. Haben laughed and remarked that it had been over 20 years. He told the Emperor that he used to seem quite clever back then, but now he was just an old man burdened by reality. The Emperor told him that he still lacked respect for the royal family. Haben sat down on the stairs and said that he had walked the path of the sword, which meant human authority meant nothing to him. The Emperor set that issue aside and mentioned he had heard rumors. The Emperor asked if Haben meant a rift had opened and demons had appeared. Haben agreed and told the Emperor that the priority was finding the hero, so he needed the Empire's cooperation. However, the Emperor apologized and explained that it was going to be difficult. Haben turned back and asked what he meant. The Emperor told him that it wasn't the only problem. They were laughably short on manpower, and the hero wasn't the only one who had disappeared. Haben asked once again what he meant by that. Back in the alleyway, the man told Asher that it was interesting. Normally, he'd kill him, but he had changed his mind, so he asked Asher to tell him how he knew about their past. Asher told the man to try him. Suddenly, one of the men appeared behind Asher, ready to attack, but Asher easily slashed the man from behind. The other men jumped to attack him together, and Asher threw his daggers at both of them simultaneously, killing them instantly. The man acted amazed and teasingly asked Asher if this was the desperate struggle of a weak man, using cheap tricks. Asher just smiled, thinking how useful his gauntlet was. The man then told Asher that he was thorough in his preparations and couldn't believe he'd hidden a weapon in his clothes, not realizing that Asher had used spatial magic to generate it. Drawing his sword, the man declared that this was the end for Asher and that he would fall before his great swordsmanship, releasing a dark aura around him. Asher recognized the swordsmanship of Motorola and couldn't believe he was seeing that technique again. He knew it was a style that hid its form, traveled through the darkness, and struck at vital points. The man pointed his sword at Asher, boasting about the great technique and promising that Asher would perish by it. The dark shadow then rolled around Asher, so he positioned himself and focused. When an attack was launched in front of him, he blocked it with his sword. But the dark shadow surrounded him again, making him think it was unconventional because he couldn't predict the attack patterns. The man attacked from the shadows, laughing. The man then struck with strong force, pushing Asher back and making him let go of his sword while trying to maintain his balance. The man pointed his sword at Asher's neck, calling him a stubborn fool and telling him to die quietly. Asher acknowledged the man's talent, noting it was difficult swordsmanship to master. The man proudly replied that he was one of the 13 honored seats, recognized by the master of Motorola. Asher retorted that it was pathetic they were still clinging to that title and asked why Motorola was targeting him. The man responded that assassins don't provide their targets with reasons. Asher smirked and told the man he was going to die anyway, asking if he couldn't grant a dying man his last wish. The man replied that it didn't matter and they came to that land specifically to kill him. Asher asked why, and the man replied that it was decreed by the Oracle, making Asher realize he was targeted by the Oracle. The man confirmed and asked if that answer sufficed. Asher said it was more than enough. The man was then shocked when a spear pierced his chest. Bleeding and on the verge of death, the man stutteringly asked what it was, but Asher simply replied that it was a cheap trick. Meanwhile, in Eric's castle, Luke's room was lit up as he poured himself wine, happily laughing at the thought that Asher should be dead by now. Luke felt great, thinking the thorn in his side had been dealt with. He told himself that no matter how skilled Asher was, those were beings of a different level. Then, someone spoke, startling him. Luke looked up, confused, to see Asher standing in the doorway holding a sword. Luke dropped his wine glass, which shattered on the floor, and he fell to the ground, shaking in fear. Asher stared at Luke seriously and told him they needed to have a word. Luke asked Asher why he was there, but Asher just asked Luke what he meant by that, implying that it sounded like Luke was saying he shouldn't be there. Luke looked at him, wondering if Asher had really defeated those Motorola men and if he had discovered that Luke was the one who ordered the assassination. As Asher walked closer, Luke shouted in a stuttering voice for him not to come any closer, and asked how he dared step into a noble's quarters. Asher raised his sword and swung it at Luke, who screamed in fear. However, Asher only slashed the wall behind Luke, calling him young master and telling him that until now, he had lightly overlooked his actions, but this time, he had crossed the line a little too far. Crying, Luke begged him to spare his life. Asher seriously told Luke that he hoped he wouldn't disturb his peace with such disgraceful acts again. He then pulled his sword out of the wall and, before leaving, told Luke that this was the last time he would deal with him. He hoped they wouldn't cross paths again to avoid any further unpleasantness. Asher glanced back at Luke and warned him that it was his final warning. He then left, leaving Luke frozen in place, crying and drooling in fear. Meanwhile, in Motorola Castle, a man who had escaped reported to their leader that they had failed. The leader, having expected this, remarked that they had been defeated by Imperial swordsmanship again, just like before. It was unsettling, no matter how he thought about it, making him wonder who exactly that child was. Suddenly, a lady appeared, laughing, which surprised the leader. The lady asked the leader if he really believed there was a link between that child and the former guard captain just because the child wielded Imperial swordsmanship. She then teasingly told the leader that she couldn't believe the renowned Motorola couldn't even handle a single child, and that it was pathetic. The leader responded that their past experiences with Imperial swordsmanship weren't pleasant, but the lady retorted that he was simply outmatched due to his lack of skill. She declared that she would take care of the child herself, releasing power in her hand. She then told the leader that she would kill Asher by the might of the god Maruina. Meanwhile, outside Eric's castle, people gathered in the middle of the night, wondering what was going on. One of them explained that there were rumors of an assassin threatening their young master, Luke, and entering the village. A citizen asked who wiped out the assassin, and another replied that it was that punk, Asher. Everyone found it hard to believe because they knew Asher as a troublemaker. Then, the citizens realized that Asher was the one recently chosen as a disciple by the Swordmaster, making them wonder how that troublemaker could have changed so drastically. Karen stood silently on the side, watching and listening. Later, inside Eric's castle, Ribeiro couldn't believe it was Motorola and told Karen that it was a notorious group of assassins in their territory. Karen replied that the entire village could have been destroyed, and Ribeiro shouted in frustration that Luke had caused a huge mess. Ribeiro then asked Karen where Luke was, and Karen replied that Luke hadn't come out of his room yet. Ribeiro agreed and told Karen that for the next lord to endanger his own territory like this, Luke needed to reflect more. Ribeiro then asked Karen about the atmosphere in the village, and Karen replied that fortunately, things had settled and the atmosphere was stabilizing. He also noted that the villagers' perception of Asher was gradually improving. Ribeiro told Karen that in any case, they should express their gratitude to Asher. Karen, however, expressed his curiosity about Asher's true identity and questioned if someone's personality could really change so drastically and become so strong. Ribeiro responded that Haven had assured them Asher couldn't be a demon, but acknowledged that Asher was indeed a dangerous individual. If Asher were to use his power with malicious intent, he could easily destroy the Arak territory. Nevertheless, Asher had fought for them and saved the village, so they needed to be sure if Asher was truly on their side or if he had another motive. Ribeiro then told Karen that an opportunity to observe Asher had come and opened a scroll, explaining that they needed to see how Asher would react. Karen, confused, asked Ribeiro what he meant, but Ribeiro kept silent, thinking it was an unexpected chance but one that would be useful. Meanwhile, Asher was in his room, cleaning the blood off his sword and thinking about Motorola. He remembered ordering the man to tell him the truth. He had asked the man why his god wanted him dead, but the man replied that they didn't know the reason. They just followed the god's orders. The man also explained that the oracle had decreed to kill him, and they had only acted after gathering information that he was in the village. Asher deduced that it seemed they had planned to use Luke to establish a foothold in the village, and the man agreed. The man then stutteringly asked if Asher would spare him since he had told the truth, but Asher raised his sword and told the man he never said he would spare him. He wondered what they were plotting and then remembered Maruina. He knew that Motorola was a cult that worshipped the god Maruina and that the leader who held one of the honored seats received powerful strength from that god. They had expanded their influence using the god's power, but he had defeated them all in the past. Now, after disappearing for a while, they had shown up again to kill him. This made him wonder why and if it meant that the god knew he had been reincarnated. He then remembered the Sword's Gate and decided to head to the capital, thinking someone there might know about the secret of his reincarnation. Suddenly, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, he saw Leica looking sad. He asked her why, and she replied that she had received a proposal for an arranged marriage, which surprised him. Before that, in Ribero's office, Leica shouted at her father, asking if he had just mentioned an arranged marriage. She exclaimed that she didn't want to and wasn't ready to get married yet. Ribero told her that he understood how she felt, but there was no choice. He reminded her that she knew who the other party was and suggested she meet him first, as he might be a good person. Back in Asher's room, Leica told him that it felt like she was just being sold to a prestigious family, no matter what they said. Asher commented that the family must be quite powerful, and she replied that it was the Count of Balacheria, which surprised him. He wondered if Balacheria was really arranging an arranged marriage. Asher knew that Valbaka Balacheria was one of the past heroes and the current Lord of Balacheria. He had ties with Valbaka in his previous life, knowing that while Valbaka was not particularly outstanding or accomplished, he was a virtuous man who governed his territory well and was praised as a hero. He asked Leica if Valbaka was proposing to her, and she replied no, explaining that it was Valbaka's son. She then told him it was disgusting to think of marrying an over 50-year-old man, and he agreed, knowing Valbaka must be quite old by now. He wondered why Valbaka's son would be involved in an arranged marriage. Asher remembered that in his past life, in Balacheria's territory, Valbaka had introduced his son, Boros, to him. He had told Valbaka that he had a valiant son and mentioned that marriage proposals were already being circulated among the noble families. Valbaka had confirmed it was an arranged marriage and told him that he intended to let his son marry someone he loved, regardless of whether they were noble or commoner. This confirmed that Valbaka wasn't a typical aristocrat. He was humble and unpretentious. Asher thought that even someone like Valbaka had to succumb to the reality of nobility. Leica then told Asher she had heard the news that he had single-handedly disposed of the assassin organization that invaded their territory and wished she could be as strong as he was. She lamented that now she couldn't even hold a sword. Asher told her that she was truly talented, and it was a pity to see her go. She looked at him sadly and asked if he really meant it. Then, she told him she had one last favor to ask and asked if he would grant it, making him look at her confused. A moment later, Asher was holding a wooden sword and asked Leica if she was asking for a final duel. She shoutingly replied yes, explaining that since she wouldn't be able to hold a sword anymore, she wanted one last battle. She then pointed her sword at him and shouted for him not to hold back. Smiling, he watched as she jumped toward him, launching her attack and shouting for him to come at her. A moment later, a sword was dropped on the ground, and Asher asked her if that was all. She was gasping for air and replied that she couldn't go on. She looked up to see her mother, Benija, standing above her, looking at her sadly. Benija then held her hand, crying. Leica asked Benija why she was more saddened than she was, reminding her that Benija had an arranged marriage too and was doing fine. Benija replied that she and her father had known each other beforehand, but Leica hadn't even met this person once. Still, she told Benija that they were from a hero's family, so she thought nothing would go wrong and forming ties with them would benefit them as well. Benija then told Asher she had a favor to ask. When he asked what it was, Benija requested that he accompany Leica and look after her when she went to introduce herself to the Balacheria territory. Asher asked why him, and Benija replied that Leica would need someone to talk to in a foreign place, and besides, he was the closest to Leica. He agreed, as he also wanted to meet Valbaka and see how he had changed. A few days later, they were leaving the castle and inside a carriage. Leica stared at them, asking why her father had sent Karen with them. They both kept silent. She asked again why her father would send someone they weren't comfortable with, and Karen replied that it was the Lord's order. The true order Ribero had given Karen was to keep an eye on Asher, suspecting that Asher's real target might be Leica all along and that he might have been concealing his motives. Ribero also told Karen that Asher wouldn't risk his life for a territory and castle he always despised, making it unlikely he was behind the attacks. Additionally, the only person who truly acknowledged and followed Asher was Leica. If Leica left, Asher might slowly reveal his hostility towards the territory. They needed to watch Asher's actions and uncover his true intentions. Karen thought it was merely a scheme for Asher to win over Leica's affection, but Asher knew that Ribero still doubted him. Karen considered Asher a despicable bastard and resolved that if Asher tried anything funny with Leica, he would cut him down immediately. Leica called Karen, making him snap and ask why. She just asked how much longer until they arrived and if she was right in thinking they couldn't be that far. Karen replied that they were entering the Count's territory, so they should arrive in about half a day. She was surprised that it was so close and commented that it was surprising they had had so little interaction with people despite being neighbors. Karen then explained that Balacheria's territory had been isolated from the outside world for the past 20 years. When she asked why, Karen replied that they didn't know, adding that it was surprising they had suddenly brought up an arranged marriage after all this time. making him wonder why now after 20 years. She suggested it was probably nothing but wondered why the lord there was called a hero. Karen replied that Valbaka was seen as a saint, not typical of the nobility, making her wonder if Valbaka was called a hero just because of that. Karen continued, explaining that Valbaka was born into a prominent count's family and could have led a life of notable nobility. However, after witnessing the world's harsh realities during his travels, Valbaka decided to abandon the noble life and become a lord who cared for the sick and weak. Valbaka dismantled his castle and sold all his treasures, using the money to help the starving. He also imposed only minimal taxes on his tenants and even took up farming himself. The villagers admired Valbaka for these actions and hailed him as a hero. Leica commented that it wasn't easy for a noble to live like that and that Valbaka must be quite a remarkable person, which Karen agreed with. He added that thanks to Valbaka's influence, Balacharia had become a very peaceful place with kind people, and it had been called a paradise with no murder or bandits. Suddenly, someone shouted bandits, and a servant stutteringly reported to Karen that bandits had appeared. Karen couldn't believe it. Leica pointed out that he had said there were no bandits, while looking at the people glaring at them with red eyes and a dark aura. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comments section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.
The students are welcomed to school by one of their teachers, Mrs. Chevreuse. She will be in charge of Earth lectures for the year. She tells them her nickname and asks the class a simple question. She asks them the types of elemental magic that they have. The charismatic and confident boy in the class, Guichet Gramont, stands up to answer. He tells the teacher that there are 4 elements which are fire, water, earth, and wind. The teacher commends Gramont for giving the right answer. Gramont's nickname is Guichet de Gramont. To show the class what earth magic is made of, she brings out 3 pebbles and turns them into brass. This amazes the class because with the right earth magic knowledge, they can actually turn stones into gold. The teacher wants someone to carry out what she just did. She looks up and calls on the pink-haired girl sitting at the end of the class to help out. The girl's name is Louise Villers, and she is the center of this story. Immediately after the teacher selects her, the class starts grumbling. They persuade her not to pick Louise. Louise insists that she is capable of carrying out the simple spell. One of the students, Tabitha with blue hair and a long staff, just walks out of the class. Louise goes to the front and brings out her wand. She raises her hand to perform the spell, but the unexpected happens. Now in the principal's office, Mr. Osmond is busy flirting with his secretary, Longueville. It appears that this is not the first time he has done this. He talks to his assistant about the second-year students having their summoning ceremony the next day. This is a ceremony where they are to summon their familiars. Familiars will end up staying with them for the rest of their lives. Osmond and his assistant are in the middle of this when they hear an explosion in the distance. The duo immediately knows who is responsible. It is none other than Louise. It appears that Louise ended up causing an explosion while she was trying to practice earth magic. The students scream at her for always being a failure at everything. She doesn't even have a nickname yet. Her nickname at the moment is Zero Louise. After this, she was called to the admin room, but she was not punished because they believed that was the teacher's fault. The class warned her, but she didn't listen. However, she has great confidence in herself that her summoning ceremony will go out well. The day of the summoning is upon them, and the second-year students are gathered by Mr. Colbert. The first student to have a go summoned a bugbear, and this amazes everyone. Gramont steps forward, and he also summons his own familiar, but it was not what he expected. Kirchi is the red-haired girl, and she summons a scary salamander as her familiar. The last on the line is Louise, and she is even scared to carry out the summoning ceremony. The whole class is already expecting an explosion as usual. Louise chants the summoning spell and activates her wand. A big cloud of dust appears, and when the dust settles, an innocent-looking boy is seen lying on the floor. It appears that Louise has summoned a human as her familiar. The boy opens his eyes, but it turns out that he doesn't understand their languages. He is apparently from Japan. Louise asks the teacher if she can still perform the ritual again, but she says no. You can only carry it out once, he says. Louise is forced to accept the boy as her familiar. She goes to him and pecks him on the lips. He starts to feel hot, and Louise reveals that a familiar rune is being carved on his body. He looks at the back of his palm to see a familiar rune there. The boy passes out from the extreme pain he is feeling. Upon waking up, the boy believes that he has been dreaming before. Just then, he looks to his side and sees Louise looking at him. Since the duo do not understand each other's languages, Louise tries to talk to him through actions. She takes off her uniform and throws it at the boy, asking him to wash them. The boy starts yelling because he has no idea where he is. Louise wants some silence and she decides that a spell will make do. She casts a spell on the boy that still ends up as an explosion. Once the dust settles, the duo is shocked to find out that they can now understand each other. Louise just failed at casting a spell of silence again. However, it turned out to be a win because her familiar could now understand her. The boy reveals that his name is Hiraga Saito. Louise tells him that she is the one who summoned him as her familiar spirit. He looks at the back of his hand to confirm that there is a ruin there. Meanwhile, Mr. Colbert is in the library going through a book. There is the same rune symbol on Hiraga's hand inside the book. Colbert talks about the urgency of telling the principal before it is too late. Louise explains everything Hiraga needs to know about where he is. He gets overwhelmed believing that he has been kidnapped by Fnatic. He makes a run for it. As he runs through the building, he comes across Gremont. He tries sneaking past Gremont, but he is unsuccessful. Hiraga continues running to avoid Louise catching him. He makes it outside the building where he sees Kirchi having fun. He tries to make a break for it, but Gremont grabs him with his levitation spell. As he floats in the air, it dawns on Hiraga that he is truly not in Japan. This is pretty obvious because there are 2 moons in the sky. Hiraga narrates how he found himself in this new world. He was walking through the streets of Tokyo when a green light appeared in front of him. He touches it and ends up getting sucked in. This was how he got transported from Japan to a whole new world. To prevent Hiraga from running away again, Louise has a chain put around his neck. She expects him to be obedient because she is his master, and familiars are meant to obey their masters. Louise also does not believe that there is another world out there called Earth. Louise takes off her clothes and tells Hiraga to have them washed by tomorrow morning. She adds her underwear to the laundry to be done, and this shocks Hiraga. He asks Louise if she doesn't mind taking off her clothes when she's in front of a guy. Louise argues that she doesn't see Hiraga as a guy, but as her familiar spirit. Hiraga refuses to do the laundry. Louise threatens him with hunger. She says she will not feed him if he refuses to obey. She is to take care of her, but he needs to follow her every command too. Hiraga has no choice but to go with the flow since he has nowhere to run to. The following morning, Lousy wakes up to find out that Hiraga has washed her clothes and ironed them. She even asks him to put the clothes on him. She claims that aristocrats no longer do anything by themselves once they have a servant. Hiraga has no choice but to answer her. He puts the clothes on her, and as a reward, she takes off the chain around his neck. After all, he has nowhere to run to. It is time for the two to leave for breakfast. They arrive at the dining hall, and Hiraga is impressed with the setting. The food that is being served appears to be yummy. Everyone in the room has their eyes on Louise and her stubborn familiar. Hiraga tries sitting down, but Lousy stops him. She informs him that only aristocrats are allowed to sit on the chairs. He will be sitting on the floor while also given just a slice of bread to eat. He has no choice but to eat the bread. After they leave the dining hall, Louise tells them that the second-year students have no classes that day. They are required to build a relationship with their familiars. Hiraga sees Kirchi's familiar, and he gets scared. Kirchi assures him that familiars are obedient to their master and will not go beyond what their master tells them. At the gathering, Hiraga gets scared when he sees a familiar and runs into a maid. The maid is taking a cake to Geach. Hiraga apologizes for what he did. It appears that everyone already knows about Hiraga. The human was summoned as a familiar. The maid introduces herself as Siesta. She explains to Hiraga that those who can perform magic are the aristocrats, while those without magic are plebeians. This is the reason she is a maid on the campus. Hiraga realizes that Siesta is taking the cake to Geisha, and he wants payback for what he did to him the other night. Hiraga offers to take the cake in her stead. Hiraga sees him talking to a girl, Montgomery, and he already has an evil plan in mind. Just as he serves Geach the cake, he makes mention of seeing him with another girl the night before. Mont immediately gets jealous when she hears this, and demands an answer from her boyfriend. Geach claims that Hiraga is lying. Just then, the first-year student, Katie, whom Geach is also dating, shows up. It turns into a lover's quarrel real quick, and Geach ends up losing both of his relationships in one day. Geach gets angry that Hiraga has no manners against aristocrats, and he plans to deal with him. He challenges Hiraga to a duel, and Hiraga accepts. Louise tries to change Hiraga's mind about the duel because she believes that he stands no chance against a magic user. She suggests that Hiraga apologizes to Geach, but he refuses. He wants to stand up to Geach because there are no aristocrats in Japan. They meet at the vestry field for their duel. Meanwhile, Mr. Colbert has gone to see the principal about Hiraga and Louise. Mr. Colbert shows the principal the rune that appeared on Hiraga's hand. The moment the principal sees this, he asks his assistant to leave the room. Before leaving, Loungeville manages to get a glimpse of the rune symbol. Back on the field, Louise appears to be very concerned for Hiraga's well-being, and she is already in tears. She begs Geach to forget about the duel, but he refuses. He means to teach Hiraga a lesson. He summons a golem to fight Hiraga. The golem punches Hiraga and he falls to the ground. He stands back up to challenge Geesh again. Now in the principal's office, the principal informs Colbert that the symbol belongs to the legendary familiar. It involved the lost fragment of the Pentagon. He tells Colbert that the information must not leave the room. Hiraga's status should be kept under wraps. Hiraga continues to receive beating upon beating from Geesh's golem, but he is not ready to give up. Hiraga's body is already covered with injuries. To make matters worse for him, Geesh summons a sword for Hiraga to fight with. Louise doesn't want Hiraga to pick up the sword because Geesh will only get more serious with him. Hiraga is pretty stubborn and he picks up the sword. Just then, the symbol on his hand shines bright, and all of his injuries disappear. With one strike, he cuts down Geesh's golem. Geesh summons more golems, but Hiraga uses a speed attack to cut all of them down. He points the sword at Geesh, and he quickly gives up. This comes as a shock to everyone. An aristocrat just lost to a plebeian. Hiraga drops the sword and passes out. Lounge is seen standing in the distance watching as everything unfolds. 3 days later, Hiraga wakes up to find out that Louise has been the one taking care of him all this while. Siesta brings food for Hiraga per Louise's instruction. Louise is tired and is busy sleeping because she is exhausted already. After Hiraga is fully recovered, he is given a bulk load of laundry to do by his master. Louise claims that the laundry has been piled while he was out. Hiraga thanks Louise for taking care of him while he was out, but Louise replies and says his gratitude is not needed. It is her job to take care of him. All Hiraga needs to do is act grateful toward her and do all the chores she gives to him. Louise tells Hiraga to get the laundry done quickly and get to class. While in class, Hiraga realizes why Louise is called Zero Louise. This is because she doesn't have the ability to wield any of the 4 elements. She has no accuracy whatsoever. He teases Louise with this, and she gets infuriated. She tells Hiraga that he is not going to eat, or the number of times he mentions 0. Hiraga starts begging, but Louise has her mind made up. That night, Hiraga is already starving, and she begs Louise to forgive him. She is about to let him off the hook when he accidentally talks about Louise's small bang. Louise gets angrier and tells Hiraga that he will not be given food in the meantime. In addition to that, he will sleep outside. Hiraga is forced to sleep outside the door. While he is there, Siesta shows up and takes him to the kitchen. It appears that Hiraga is now popular among the common folks who do not have magic. They are even referring to Hiraga as their hero. He is served leftovers from the aristocrats, and he happily consumes the meal. After this, Hiraga and Siesta take a stroll outside. While they are outside, Siesta tells Hiraga how hard Louise tried to make sure that Hiraga didn't die. She reveals that Hiraga lost all forms of consciousness when he passed out, and Louise had to buy an expensive potion before he could wake up again. Hiraga had no idea the lengths that his master went to just to keep him safe. After their discussion, the duo says goodnight, and Hiraga makes his way to the dorm. He is in the hallway when he comes face to face with Kerchi's salamander. The salamander grabs him and takes him to Kerchi's room. She is already waiting for him, and she looks appealing. She informs Hariga that she has fallen in love with him, and she wants them to be together. She was impressed with the way Hariga defeated Geesh. Hariga is seriously tempted because Kerchi is attractive. Just then, several boys start to show up at Kerchi's window. It seems they are all her boyfriends, but Kerchi tells Hiraga that they are just friends. She orders her salamander to spit fire on the boys and chase them away. Kerchi is finally ready to get down with Hiraga. They are about to start their business when Louise bursts into the room and demands that Hiraga follow her. Hiraga doesn't want to, but she tells Hiraga that he will have to contend with several aristocrats the following day, and Hiraga this is enough motivation to get Hiraga off his butt. Upon getting to her room, Louise brings out her wand and uses it to whip Hiraga. She claims that her family and that of Kerchi are enemies, and she doesn't want Hiraga near her. It seems Louise is just jealous that Hiraga is with someone. Louise promises to whip Hiraga like a stray dog anytime he goes out of line. She asks Hiraga if he's a swordsman, and he says no. His fight with Geesh is the first time he will touch a sword. Louise then tells Hiraga to sleep so he can wake up early. They have somewhere to go in the morning. She forbids him from sleeping outside because Kerchi might come after him again. The following morning, they get on a horse and start traveling to an unknown location. Kerchi sees them when they are going, and she makes the decision to follow them. She always wants to be around Hiraga. She is planning to make Hiraga fall in love with her. She goes to Tabitha's room to beg her for her familiar. She wants Tabitha's familiar Sylphid to carry her so she can catch up with Hiraga and Louise. Tabitha agrees, and the duo rides on her familiar's back. 3 hours later, Hiraga and Louise get to a town. She makes her way to the weapons shop to buy Hiraga a sword. She is currently broke and cannot afford an expensive sword. The shop owner plans to rip Louise off, and he shows them a bunch of old swords. Hiraga has no choice, and he picks one of the swords that he thinks is best suited for him. Hiraga knows that Louise is broke because she bought the expensive potion for him. Meanwhile, Kerchi has been following them, and she believes that Louise is getting Hiraga a present to get his affections. She decides to go to the weapon shop and buy Hiraga the expensive sword. She presents the sword to Hiraga Hiraga, but Louise doesn't want him to use it. The decision is now left to Hiraga. He is caught in a dilemma of which sword he should use. While the argument is on, the old rusty sword suddenly speaks out. The sword scolds the trio for making noise and waking him up. They are amazed that the old sword has a mind of its own. It turns out that Hiraga will choose the old sword. The sword introduces itself as Delfinger. The sword is happy to meet its new user, Hiraga. Louise wonders why she always ends up with creepy things flocking around her. Up next, the principal receives a visitor in the person of Count Mott. The Count is on a royal trip to the academy. He has been sent by the palace to keep a treasure at the academy. Apparently, there is a mage, Sandy Fouquet, running around and stealing aristocrats' valuables. The palace wants to keep the Staff of Destruction safe, so they have decided to stock it in the academy. The academy's vault has several layers of security protecting it, and it was cast by a square mage. A square mage is a mage who has the ability to wield all 4 elements. A triangle mage is one who can wield just 3 elements. A line can wield just 2. Elsewhere, Hiraga is busy doing the laundry when Siesta shows up behind him. Siesta thanks him for the courage he has given to her and the commoners. He is a symbol of hope to the commoners. After her departure, Hiraga makes his way to the dorm. Kirchi comes out of her room and offers Hiraga the expensive sword she got for him. He is still interested in the sword, so he falls for Kirchi's tricks and enters the room with her. Kirchi wastes no time when she starts to touch Hiraga romantically. Hiraga asks her why she likes him, but she can't say anything tangible. He gets angry and wants to leave. She offers him several valuables, including her family's heirloom, just to keep Hiraga, but he refuses. Her family heirloom is a book that was passed down to her. Kirchi goes the hard way and tries to force herself on Hiraga, but Louise enters just in time to save him. Upon getting to their room, Louise beats him up with the whip for foolishly falling for Kirchi's trick. The following day, Louise tells Hiraga that he will have to stay outside the classroom for that day. Hiraga is always peeping at the girl's underwear when he is in class. While he is outside, the chief chef finds him and takes him to the kitchen to give him food as usual. Hiraga notices that Siesta is not in the kitchen and he asks after her. The chef is surprised that Siesta didn't tell Hiraga. He reveals that Count Mott has officially requested for Siesta. She has gone to his estate and she will now be working there. Hiraga discusses the matter with Louise after class. The sword jumps in to inform Hiraga that anytime a maid is called upon officially, she is to become the aristocrat's mistress. Hiraga immediately gets worried because of this. The following day, Hiraga finds Guiche where he is trying to mend his relationship with Mott. He asks him for directions to Count Mott's estate. After he gets the directions, he leaves on foot. Later on, Louise is looking for Hiraga, and Guiche tells her where he went. Louise leaves immediately, and she goes after Hiraga. Hiraga gets to the estate, and he is soon found out by the guards. Mott is called to check on the intruder. Hiraga informs the Mott of the reason why he is there. He says he's ready to do anything so that Siesta can regain his freedom. The Count is ready to punish him for barging on him, but Siesta emerges and begs the Count. Since Hiraga has promised to do anything, the Count tells him what he wants. He wants the book that is with Kirchi. It is their family's heirloom, but he wants it. Hiraga agrees to bring the book to Mott as long as he promises to give Siesta her freedom. Hiraga leaves the estate and heads for the academy. He runs into Louise on his way back. Louise takes him back to the academy and scolds him for acting carelessly. She says there is nothing they can do to help Siesta because the Count is a high-ranking official who works in the palace. Unknown to Louise, Hiraga has a plan of his own. He waits for Louise to sleep and he sneaks out of the room. He goes to Kirchi's room to ask her for the book. Kirchi is ready to give him the book as long as he agrees to date her. She tries to force herself on him again, but he gets angry and pushes her away. He decides not to collect the book again. He leaves the room, but he takes the shining sword with him. He has plans to burst into Mott's estate and break Siesta out of there. He gets on a horse and leaves. After he is gone, Tabitha and Kirchi go to Louise's room to wake her. They inform her of what Hiraga is trying to do. Moments later, Hiraga arrives at the estate, but the guards catch him again. He is taken to the Count. The Count is surprised to see Hiraga back so soon. He also does not have the book with him. Hiraga decides to draw the sword on the Count. Unknown to him, any commoner who draws his or her sword on an aristocrat is liable to be punished in whatever way the aristocrat sees his fit. The aristocrat can even kill him if he wants. Mott doesn't seem worried when Hiraga draws the sword on him. Mott is a triangle mage after all. Hiraga notices that he is not receiving the power boost he had when he fought Guiche. Mott is about to end him when Louise bursts into the room. She apologizes for the intrusion and tells the Count that she is ready to be punished instead of Hiraga. The Count refuses and he is ready to take the matter up, but Kirchi saves the day by offering him the book he wanted. Kirchi reveals that the book was summoned by her grandfather. When Mott opens the book, Hiraga realizes that it is nothing of importance. It is just a book filled with adult content. The Count gives Siesta to the group, and they leave. Upon getting to the academy, Siesta pecks Hiraga on the cheek in appreciation for saving her. Louise ends up punishing Hiraga severely for the trouble he caused her. Soon afterward, Louise has Hiraga preparing for the annual exhibition. The event is an annual exhibition where the second-year students get to show off their familiars. They show the people what their familiars are capable of. It is a mandatory event, so Louise cannot pull out. She wants Hiraga to get good at something before the event so he won't embarrass himself and her. She suggests that Hiraga learn swordsmanship, but Hiraga has no chance in that department. He claims that the fight between him and Gish was merely a coincidence. Hiraga needs to learn something quickly. The event is upon them already. Furthermore, Louise wonders why there has not been any punishment concerning the stunt Hiraga pulled with the Count. Louise goes to class and leaves Hiraga to practice his swordsmanship skills on the field. She hopes that he will be able to grab something before the event begins. While he is practicing, Siesta shows up. He feels shy when he remembers that Siesta pecked him. Siesta talks about how hard all the second-year students are working. They all want to present a good show, and this is because the Princess Henrietta will be in attendance this year. She wants to watch the exhibition by herself. Henrietta has become a symbolic figure for the people since her father passed away. She is quite popular among the folks, and they respect her. Kerchi and the rest of the second years are busy training with their familiars. All of them want the royal reward. Later on, Long sees Colbert reassigning the guard at the vault to another location in preparation for the princess's arrival. Long questions this, and Colbert assures her that Sandy Fouquet will not want to try anything when the princess's guards are around. Moreover, the vault is very secure, and it should be a difficult task for a triangle mage to break through. These are the reasons he is confidently taking away the guard at the entrance of the vault. Shortly afterward, the princess arrives at the academy and she is welcomed by the principal and the rest of the school. Louise warns Hiraga to behave himself, or else he will be whipped as usual. That night, the two are busy arguing in the room when they hear a knock on the door. Hiraga rushes over to open the door. A hooded figure enters the room. She takes off her hood to reveal that she is Princess Henrietta. It turns out that the two are childhood friends. However, it has been a couple of years since they last saw each other. Louise is acting all formal in front of Henrietta, but she stops her. The princess reveals that she has not had someone to talk to openly since her father died. Henrietta makes mention of the Count and reveals that she is impressed with Hariga for standing up to him. She then tells Louise that she was the one who made everything go away. She is the reason Louise was not punished. The duo made a promise to each other when they were little that they would always be there for each other. Minutes later, Henrietta leaves. She is happy to have seen her friend and her familiar. The following day is the exhibition and the students are gathered. The princess is also in attendance. The students start to show the people what their familiar can do. It is Louise and Hariga's turn. Hariga doesn't have anything in particular to show the crowd. The students are not expecting anything crazy from Louise in the first place, and they just laugh at the duo. Louise drags Hariga off the stage once their time is up. Meanwhile, Sandy Fouquet has made her way to the vault. She has the perfect opportunity to break into the vault because everyone is busy with the exhibition. She cannot go through the door, so she creates a sand golem to help break the wall. She's in the middle of this when Hariga and Louise pass by. The golem tries to attack Louise, but Hariga saves her. He gets caught by the golem instead. Hariga tells Louise to leave, but she refuses. She tries creating a fireball to attack the golem, but fails miserably. However, the explosion her spell made caught the attention of those at the exhibition venue. Meanwhile, Tabitha is the one who receives the award for winner. Her familiar performed exceptionally, and the princess complimented her. The spell Louise created had hit the vault wall, and she didn't know. Sandy is shocked, and she wonders what sort of magic the girl has that was able to crack the vault wall. Sandy's golem breaks through the cracked wall so Sandy can retrieve the staff of destruction. Those at the exhibition are now aware that something is wrong. Sandy retrieves what she wants and drops Hiraga. He would have hit the ground and probably died if not for the timely arrival of Tabitha and her familiar. Sandy escapes and the guards' efforts to track her down fail. Henrietta is glad that her friend is safe. She tells Louise that she needs to head back to the palace and report what happened. After her departure, Louise informs Hariga that she is worried about Henrietta. There have been rumors that the palace is a bad place. Henrietta is probably surrounded by enemies, and this worries her. Kerchi is busy feeding Hiraga while they are in class, and this is making Louise angry. She stops her and tells her to stop feeding her familiar. We all know that Kerchi will never stop. Kerchi then makes mention of the princess. It is rumored that she will be the one to take responsibility for the staff of destruction that was stolen. The guards that were supposed to be at the vault door were reassigned for her security. In addition, she was warned by her executives not to go to the exhibition in the first place, but she didn't listen. Louise is seriously worried when she hears all of this. Just then, Colbert enters the class to tell Tabitha, Louise, and Kerchi that their presence is needed in the principal's office. Upon getting there, Miss Longueville informs the girls that she has carried out an investigation concerning Fouquet, and it turns out that there is an abandoned house in the forest that looks suspicious. She says the house might be Fouquet's hideout. The principal tells them that they need volunteers to go to the house and carry out an investigation. No one is ready to volunteer, but Louise raises her hand and says she is ready to go. Just then, Tabitha and Kerchi also volunteer to accompany Louise to the forest and check out the house. The principal leaves the matter for the three of them. Louise will be taking Hiraga with her. Longueville also offers to follow the kids as a guide and the principal accepts. The team soon sets out to the forest. On their way, Hiraga asks Long why an aristocrat like Sandy would go around stealing from other aristocrats. She reveals that there are certain aristocrats who have devoted themselves to being criminals and mercenaries. She reveals that she has also lost the title of an aristocrat. Kerche wants to know how she lost it, but Louise stops her and claims that she is rude. Kerche then gives Hiraga the shining sword so that he can use it in case they run into trouble. They soon arrive at the abandoned house, and they check through to see if there's no trap. Hiraga, Tabitha, and Kerche enter the house while Louise stays outside to stay on watch. Longueville decides to scout around the building to make sure that they are safe. While they are searching through the building, Tabitha finds the box housing the Staff of Destruction. Suddenly, the sand golem appears. It tears off the roof of the building. Tabitha and Kerche attack the golem with their respective attacks, but none affects the golem. Tabitha immediately calls on her familiar so it can get them out of there before they are stranded. Hiraga realizes that Louise is still outside and she is in danger. He tells Louise to run, but she refuses. She attacks the golem with her spell, but it does nothing. The golem is about to crush her when Hiraga jumps in and saves her. He slaps Louise for putting herself in danger. Louise starts to cry and reveals that the students always make fun of her. She didn't want to run so that they wouldn't make fun of her again. The golem attacks again, but Tabitha's familiar has arrived. Hiraga carries Louise on the familiar so she and the rest of the girls can be safe. He then goes after the golem by himself. He attacks the golem with the shining and expensive sword, but it breaks off immediately. Delfinger tells Hiraga to wield him if he doesn't want to die. Hiraga pulls Del out of its sheath, and the rune symbol on his hand shines bright, just like when he fought Geach. He receives a power boost, and he feels lighter. He cuts off the golem's leg, but it regenerates. Hiraga is confused as to what to do to defeat the golem. Just then, Louise jumps down and drops the Staff of Destruction for Hiraga. Hiraga is able to figure out that the object is not a staff like they think. He unlocks the box to reveal the weapon inside of it. It is a rocket launcher after all. He shoots the launcher at the golem and it destroys the golem. Just then, Longueville shows up and says the Staff of Destruction fits its name. She picks up the rocket launcher and reveals that the golem is hers. It dawns on the guys that Longueville is Fouquet. She tells them that she has no idea how to use the staff, and that is the reason she decided to bring people from the academy, because someone might manage to use it. She's impressed that Hiraga is the one who used it. She calls Hiraga the legendary Gandalfer. Thanks to Hiraga, she now knows how to use the weapon. She presses the fire button on the rocket launcher, but nothing happens. Hiraga then tells her that the launcher is a one-time use. In addition, he informs them that the rocket launcher is a weapon from his world. Fouquet is easily subdued. Upon getting to the academy, the principal informs them that Fouquet has been handed over to the royal guards. The girls have special rewards waiting for them because they defeated Fouquet. However, Hira will not receive any reward because he is not an aristocrat. After the girls have left, Hiraga asks the principal how the Staff of Destruction came by. The principal reveals that he was fighting a monster in the woods when a man appeared and eliminated the monster with the launcher. The man was wearing strange clothes, and he was severely wounded. He took the man in to take care of him, but he didn't survive. He had 2 launchers with him. He was buried alongside one. The principal then gives the palace the other launcher. From everything the principal has said, Hiraga is sad that he has no clue how to get back to Japan. Later that night, a party is held in celebration of their victory. Louise respectfully asks Hiraga for a dance. While they are dancing, Louise thanks Hiraga for saving her from the golem. She asks if Hiraga will be returning to his world if he has the chance, and he says yes. Louise's mood changes when she hears this. However, she is well aware that Hiraga has no choice but to return home one day. Up next, the princess invites Louise and Hiraga to the palace. She wants to thank them personally for catching Sandy. She bestows upon Louise the title of Chevalier. As a reward, she holds out her hand to Hiraga. Hiraga doesn't know what it means, and Louise has to tell him that the princess is giving him the opportunity to kiss her. Hiraga gains confidence and draws the princess closer to Louise's amazement. He pecks the princess on the lips instead. Louise beats him up for this, but the princess stops her. Hiraga claims that he had no idea that he was supposed to kiss Henrietta's hand. After this, the princess informs Louise that she has a mission for them. She has had rumors there are aristocrats oppressing commoners. She wants the two to live undercover in the town in the meantime to help her uncover the truth. Louise happily accepts the task. After they leave the palace, Louise changes into a commoner's clothes to try and blend in. However, their problem starts when Louise tries buying a horse, and she is told that the horse costs 400 coins, which is all she has. She tries to rent a hotel room and is informed that the hotel room costs 200 coins for a night. Louise has never survived outside of the comfort of life. Hiraga suggests that they get a cheap place where they can stay, but she refuses. She goes to a casino to try and double the money with her, but ends up losing everything. Now the two have nothing to survive. They don't even have the money to eat, not to mention the one they can use to rent an inn. They are in the middle of the street when they are approached by a weird-looking man, Scarron. He tells the two that he runs an inn down the street, and he is willing to give the two a place to stay on one condition. He takes them to his inn and shows the group of girls who work for him. The girls dress in attractive clothes and attend to customers. They are to make the customers like the inn and also give them tips. Scarron introduces Louise to the group as a new member. Hiraga has been sent to work in the kitchen. He meets a maid, Jessica, in the kitchen, who shows him what to do. After this, Scarron decides to make things fun for the girls. He tells them that they will be competing in the tip race. Whoever gets the most tips for the week will be rewarded with the best fairy dress in his collection. He tells them that it is a family heirloom and it would look good on whoever wears it. Whoever works hard the most will get the reward. Louise is happy that she has gotten her chance to make more money. Customers soon arrive at the inn. Louise could not cope with the fact that she had to attend to commoners. She is the daughter of a duke, for crying out loud. She doesn't even know how to pour a drink. She ends up punching one of the customers who tried touching her. Scarron jumps in and apologizes on her behalf. He tells them that she is still new at work. Later that night, Louise complains to Hiraga about it. Hiraga says she needs to adapt if they are to survive. Hiraga sleeps off minutes later. Louise ends up sleeping beside Hiraga when she finds out that there are bats inside their room. As days go by, Louise continues to maltreat the customers because she simply has no idea how to treat them well. On the other hand, Hiraga just learned that Jessica is Scarron's daughter. Louise is in the distance, and she gets jealous when she sees Hiraga and Jessica getting all comfortable together. She throws a bottle at him and knocks him out. Hiraga wakes up in Jessica's room with her standing over him. Jessica says she has been able to figure out that Louise is an aristocrat and Hiraga is her servant. She is sure that the two are on a mission. She is willing to help Hiraga out on their mission if he lies with her. She is getting closer to Hiraga when Louise bursts into the room. Hiraga lies that he was gathering information, but that doesn't stop Louise from hitting him on the balls. She drags him out of there. Jessica reminds Louise that she is currently losing the tips race. This has Louise concerned again. It is the final day of the competition, and Louise has not been able to gather any tips. Shortly afterward, an aristocrat, Turen, enters the inn. He is the revenue agent for the queen, and he is quite rich. However, girls do not like serving him because he likes to touch them and will not give them tips. Louise steps up to serve the aristocrat. She believes that this is her chance to win the race. However, things turn south when he starts to flirt with her. She punches him in the head, and this provokes the aristocrat. His guards are ready to punish Louise for her insolence. Hiraga jumps to defend his master, but he doesn't have his sword with him. Louise ends up using her wand and thereby reveals that she is an aristocrat. She brings out the royal decree given to her by the princess, and the aristocrat starts begging. He wants Louise to spare him, and he will not make mention of what happened anywhere. He bribes Louise with a lot of coins, and Louise lets him. He runs out of there with his tail between his legs. Because of the plenty of coins the aristocrat left for Lousy, she ends up winning the tips race. She is then given the best fairy dress as a reward. She wears the dress just for Hiraga to compliment her. Meanwhile, Fouquet has been broken out of prison by an unknown man who appears to be her associate. Hiraga and Louise return to school to find out that everywhere is quiet. Louise remembers that they are on summer vacation. Everyone has traveled to take a rest. They get to the entrance to find Kerchi and Tabitha preparing to leave. Kerchi reveals that she's going to Tabitha's home for the summer vacation. She hugs Hiraga before leaving. While they're traveling in the carriage, Kerchi tries talking to Tabitha, but she just keeps mute and continues reading her book. Kerchi wonders why Tabitha is studying abroad just like her. She and Tabitha are from different kingdoms. They just came to Tristane to study. Kerchi was expelled from her former school. They soon run into a farmer who informs them to take the high road. He says the road up ahead is flooded. Back in the academy, Louise gives Hiraga plenty of clothes to wash. She is trying to punish him for hugging Kerchi. Hiraga doesn't mind the task. He packs the clothes and makes his way outside. He sees Guiche and Mont have relationship issues as usual. He looks in the distance and sees an old pot. The chef informs him that he wants to throw away the big pot because it is no longer useful for him. Hiraga begs him to give him the pot, and the chef agrees. He has no use for it after all. Del asks Hiraga what he plans to do with the pot, and Hiraga tells the sword to wait till night to find out. Soon afterward, Kerchi and Tabitha arrive at their destination. Tabitha's house is a big estate, and Kerchi is already suspecting if she is a member of the Gallia's royal family. They are welcomed by the family's butler, Percerin. Upon entering, Tabitha leaves Kerchi in the living room because she has business to attend to inside. The butler comes to serve Kerchi and keep her company. The butler calls Tabitha by another name, Charlotte. Kerchi realizes that Tabitha's real name is Charlotte. Tabitha enters a room where her mother is staying to greet her. However, her mother appears to be strange and hostile. The butler decides to tell Kerchi the story of how everything came to be. He says the decision for Tabitha to study abroad came from her uncle, who is the king. This confirms that she is part of the royal family. The butler tells Kerchi that Tabitha's father, the previous King Orlean, was the current king's younger brother. He was killed. Tabitha's father was loved by all, and he excelled in magic and other things. When the king died, Orleans was supposed to be the king because everyone loved him, but a fight for succession broke out between Orleans and Joseph. Orleans was murdered during the battle. Those who made Joseph the king tried to eliminate the rest of Orleans' family. One night, Tabitha and her mother were invited to a party. While they are at the party, Tabitha is given water to drink, but her mother drinks the water instead. It turns out that a toxic aqua magic which breaks one's mind had been cast on the water. In short, Tabitha's mother sacrificed herself to protect her daughter. Since then, Tabitha's mother has not been herself. Charlotte, who was once cheerful, also became cold and quiet. The name of the doll her mother gave to her is Tabitha, and this must be the reason she changed her name to disguise herself. Even after that, they still tried to eliminate Charlotte by sending her on impossible quests. She survived every one of them, and alas, the king chased her out of the country to study in Tristane. Back in the academy, Mont is preparing an unknown potion. Hiraga, on the other hand, has converted the big pot into a bathtub, and he's having a warm bath just like they do in Japan. He is in the bath when Siesta arrives. She asks to join him in the bath, and he reluctantly accepts. She jumps into the bath with him and tells him not to be embarrassed. Meanwhile, Mont and Guiche are on a date. Siesta and Hiraga start to discuss the cultures of Japan. Mont is pouring Guiche a drink, but she has plans to spike the drink with the potion she was making earlier on. Louise comes out of the room to look for Hiraga. She sees him bathing with Siesta, and she just backs away slowly. She is boiling with anger, but she doesn't want to approach Hiraga just yet. Siesta informs Hiraga she had stories about her great-grandfather too. Apparently he was from another just like Hiraga. Her great-grandfather also fell from the sky. Hiraga wants her to finish the story, but she says it is getting late and she needs to leave. She gets out of the water, puts on her clothes, and runs off. Mont finally has the chance to spike Guiche's drink. He's about to consume it when Louise shows up angry. She needs a drink and collects Guiche's drink. Mont is well aware that she has messed up. After taking the drink, Louise heads back to her room. Moments later, Hiraga arrives. She's about to start scolding Hiraga when the potion starts to affect her. She starts saying sweet things to Hiraga and even tells him that she loves him. Mont shows up and says she knows what is happening. On the other hand, Charlotte has received a quest from the king. It appears to be dangerous, and Kirky has volunteered to accompany her on the quest. Louise gets more clingy with Hiraga due to the effect of the potion. Mont reveals that the potion was a love potion and she didn't expect that Louise would drink it. She made it for Guiche because she wants him to stop following other girls. She has no idea when the effect of the potion might wear off. It might be a day, month, or a year. Louise is busy disturbing Hiraga at the field when Siesta sees them. It is pretty obvious that she is jealous. She leaves without saying anything. Hiraga runs after her to try and explain things to her. He tells her that Louise drank a love potion, and that is the reason she is acting weird. Siesta doesn't believe him. She says it is common knowledge that love potions are punishable under the law. She ignores Hiraga and leaves. Hiraga goes back to the room to find Louise waiting for him. She has taken off her clothes, and she wants Hiraga to make out with her. He refuses the offer, and this spoils her mood. Hiraga hugs her and promises to get her back to how she was before. He leaves the room to find Mont. He tells Mont that he is aware that love potion is prohibited, and she will be punished if the authorities learn of this. He demands that Mont helps him out. They need to figure out a way to get Louise away from the influence of the potion. Mont has no issue accepting help out. She informs them that the only way to break the curse is to get the spirit's tear. However, it will be hard for them to get it. Mont is reluctant to go, but Hiraga reminds her that he can easily tell the authorities. He tells Mont to get prepared because they will be leaving tomorrow. That night, Louise tries to force Hiraga into bed with her, but he manages to control himself and refuses Louise. The following day, the group begins their journey to the lake where the spirit is residing. Louise is also with them. They are headed for a lake that borders Gallia. They soon arrive at the lake, and Mont is surprised to find the lake flooded. The water level has increased exponentially. It turns out that this is the same lake that Kirky and Tabitha avoided when they were traveling to her house. The group needs to stay around till night because the spirit can only appear to them when the sun sets. Later that night, Louise sends her familiar to the water spirit. She has once formed a contract with the spirit, and she hopes that the spirit will still remember her. She formed a contract with the water spirit when she was little. Shortly afterward, the water spirit appears to them. She approaches them in a hostile manner, but Hiraga reveals their intentions. He bows to the spirit and begs her to give them a part of her. The water spirit agrees to help on one condition. She tells them that there are bandits disturbing the lakes, and she wants them gone. This is the reason she raised the water level in the first place. She was trying to get rid of the bandits. Hiraga accepts the task, even though Mont doesn't want to fight. She has no choice but to join Hiraga because he can easily report her to the authorities. The group wonders what sort of bandits will enter the water to disturb the water spirit. Mont says only a mage with wind magic is capable of doing so. This will give the assailant the ability to create an air bubble and walk to the bottom of the lake. The mage responsible for this must be very skilled. The group decides to stay around the lake in case the bandits show up. While they are in the woods, they spot two hooded figures at the lake. Hiraga wants to engage the unknown people, and Geach reluctantly offers to help out. He wants to prove that he is not a worthless aristocrat. They make a plan to engage the hooded figures. Geach is to distract them with his magic while Hiraga goes after them. The plan appears to be solid. The plan gets underway and Geach does as said, but the two unknown persons easily dispel his attack. Hiraga charges toward them, but he is knocked to the ground also. Louise attacks the two guys with a spell that takes off their hoods. It turns out that the two guys they have been fighting are Kerchi and Tabitha. This comes as a shock to both parties. Kerchi reveals that Tabitha was given a quest to reduce the water level, and this is the reason they are at the lake. They decide to ask the water spirit why she is mad. The water spirit reveals that the bandits stole a treasure from her. She says the treasure is Anvari's ring. She plans to flood the entire world until she gets back the ring. Spirits don't die, so she has lots of time to spare. Hiraga promises to get back the treasure if she lowers the water level. Surprisingly, she accepts. She calls Hiraga Gandalfur just like Fouquet did. This is the reason the water spirit trusts him easily. The water spirit reveals that the only name she knows of the bandits is Cromwell. Hiraga plans to find Cromwell and get back the ring. However, he doesn't plan to do it now. The water spirit is aware and she is not in a hurry. As a show of faith, she grants them a part of her body needed to break the love potion. They get back to the academy. Louise is finally free from the influence of the love potion. She returns to her normal self, but she remembers everything she did when she was under the influence. She ends up beating Hiraga again. They are in the middle of this when the princess comes into the room through the window. Louise demands to know why the princess has come to see her that late in the day. The princess needs something done with urgency and secrecy, and that's the reason she is there. The princess informs her friend that she has made the decision to marry into the kingdom of Germania. Tristane needs strong allies, and this is the reason she has made this decision. However, there is an item that she wants Lousy to retrieve. She sent a letter to her cousin, Prince Wales of the Albion Kingdom. She cannot afford for the details of the letters to get to the public. If it does, her marriage proposal will end. Albion is currently in chaos because some aristocrats are staging a rebellion. This is why she needs her friend to help out. Without hesitation, Louise accepts to help. Just then, Geach enters the room. He confesses to having heard everything that was discussed, but offers to help also. He wants to be in the service of the princess. Later that night, Siesta sees Hiraga where he is doing laundry and apologizes for being rude to him when Louise drank the love potion. She later finds out that Hiraga is not lying. After he is done with laundry, Hiraga goes to the lab to find Colbert. He needs to ask him about Gandalfur. Colbert explains that there are 4 elements of magic, which are wind, fire, earth, and water. However, there is a 5th one which is lost. The 5th one is void. The legendary mage Gandalfur is the one who uses the 5th element. The rune on Hiraga's hand resembles that of Gandalfur, but there is no current proof that he is Gandalfur. Hiraga catches the smell of something in the room. Colbert explains that the blood of the dragon in his possession is responsible for the bad smell. He is working on a way to duplicate the liquid. There was once a time when 2 dragons appeared. One of them disappeared and the other fell somewhere. He managed to get some of the liquid that they shed. When Hiraga returns to the room, he promises Louise that he will always protect her. The following day, it is time for the trio to embark on their journey. The princess gave Louise a ruby ring the night before. The princess said the ring belonged to her mother. The princess has also arranged for a bodyguard to escort them on their trip. After some minutes of waiting, the said bodyguard arrives. He arrives on a flying griffin. It appears that Louise knows who the man is. He is a mage knight, and he is also Louise's fiancé. He is also the captain of the mages knight, and his name is Wards. Before long, the group begins their journey. As the journey proceeds, Louise finds it hard to maintain eye contact with Hiraga. They soon arrive at the town by the port, La Noche. They arrive at an inn where they are to spend the night before continuing their journey. Louise notices that Hiraga is acting all goofy to Wards. She goes over to talk to him. She tells Hiraga that her engagement to Wards was arranged by her parents, and she has no say in it, but Hiraga only answers with a sigh. After Louise's departure, Delfinger teases Hiraga and says he is in love with Louise, but he denies it. Shortly afterward, the group goes to the cafeteria to eat. While they are there, Wards reveals his intentions to spar with Hiraga because he is interested in him. Hiraga accepts the challenge without thinking twice. When it is time to go to sleep, Wards tells Louise to follow him to his room. She is reluctant, but he tells her that he has something important to inform her. The camera pans around the room for a quick second. It appears that Fouquet is stalking the group. When they get to their room, Geach leaves to talk to a girl whom she claims caught his eyes earlier. After Geach has left the room, Hiraga asks Del if he knows how Gandalfur is. Del replies that Hiraga is Gandalfur, and that is the only reason he agreed to be his partner. Apparently, Del knew Gandalfur some 6,000 years ago and was his partner then. Now in Louise's room, Wards tells her of his intentions to marry her once the mission is over. Del tells Hiraga that he didn't get him by coincidence. He was meant to have him, and that was the reason he ended up picking him in the weapon shop. Del tells Hiraga that he has the ability to manipulate weapons. However, this only applies to items that are made to be used as weapons. The reason the shining sword broke when he tried fighting with it is that it was not made to be a weapon. It was just for decoration. Dell adds that his skills also matter. He is not 100% guaranteed to win any fight that he takes on. He still needs skills and strategies. Wards continues to tell Louise of his plans. He's about to kiss her when Louise mentions Hiraga's name. Wards takes a step back and decides to leave the room. He believes that Louise is already falling for Hiraga, but she denies it. Wards assures her that she will get to love him before the mission is over. He leaves the room afterwards. It is now time for Hiraga and Wards' duel. Hiraga charges toward Wards and he accepts that Hiraga is fast, but he still lacks training. He says Hiraga will not survive if he fights a real mage. He knocks Hiraga to the floor and tells him that he needs to work harder if he is to protect Louise. After the sparring session, Louise finds Hiraga where he's crying. He is staring at the sky and crying. Louise asks to know if he is crying because he lost the fight, but he says no. Hiraga claims that he was staring into the sky and this made him remember his home. He was missing home and that is the reason he cried. Louise knows he is lying, but he is not ready to accept. Hiraga shouts at Louise to leave him alone. Before she leaves, she tells Hiraga that she is going to marry Wards and this leaves Hiraga stunned. Louise leaves and he remains there. Moments later, Guiche finds Hiraga. He tells him that it is time for them to go. Just then, Fouquet and her golem appear behind them. Meanwhile, Wards and Louise are already leaving for the pier. Wards tells Louise that Hiraga and Guiche have returned to the academy. The fight between the two boys and Fouquet continues. Hiraga cuts down one of the golem's hands, but it regenerates immediately. Guchihei also summons his own night golems, but they get destroyed too. Meanwhile, Wards and Louise have made it to the ship, and they are about to leave. The two boys have no idea how to defeat the golem. As the golem closes down on them, Tabitha and Kerchi arrive to engage Fouquet and her golem. Fouquet also realizes that there are guards surrounding her. She immediately flies away and tells the group that she has successfully stalled them. Hiraga goes to the inn, and the receptionist tells him that Wards and Louise have left. Just then, they look up to see the ship they are supposed to board flying away. Louise and Wards are inside the ship. Hiraga is surprised to see a flying ship, and Kerchi explains to him that Albion is a free-floating island. As the ship flies away, Hiraga screams out in pain, calling Louise's name. Louise hears her name, but she is not very sure if it is Hiraga calling her. Wards manages to convince Louise once again that Hiraga has abandoned her. She is hurt by this, and she agrees to marry Wards. Hiraga figures out that Wards is a bad person, and he is working with Fouquet. That is the reason she was stalling them. He knows that Louise is in deep trouble, and he needs to rescue her quickly. The next ship for Albion doesn't leave until the next morning, which means they will have to wait till the next day before they can follow Wards and Louise. While they are in the middle of this discussion, Guiche's familiar, Verdandi, which is a mole, emerges from the ground. On the ship, Wards asks Louise where the prince is, but she refuses to tell him. She insists that the location of the prince is a secret that Henrietta told her in confidence. Soon afterward, they arrive at Albion. They make their way to the building where the prince is supposedly hiding out. They are surrounded by knights who demand to know their mission. Louise reveals that she is an emissary from Henrietta, and she needs to speak to Prince Wales. She brings out the water ruby ring that Henrietta gave her as proof. Just then, the leader of the knights tells her to stretch forth her hand. The leader of the knights has a similar ring to the one Henrietta gave to Louise. He reveals that the one with him is a wind ruby ring. The two rings touch each other and they display a rainbow. The rings have been passed down from both families, he says. He takes off his helmet to reveal that he is the Prince Wales that they are looking for. Louise and Wales enter a room where Wales gives her the letter intended for Henrietta. He then reveals that an organization known as Reconquista is responsible for the civil war going on in the country. After she leaves the room, Louise runs into Wards, who suggests that they get married immediately. This comes as a shock to Louise and she refuses. She wants to return to Tristane before marrying. Just then, Wards holds her and tells her that Reconquista needs her. She hears this and realizes that Wards is a bad person. She tries running away, but she's intercepted by one of Wards' comrades. He uses a spell to keep Louise under his control so they can do whatever they want. Moments later, Wards takes Louise to the church so that Wales can join them together as husband and wife. Louise feels that she is being forced to do what she is about to do, but she doesn't have the strength to break free from the spell. The deed is about to be done when Hiraga bursts into the church and stops the ceremony. He calls out Louise's name, and this is enough to break the influence of the spell over her. Wards wonders how Hiraga is able to find him. He reveals that they have Guiche's familiar to thank for that. Wales is shocked to find out that Wards is working with Reconquista. Wards pushes his sword into Wales and eliminates him. Wales takes off his ring before dying and he gives it to Louise. Wards attacks Hiraga because he is pretty sure that he can take him. Just then, Hiraga gets a power boost because of the love he has for Louise. His determination and passion to protect protect her makes him almost unstoppable. The rune on his hand shines bright and he charges toward Wards. He cuts Wards on the shoulder. Wards realizes that he cannot win the fight and the best decision is to retreat. He tells the two that he has completed 2 out of his 3 objectives. One is to eliminate Wales. The second is to get the letter, and he has gotten it from Louise. The third one is to marry Louise, which has failed. He uses a destruction spell on the building. He escapes from the building. Hiraga and Louise are rescued by Tabitha. They ride on the back of Tabitha's familiar. Louise wakes up to see Hiraga kissing her, but she doesn't stop him. She enjoys the pleasure of being in Hiraga's arms. Louise returns to Tristane with the news that Wales is dead. She gives Henrietta his ring and apologizes for failing her mission. Henrietta hugs her and says she didn't fail. Tears run down their cheeks as they hug each other. Later on, Colbert goes to the principal's office to talk to him and get his permission to go after the whereabouts of the fallen dragon. The principal gives Colbert the go-ahead, but the principal is pretty sure that he will return empty-handed. Colbert leaves the room at the same time Louise comes in to give the report of her mission. She asks Osmond what the Descendant of the Void means. She heard it from the man who put the spell on her. The man calls Louise the Descendant of the Void. Osmond explains that the Void is the 5th element, and this shocks Louise. She claims that she cannot even do basic magic, and they think she is the descendant of such an amazing element. The principal then tells Louise that Hiraga is Gandalfer. Hiraga and Louise continue their usual relationship as if nothing happened between them. She gives Hiraga a new set of laundry to do. He is doing this when Siesta comes to meet him. She informs him that she is going to her village of Talb for vacation. Hiraga then asks Siesta to tell him about her great-grandfather. She reveals that her great-grandfather was the one who was riding the fallen dragon. The other dragon disappeared into the solar eclipse. The fallen dragon is still being kept in her village as an heirloom. Hiraga gets interested in this and tells Siesta to take him to her village because he would like to see the dragon. Unknown to him, Guiche, Kerchi, and Tabitha are hearing his discussion with Siesta. They plan to follow the duo. Louise is pacing around the field thinking of how Hiraga kissed her when she sees the two riding off on a horse. She gets jealous and she goes to the chef to ask where Siesta is headed. She is able to get the info that Siesta is heading to her village. Soon afterward, Hiraga and Siesta make it to the entrance of her village. Hiraga decides to stay at the entrance while Siesta enters the village to retrieve the map of where the fallen dragon is. Moments later, Siesta arrives with the map. The duo sits down in the forest to study the map. They are in the middle of this when Kerchi, Guiche, and Tabitha arrive. They make their way to the cave leading to where the dragon is resting. Meanwhile, Reconquista has taken over Albion. While walking through the cave, they run into Colbert, who is also on the hunt for the dragon. It turns out that Louise is with Colbert. The group arrives at an old building at the back of the cave. Outside the building is a grave. Hiraga finds out that the writing on the gravestone is in Japanese, and this makes it easy for him to read. The writing translates to, "The Marine Force, 2nd Lieutenant Sasaki Takeo sleeps in an unseen land." They open up the building. Upon entering, Hisaga finds out that what they are calling a dragon is a military jet fighter. Hiraga touches the aircraft and his power immediately resonates with it. The rune on his hand shines bright just as he touches the plane. It then dawns on Hiraga that Siesta's great-grandfather is from Japan. This means Siesta is of Japanese descent. Colbert points out that Hiraga can now return to his world with the aircraft. The reason Siesta's grandfather was not able to return was because he missed the window of the solar eclipse. His other comrade made it and returned home. All Hiraga needs now is the solar eclipse to return home. Louise finds it hard to move when she realizes that she might actually lose Hiraga. The time for him to return might actually be sooner than she expected. Meanwhile, Henrietta has now informed her mother of the mission status, the death of Wales and the loss of the letter. Her mother tells her that Germania has also canceled the marriage proposal. This is a series of bad events for them. Just then, a guard arrives to inform them of an emergency. Later on, Colbert and the rest of the group manage to get the jet fighter to the academy. Hiraga finally realizes that the dragon blood that Colbert was referring to is actually gasoline. He needs gasoline to power the aircraft, and he urges Colbert to find a way to replicate it as soon as possible. Hiraga enters the cockpit, and he realizes that he somehow knows what to do when it comes to the aircraft. Dell informs him that the rune on his hand helped him out on that. The aircraft is a weapon, and that is the reason he is able to manipulate it. Louise stands in the distance with tears in her eyes. She walks away out of anger and desperation. Just then, Guiche arrives to tell her that there is an emergency. Albion has been renamed Reconquista, and they have declared war on Tristane. Now in Albion, the leader of the evil organization is seen having a meeting with Wards and Fouquet. The leader of the organization is the wearer of the ring that was stolen from the water spirit. They have plans of conquering the whole land, and they are to start with Tristane. Hiraga finds Louise to inform her that there will be a solar eclipse in the next 3 days, and he plans to leave then. Louise pretends that she does not care and tells Hiraga that he is free to leave. Hiraga leaves her presence out of annoyance. The authorities of Tristane sit down for a military and strategic meeting. Most of the aristocrats are calling for a surrender. They believe that Albion has more military strength, and it will be advisable for them to surrender peacefully. Henrietta cuts in and informs her mother that she's ready to lead the army out. She wants them to face Albion and show them that they are up to the task. Her mother agrees. Later that night, the principal informs the students that the school will be closed till further notice. The princess is already mobilizing the military for battle. Louise hears this, and she realizes that she needs to be beside the princess. She goes to her room and she finds Hiraga sleeping already. She touches his face and greets him goodbye. The following morning, Hiraga wakes up to see a note beside him. He cannot read, but Delfinger helps out. The note informs him that he has been fired and he is free to do whatever he wants. Hiraga stands up and shows Kerche the note. Kerche tells him that Albion has declared war and Louise has gone to fight alongside the princess. Kerche has no intention of going because she is from Germania. The following day, Albion sends a warship to Tristane, and the first place the warship is to attack is Siesta's village. It turns out that the leader of the Reconquista, Cromwell, is using the Ring of Andvari to control the military. Henrietta and the military are already on the way to Talb to reclaim the village. Up next, Colbert is finally able to replicate the gasoline, and Hiraga is ready to leave. Just then, he hears that the Taub is under attack. He changes and decides that he needs to help Siesta's village before he leaves. He starts the aircraft, but the jet doesn't have enough runway to take off, and Tabitha is forced to use her magic to help out. The aircraft lifts off and flies off smoothly. Tabitha calls on her familiar so she can follow Hiraga. Kerche is forced to join Tabitha. The trio fly alongside each other. Now in Taub, the military is having a hard time with the enemy's warship and their dragon knights. Louise notices that the eclipse is already forming. Minutes later, Hiraga arrives in the jet fighter. The battle takes a turn with Hiraga's arrival. He starts to shoot down the Dragon Knights with the jet. Cromwell, Wards, and Fouquet are worried about this. Fouquet and Wards get off the warship to deal with Hiraga before he ruins their plans. Wards gets on his dragon and goes after Hiraga. Hiraga swallows up Wards' attack with his sword. The jet fighter has run out of ammo, so Hiraga has no way of fighting Wards. On the other hand, Fouquet is engaging the ground forces. Guiche is about to run away when Tabitha and Kerche arrive. They stop him from running and force him to join them in fighting Fouquet and her golem. Guiche creates petals around the golem with his magic. He then turns the petals into oil. Kerche uses her fire attack to ignite the oil. With this, the golem crumbles to pieces. Fouquet is defeated and she runs away. Guiche runs after with the hope of catching her. The fight between Wards and Hiraga continues. Wards hits the jet's fuel tank and gasoline starts to leak out. He is about to finish Hiraga off when Kerche, Tabitha, and Louise arrive on Sylphid's back. Kerche shoots Wards with a spell to knock him off balance. Louise from Sylphid's back and Hiraga catches her. He lifts her into the plane. Wards regains balance and comes after Hiraga. Hiraga holds Louise tight and reveals his intention of protecting her with everything he has. Just then, the duo gets linked together. Her power has the Void Mage activated. She cooks up a spell that shines bright in the sky. With one strike, Louise knocks down Wards and destroys the enemy's warship. Louise passes out after using the spell. Hiraga manages to land the plane. However, the eclipse is now gone and he has missed his chance to leave. Cromwell survives the attack and he runs into Kerche and Tabitha. He tries using the ring's power on them, but Guiche shows up and hits him in the head with a stick. Louise finally wakes up in Hiraga's arms. She draws close to him and kisses him passionately. She yells that she pecked him as a seal of contract renewal. At this point, we have reached the end of our video. If you like it, do not forget to put the like button and subscribe for more new videos. Hello and welcome to Memo Anime Recaps. Do not forget to like and subscribe. After the events of the first season where Hiraga and Louise defeated Cromwell and Hiraga lost his chance to go back home, the two have become closer than ever. Hiraga wakes up from a dream where he went back to Japan without Louise. He screams out of the dream because he cannot afford to lose Louise. Louise wakes and asks him why he is screaming. He is very happy to see that his lover is still beside him and that his return to Japan was just a dream. Louise is now allowing Hiraga to sleep on the bed with her. However, she does not want Hiraga to look at other girls. The duo loves each other more than they are ready to accept. Meanwhile, Henrietta is being pushed by the cardinal to become the queen. He claims the people love her, and they need a queen to be able to stand against Albion. They are still in the middle of a war, even though they have halted Albion's march in the meantime. Now in his cell room, Cromwell is visited by an unknown woman. She appears to be his associate. She condemns Cromwell for failing on the task given to him. Cromwell argues that the intervention of the Void Mage caused his failure. but the unknown woman is not ready to accept any excuses. The woman has also been able to retrieve the Andvari ring that was seized from Cromwell. Since they have no use for Cromwell again, the woman eliminates him right there inside his cell. Up next, Hiraga and Louise are preparing for the princess's parade. Louise brings out a pair of glasses covered with rubies and hands it over to Hiraga. Hiraga wonders why he is being given a pair of glasses when he is not suffering from any eye defect. Louise refuses to state the purpose and just tells him to put it on. He puts on the glasses and realizes that he can no longer take the glasses off. Just as they leave the dorm, they run into Siesta, and Hiraga runs over to talk to her. While he is talking to her, he concentrates on Siesta's Big Bang. The rubies on the glasses start to beep rapidly. Louise appears behind him to reveal that the glasses are a magical item. Anytime Hiraga looks at a girl other than Louise lustfully, the gems around the glasses will glow. This is Louise's plan to know whenever Hiraga is doing so toward other girls. Louise brings out her wand and whips Hiraga as usual. This leaves a loud explosion that rocks the school. This is no news to everyone again. They are already used to Louise beating Hiraga up. Hiraga and Louise arrive at the parade ground that day, but Hiraga is not himself. He has been dealt with severely by Louise for looking at almost all the girls that pass by. She tells Hiraga to close his eyes and not open them. Shortly afterward, the princess passes by in her cart. Louise wants to see how majestic Henrietta looks, and she tells him to open his eyes. He does so, and the glasses end up glowing again. Louise gets angry and shoots Hiraga with her wand. This leaves another explosion that immediately has the guards surround them. They are treated as outlaws, but Hiraga is the only one captured and thrown in a cell. Louise tries to explain to the captain of the Musketeers' force, Agnes, that she is responsible for the incident, but she doesn't care. Hiraga wakes up in his cell to find out that the glasses are damaged and he can now take them off. Minutes later, Henrietta surprises Hiraga and enters the room. She tells Hiraga that she has a favor to ask of him. She tells Hiraga that she wants him to lend the kingdom his powers. She wants Hiraga and Laozi to work together as undercovers to help defeat the kingdom's enemies. There is of no doubt that the two possess immense powers to boot, and she needs this to protect the kingdom. She further adds that there are enemies in the kingdom, and she has only a few people to trust. Hiraga and Louise are one of those people. She then hits Hiraga with the news of Cromwell's death. This is proof that enemies exist within the kingdom. Only people who are familiar with the cell could have gone there to hurt Cromwell. The princess wants Hiraga and Louise to stay in the academy for now. After discussing all of this with him, Henrietta tells Agnes to bring Louise into the room. Hiraga is scared that Louise will beat him up again. However, she shocks him and jumps into his arms. She has missed him, and she shed tears while saying so. Hiraga draws her closer and pets her on the head. While they are returning to the academy, Louise brings out a book that was given to her by Henrietta. The book is called The Book of Invocation. She opens the book, but the pages are blank with nothing written in it. Upon getting to the academy, Agnes tells the two that Henrietta's words shall be passed down to them via a member of the Musketeer force. The duo's code name will be Zero. Upon entering the room, Louise brings out her whip and starts to deal with Hiraga for looking at Henrietta perversely. This continues till the following morning. Very early that morning, Agnes rushes over to tell the duo that Henrietta has been kidnapped. A flashback scene shows Henrietta and Prince Wales swearing an oath of love at the Lagdorian lake. It appears that the two were secret lovers. They loved each other to the point that they had to make an oath. Henrietta is in her room remembering all of these when she hears Wales' voice. She looks outside her window to see Wales standing outside. She is surprised by this. Wales assures her that he is the one talking to her, and the person who died was his double. Henrietta opens the window and jumps into Wales' arms. She has missed her lover so much. Wales tells her that they need to leave quickly. He wants them to return to Albion even though it is a risk. He claims that it is his duty as a prince. Now in Louise's dorm room, she is still shocked by the news of Henrietta's disappearance. Agnes informs her that the person who kidnapped her is headed toward Lagdorian Lake. They need to get going as quickly as possible to be able to catch up. Agnes is keeping the issue between her units only. She wants the assistance of Louise and Hiraga on the rescue mission. After relaying all the necessary information, Agnes gets on her horse and rides away. Hiraga preps the jet fighter to help with the chase. Colbert tells him that the aircraft is not fully operational because it is still under repair, but Hiraga needs it immediately. Hiraga and Louise get in the plane and the aircraft manages to lift off. As the duo leaves, Tabitha sees them, and she is able to deduce that they are probably leaving because of an emergency. She calls on her familiar, Sylphid. She and Kerchi get on Sylphid and follow the aircraft. Hiraga and Louise wonder who could have kidnapped the queen. They suspect that it might have been the spy that Henrietta was talking about. There is also the issue of the Andvari ring going missing. Louise reveals that the ring has the power to give the dead a false life. The person who possesses the ring will be able to control the dead he or she has given the false life to. The plane starts to malfunction because it is not fully repaired. Meanwhile, Agnes and the Musketeer force are currently on Wales and Henrietta's heels. A fight breaks out between the two, and Wales does not hold back when attacking the knights pursuing them. Henrietta is shocked by this. She reminds Wales that he is attacking her special unit. Wales claims that he is doing so to prevent them from getting in the way of their love. He wants them to the lake as soon as possible. He already has a ship stashed there which will transport them to Albion. The jet fighter suffers total engine damage and it starts to go down. Tabitha arrives just in time to save the aircraft from crashing with her wind powers. Louise finds it hard to say thank you, and she even scolds Kerchie for following her and Hiraga. If not for Kerchie and Tabitha, you would definitely be dead. They can now see Henrietta under them. They are shocked to see Prince Wales. He is supposed to be dead, they say. Wales and Henrietta make it to the lake, but they are cut off by Hiraga, Kerchie, Louise, and Tabitha. Hiraga tells Henrietta that the Wales she is looking at is just a phantom. He was raised by the Andvari ring. Henrietta is blinded by love, and she argues that the one who died is Wales's double. Tabitha attacks Wales with spears made from wind magic. The spear passes through Wales's body but doesn't harm him. This is enough proof to make Henrietta change her mind, but she is in total denial. Wales makes a counterattack spell that knocks Tabitha and Kerchie to the floor. Henrietta orders Louise to let them go, but Hiraga refuses. He is ready to open her eyes even though they are sealed shut. He draws his sword and repels Wales's attack. He charges toward Wales, but Henrietta stops him with an ice wall. Henrietta and Wales create a powerful spell conjured from water magic and wind magic. They shoot the spell at Louise, but Hiraga manages to block the attack with his sword. He finds it hard to hold out against the powerful attack. Louise needs an idea of how to get rid of the spell. Delfinger tells her to make use of the Book of Invocation. She brings out the book, and she is surprised when spells appear on the blank pages of the book. A dispel magic is shown to her, and all she needs is to complete the chants to activate the magic. Hiraga needs to hold on till she is able to complete the spell. Hiraga manages to block the attack until Louise completes the chant and activates the spell to undo Wales's magic. Wales is knocked down from the undo spell, and the ring's influence over him is broken. Wales returns to his normal self, but life is slowly leaving his body. He tells Henrietta to promise him that she will forget about him and love someone else. Henrietta finds it hard to make this promise because she loves Wales so much. With tears running down her eyes, Wales finally gives up the ghost in her arms. In the next scene, we see the male students of the academy getting ready for battle. They have all been drafted to the army because the kingdom needs all hands on deck if they are to invade Albion. Boyfriends and girlfriends are busy saying goodbye to each other. There is the hidden happiness inside of Hiraga that he will be the only male student left in the academy. He is already imagining wild things with the female students. Louise wastes no time in knocking some sense into him as usual. Just then, a dragon appears from the distance. The dragon lands in the school, and the rider, who is a blonde-haired boy, comes down. The rider introduces himself as Julio, and he is a student from Romalia. The girls are already falling head-on for him. Even Mont, who was crying that Guiche is going to fight in the war, wipes off her tears when she sees Julio. It turns out that he is a real charmer already. Later on, Colbert is teaching the remaining students in the class when Agnes and her unit enter. Agnes orders that all the students move out to the field for a training session. This includes Julio, who has joined the class. Hiraga is angry that Julio has spoiled his plan of being the only male left in the school. Colbert objects to Agnes's orders. He says he doesn't want war to be brought to the school. Agnes is infuriated and holds her sword to his throat. She reveals her contempt for mages who use fire magic. She warns Colbert not to ever disturb her when she is busy carrying out her duties. She reiterates that students move out, and they all comply. The female students are split into groups for training. She wants to train them on how to use swords and other weapons. She believes that mages are useless once their wands are collected from them. Hiraga is busy watching the training from afar when he is approached by the vice captain of the musketeer unit, Mikel. Hiraga claims that he is not a student and he doesn't need to train, but the lady insists. Meanwhile, Julio is getting close to Louise. He has chosen Louise as his training partner, and this is making Hiraga jealous. The vice captain beats Hiraga to a pulp because of his lack of swordsmanship skills. Louise runs over to comfort her lover. Louise and Hiraga inform Agnes that Hiraga can only fight with items that are made to be weapons. He is pretty useless with the wooden training sword. He receives a power boost when he is fighting with his sword, Del. Julio hears this, and he challenges Hiraga to a duel. Whoever wins the duel gets to kiss Louise, he says. He is trying to rile Hiraga up because he knows how he feels about Louise. Hiraga accepts the challenge, but Louise reminds him that he might end up eliminating Julio if he gets serious. Hiraga then suggests that they use wooden swords, and Julio accepts. It is said that Julio is a flamen, and Hiraga wonders why he is interested in Louise. Later that night, Hiraga approaches Agnes and he begs her to train her. He does not want to lose to Julio, and she accepts. She also does not like blonde-haired guys, so she accepts to train Hiraga. However, she is doubtful that Hiraga can learn a lot in just the space of one night. The training session begins and Hiraga struggles against Agnes. She toys around with him and he has no reply to all of her attacks. Meanwhile, Louise is busy looking for Hiraga. She finds Hiraga at the worst possible time. She finds him when he has managed to pin Agnes down. The situation looks awkward, and Louise believes that the two are having a romantic moment. She ends up whooping Hiraga's arse as usual. However, Hiraga has been able to pick up something from the training session. The following day, Hiraga and Julio meet on the field for their duel. The battle begins, and Hiraga is the first charge toward Julio. Most of the girls are rooting for Hiraga because they don't want Julio to win, so he won't end up kissing Louise. As the fight continues, Hiraga is already breathing heavily from exhaustion. Louise asks Del if Hiraga has a chance of winning, and he says no. With what Del has seen, he knows that Julio is a master at swordsmanship, and Hiraga has no chance whatsoever. Hiraga tries to get into Julio's head so that he can get an opening and defeat him, but Julio sees through him and he doesn't fall for his trap. Julio charges toward Hiraga with a finishing move, but he somehow manages to lose and Hiraga wins the duel. It is time for Hiraga to kiss Louise, but he rejects it. He is also not happy that he won. He claims that Julio is toying with him and he intentionally lost to him. Louise scolds him that he shouldn't have rejected her in front of everyone. Just then, the vice captain informs the two that their presence is needed. They get to the room where they are to have a meeting. They are surprised to see Henrietta waiting for them. They are more shocked when they see Julio inside the room. Henrietta tells them that Julio was sent by the Pope from Romalia because he is also trying to avoid the wall with Albion. Apparently, Julio is their teammate now, and he is to help Henrietta and Tristane in defeating Albion. Henrietta tells the trio that they are all she relies on. She further adds that it is not her happiness to subject the school to the dangers of the war. However, she has no choice. Now in Albion, Cromwell's secretary Sheffield is now in control of the country. She is using the ring to make the citizens and the military abide by her wishes. One morning, Louise wakes up to find her eldest sister Eleanor at her door. Elion gives her no chance to digest her presence before dragging her by the ear out of the room. She says it is time for Louise to leave the school. Louise drags Hiraga with her. Elion sees Siesta on the school field and drags her along too. She wants Siesta to help on the journey home. Louise and her sister sit down in one carriage while Hiraga and Siesta share the other carriage. Louise cannot keep her eyes off of the two. She is monitoring their every move to make sure that they are not doing anything together. Elion informs Louise that she is dragging her home to get her a groom. She doesn't want her to learn magic again. She believes that Louise is wasting away at the academy. They all appear to be aggressive in the family because Elion is even worse. She twists Louise's ear any chance she gets. They soon arrive at Louise's family mansion. Hiraga finally realizes that Louise is from a very rich family. Louise is welcomed by her other sister, Katlia. Katlia appears to be a cool person and not aggressive like the rest of them. While the family is having dinner, Elion tells their mother to stop Louise from going back to the academy. She believes that having a groom is the next thing that should be on her plate. Louise argues that Elion is supposed to get married before her, but Elion simply does not care. Their mother tells the girls that their father will be returning home tomorrow, and his decision will be final. They need to wait for what their father has to say. That night, Hiraga is worried about what he heard in the dining room. He cannot believe that they are planning to find Louise a groom. On the other hand, Siesta is thinking of Hiraga. She doesn't want to lose to Louise. She makes up her mind and she stands up from her bed to go to Hiraga's room. Later on, Katlia notices that Louise is worried about Hiraga. It is obvious that the two are in love with each other. She tells Louise to go to Hiraga's room and spend the night with the person she loves. Louise enters the room and crawls under the sheets. She kisses the person under the sheet and is about to take it to the next level when she realizes that the person she is touching has melons. She takes off the sheet to find out that the person she was touching is Siesta. Siesta is also shocked to see Louise, and she lies that Hiraga told him to come to his room that night. Meanwhile, Hiraga is busy looking for Louise's room. He accidentally enters the worst person's room. The room he enters is Elion's room. Elion initially hugs him because she is asleep and the room is dark. Hiraga too doesn't know that he is not in Louise's room. He ends up getting his arse whooped when Elion finds out that Hiraga is the one she was hugging. Louise returns to her room with tears in her eyes. Her sister was forced to pet her to sleep. The following day, their father arrives and makes his intentions known. He wants Louise to get married. They are to find a suitable groom for her. Louise tries to argue with the decision, but there is little she can do. Her mother suspects that she's in love with someone, but Louise cannot divulge the information because Hiraga is a commoner, and there is no chance that they will allow her to be with a commoner. Louise runs away with tears in her eyes. Hiraga is in his room when Katlia knocks on the door. She talks to him about Louise. She is aware that the two are in love with each other. She is also aware that Hiraga will lose Louise if he doesn't act fast. She tells Hiraga that Louise is in the courtyard and he should go and meet her there. She is fond of hiding inside the boat anytime something happens to her. Katlia informs Hiraga that she has a carriage prepared for them. He should get Louise and run away before it is too late. Hiraga finds Louise crying inside the boat. She is heartbroken that Hiraga prefers siesta. He takes off the sheet covering her face to reveal her teary eyes. Hiraga tells her that they should leave, but she refuses. She is angry at Hiraga for calling siesta. The duo starts to argue, and Hiraga is forced to reveal that he loves Louise. He says he is risking his life to fight because he loves her. The reason he is stuck in that world is because he loves her. Louise's face turns red when she hears all of this. Louise is very happy to hear Hiraga confess his love for her. She gives him the permission to touch her. He draws her close and kisses her passionately. They continue to kiss as the boat sails to the other side. The boat finally hits land, and the duo is shocked when they see Louise's father, mother, and elder sister looking at them in total shock. Louise's father orders that Hiraga be decapitated, but Hiraga pulls his sword. He grabs Louise and runs out of there. Siesta and the carriage are waiting for them at the other side of the drawbridge. The bridge starts to close, but Katlia uses her magic to stop it from happening and gives the two lovebirds the chance to escape. They get into the carriage and they ride away. As they make their escape, Siesta thinks to herself that she will not give up on Hiraga. She is confident that Hiraga will choose her in the end. In the next scene, the girls are having their usual military training when Agnes arrives to inform them that they are going to have a practical magic class. In order to do this, they sought the assistance of a teacher from the National Magic Academy. The said teacher comes out and Louise is shocked to find out that the teacher is her sister, Elion. After the introduction, Elion drags Louise to her room. She tells her that Henrietta personally sought her help in training the students because of the ongoing war. She was also the one who stopped her and her father from coming to the school to drag Louise back home. Henrietta has informed her that she has a special assignment for Louise. Elion makes fun of Louise and says she cannot practice average magic, which means the assignment assigned to her by Henrietta is not important. Louise's mood lightens up when she realizes that Katlia also came with Elion as her assistant. Later that night, Louise catches Siesta and Hiraga together. She's about to punish him when they hear a loud bang. They run out to investigate and they find out that the noise came from the principal's office. It turns out that someone broke into the office to steal something from the safe the principal is keeping in his office. Agnes tells everyone except Hiraga to leave. Louise is surprised that Hiraga is asked to wait while she is asked to leave. Agnes tells Louise that Hiraga's strength is needed in solving the case, and that is the reason she has asked him to wait. After everyone not assigned to the case is gone, the principal explains to those who remained how everything happened. He explains that the thief broke into the office while he was not around. His familiar brought this to his attention, and he rushed over to the office. The thief has stolen some items from the safe already. The principal managed to leave a permanent seal on the thief's chest before she escaped. The principal reveals that the items that were stolen are the water and wind rubies that the princess gave to him for safekeeping. Fortunately, the rubies that were stolen are fakes. He had sent the originals to his friend in Romalia. It was better than keeping it in the palace or the academy. The thief is suspected to be an insider because there has been no sign of entry or escape from the school. Agnes wants Julio and Hiraga to help out in the investigation. Hiraga then asks why Louise is not allowed to participate. Agnes tells him that all the mages are currently suspects. Louise's sisters are also suspects because the thief used earth magic. There is also the rumor that Duke Valier, who is Louise's father, hates the princess, and this might be the reason he put his daughters up to the task. Agnes tells Hiraga that she and Julio will check out the students, while Hiraga and Michelle will investigate Elion and Katleya. The thief has a seal on her chest, so they should ensure to check the chest of the suspect. Hiraga and Michelle get on it right away. Michelle tells Hiraga to check the sisters while she handles the rest of the teachers. Hiraga sneaks into Elion's room and manages to open her shirt to check if the seal is there or not. He successfully confirms that the seal is not there. Unfortunately for him, Elion wakes up and catches him in the act. She ends up beating him up. After this, Hiraga makes his way to Katlia's room. Katlia is awake when he gets there. Before he could explain the purpose of his visit, Louise burst into the room. She has been looking for Hiraga. She believes that Hiraga is trying to do something naughty with her sister and drags him away. She drags him to their room and tells him to take off his clothes. She already bought a new whip and she is ready to use it on him. She's about to get down to business when they hear another explosion. They rush outside to check. It turns out that the explosion came from Katlia's room. She tells Agnes and the investigators that the thief came into her room, burned her in the chest, and ran away. Her story sounds suspicious, and Julio claims that she intentionally burned her chest to remove the seal. Louise tries to defend her sister that she is not the culprit. Michelle also shows up and reveals that she just found the fake water and wind rubies in the hay. All fingers now point to Katlia as the thief. While they are busy arguing, Elion enters the room and picks up a part of the candle used to burn Katlia's chest. There is a strand of hair on it. She says the hair strand belongs to either Katlia or the thief. she has a potion that will make the hair strand go back to its owner. She pours the potion on the hair and the hair flies into Michelle's hair. Michelle starts to deny the allegations. She claims that the potion is fake and all. Agnes tells her to open her shirt and prove to them that she isn't the culprit. Agnes further adds that the rubies aren't fake. They are the original ones, but they intentionally said they are fake so the culprit will dump them. Michelle is forced to open her shirt, and it turns out that she is the culprit after all. She tries to attack Agnes, but Hiraga blocks her. Agnes says she has always suspected that the person involved is someone close to her. Michelle manages to push Hiraga aside and escape through the broken part of the wall. However, Elion creates a golem to stop her. She is not ready to give up, and Agnes is forced to fire a warning shot at her. She finally surrenders, and she is taken into custody. While in custody, Agnes questions Michelle about her actions. She reveals that she has always hated the royal family because of one thing. While she was little, her father was accused of a crime, and he ended up eliminating himself. Her mother followed suit too. Agnes argues that what happened was no excuse for her to hate the royal family. She reveals that her hometown was also razed when she was little, and she was the sole survivor. She didn't because of this turn to the dark side. Michelle reveals that her father's friend took him in when she had no one else. She is working with this so-called father's friend. Agnes immediately figures out who she's talking about. She heard about the case before, and she knows who Michelle's father's friend is. His name is Lishman. Agnes is interested in the man because the man is her foe too. After she is done interrogating Michelle, Agnes takes the report of the investigation to Henrietta. Agnes asks if the Queen plans to arrest Lishman, who is the chair-president of legal affairs, and prosecute him, but she says no. The Queen states that Michelle's confession is not enough to arrest and prosecute Lishman. They need concrete proof if they are to prosecute him for treason. Agnes is thankful to the Queen for picking a commoner like her and giving her rank. She has raised her past the level she expects and even given her the chance to take revenge on her foe. Shortly afterward, Hiraga and Louise make their way to Scarin's inn. The Queen has told the two to wait for her at the inn. She has an important mission to give to them. Upon getting to the inn, they find out that Scarin is currently organizing a play that will premiere in the theater. He is happy to see the two, and he immediately adds them to the staff. That night, Louise works as a waitress in the inn, while Hiraga is busy in the kitchen. Julio soon arrives, and he asks for Louise. He wants Louise to serve him. Hiraga is already jealous when he sees Julio with Louise, but there is nothing he can do. Julio and Louise sit down to drink and eat together. Hiraga goes outside to dump the waste. He runs into a woman in a hood and he apologizes for the mistake. The lady takes off her hoodie and it turns out to be the Queen. The Queen drags him into the inn rooms and tells him not to shout. Hiraga notices the presence of soldiers in the area. The Queen tells him that she needs his strength. She wants Hiraga to be her bodyguard for the next couple of hours. Henrietta is undercover, and this is the reason she cannot make use of her royal guards. She takes off her clothes and changes into commoner clothes so she can easily blend in. Meanwhile, Louise just noticed that Hiraga is nowhere to be found. Hiraga and Henrietta head out, but they come across a military checkpoint. The duo is forced to act like a couple to prevent the soldiers from suspecting them. Elsewhere, Agnes has made her way to Lishman's estate. She tells Lishman that the Queen has been kidnapped and they need his authority to seal the borders and major roads. As Agnes is about to leave the house, she asks Lishman if he knows about the village that was burnt down 20 years ago. The villagers were accused of being Protestants. Lishman admits to being the mastermind behind the massacre. He claims that it was justified because the village people were trying to overturn the country. Agnes tries to get more details about the event, but Lishman is not ready to talk, and Agnes leaves. Louise is now busy searching for Hiraga. Meanwhile, Hiraga and Henrietta are holed up in a room. The guards looking for Henrietta burst into the room, but they leave when they see Henrietta kissing Hiraga. They are embarrassed to check their faces properly because they believe that they are couples. Now at Lishman's estate, he receives a suspicious visitor. As the visitor leaves the house, Agnes, who has been lurking around, follows him. She continues following him into town. While she is at it, she runs into Louise. Agnes is forced to take Louise with her so she won't ruin the mission. Agnes sees the visitor meeting with another man. The visitor tells the man he is meeting with that Lishman is waiting for him at the usual theater. They have been informed that the princess is missing and they need to act fast about it. Henrietta informs Hiraga that everything going on is a scheme to lure out the traitor who is in the palace. This is the reason she has intentionally declared herself missing. She knows that whoever the traitor is will currently be making a move. She asked Hiraga to be her bodyguard because of this. Henrietta then tells Hiraga that it is time for them to head to the theater. Agnes is also on her way to the theater. She tells Louise to remain on standby at Scarin's inn in case anything goes wrong. Soon afterward, Louise joins Scarin and the crew as they head to the theater. She meets Hiraga backstage and she is surprised that he is not with Henrietta. Moments later, the show begins. Meanwhile, Lishman and his accomplice are watching the play. However, they are actually having a meeting and just using the play as cover. They talk about taking their chances since Henrietta is missing. Just then, Henrietta shows up behind them and reveals that she heard everything. She orders Lishman to be arrested by the guards for treason. Unknown to them, Lishman also has his own people inside the theater. A fight breaks out between the guards and Lishman's minions. It turns out the man meeting with Lishman is from Albion. Julio apprehends the man himself. Hiraga saves Henrietta from the jaws of death when one of the bad guys charges toward her. Lishman uses the commotion to escape into the underground section of the theater. He believes he has escaped, but to his surprise, Agnes is already waiting for him. Agnes reveals that he has no intention of apprehending Lishman. She wants to end him. She tells Lishman that she is a survivor of the village he ordered to be burnt down. Lishman reveals that the records she is looking for about the town are kept underneath the Magic Academy. Lishman uses the opportunity to attack Agnes because he believes that she has let her guard down. However, Agnes's will and determination surpass Lishman's tricks. She pushes her sword into Lishman and ends his life right there. With this, Henrietta is able to take down one traitor, and Agnes avenges the death of her kinsman too. In the next scene, Cardinal Masserini and General Poitiers ask Henrietta to sign the declaration of war against Albion. Henrietta doesn't want to sign this because she wants to resolve the crisis peacefully. The Cardinal tells her that the citizens are pushing war and it will be catastrophic to deny. He further adds that Henrietta might be dethroned if she refuses to take action against Albion. Henrietta says she is not scared of a coup d'etat, but the Cardinal informs her that the next ruler might be aggressive and this will cause massive bloodshed. With Henrietta on the throne, the bloodshed can still be managed. With all this, Henrietta finally gives in, and she signs the document to declare war on Albion. Germania is also in alliance with Tristane, and the two nations will fight Albion together. 1 week later, the report comes in that Tristane and Germania forces have won their first battle against Albion. Tristan suffered minimal casualties, and this calls for celebration among the citizens. Hiraga wonders why the queen has now declared war. She was against the war before, he says. Louise says circumstances might have changed, and that is the reason she had to declare war. As the duo walks through the market, Hiraga sees a sailor uniform that he likes and ends up buying it. Now at the academy, Agnes informs Julio, Hiraga, and Louise that the principal has forbidden her to access the vault beneath the school. She has gotten permission from the queen to check the vault already, but Osmond is refusing. Chiloyo says the vault was built over 1,000 years ago and there are several magic locks around it. Entering carelessly might cost someone their life. This might be the reason the principal doesn't want her to go. Agnes is not ready to give up because she needs to see a particular document that is inside the vault. They approach Elion concerning the locks. They want her to help out with the vault locks. Meanwhile, Hiraga has given Siesta the sailor uniform he bought in the market. He believes that the uniform will look better on Siesta than on Louise. Siesta is looking for Hiraga to show him the dress, and he sees the group making their way to the entrance of the vault. She decides to follow Hiraga. They get to the entrance of the vault, and Elion easily unlocks the vault with her magic. Agnes wants to proceed alone, but the rest of the group disagrees. They want to see what is inside the vault, too. While they are discussing this, Colbert shows up. He tries to stop them, but he ends up going with them, too. Agnes says she needs to sort out the case as soon as possible. The Queen will soon be joining their forces on the battlefield, and she needs to be by her side. The Queen has refused to stay at home while thousands are on the battlefield. As they walk through the hallway, Agnes gets the feeling that someone is following them. Just then, Siesta appears from behind and reveals that she is following Hiraga, so she can show him how the sailor's uniform looks on her. Louise gets angry when she finds out that Hiraga gave Siesta the clothes instead of her. She hits Hiraga with her explosion spell, which in turn causes the entrance to cave in. They no longer have a choice but to continue into the vault. As they continue the journey, Colbert reveals his stance against war. He believes that war is unnecessary because it ends in the loss of lives. Agnes then tells the group that he has killed Lishman, who is responsible for the massacre of her town, but she needs to find everyone who is involved in the assault on her town. She also needs the name of the troop's captain that was sent to the town. They soon get to the bridge leading to the main vault. They cross the bridge to have access to the entrance of the main vault. They see a writing on the entrance. Elion reads out the writing, and it states that the use of magic is prohibited while they are inside the vault. Failure to comply will lead to a catastrophe. They enter the vault to find out that it contains lots of books. It appears to be some sort of library holding confidential books and documents. The document Agnes is looking for is dated back 20 years ago. Louise soon finds the book containing the Dungletail case that Agnes is interested in. She sits down to read the book. Just then, Siesta trips and drops some books in the process. Elion uses her magic to rearrange the books. She is done using her magic when she realizes that magic is prohibited. The building starts to shake and the team has no choice but to run out of there. Agnes remains there trying to get all the information she wants out of the book. Hiraga and Colbert wait for her even though the building is coming down. Agnes finds out that the soldiers were given an order to burn all humans near Dungletail to prevent the spread of the epidemic. She gets to the page that is supposed to contain the captain's name, but finds out that it has been torn off. The building is already coming down down and there is no time to start searching the whole place. Hiraga, Agnes, and Colbert run out of there. Colbert carries Agnes on his back as they run over the falling bridge. As they return to the academy, several questions remain unanswered. The epidemic that they were trying to prevent is unknown, and the name of the troop's captain has also been stripped off of the book. They arrive at the section where the entrance is blocked by rubble, and Louise uses her explosion to clear the path just like she blocked it. Meanwhile, Katlia can hear all the explosions from her room. Up next, Sheffield invites a fire mage, Menville, to Albion. She has a mission to give him. She wants him to raze down a particular place in Tristane. She gives him the mission to attack the Magic Academy and raze it to the ground. Now in the Magic Academy, Louise gets kidnapped by Elion and Hiraga helps her out. It turns out that Louise is planning to join Henrietta on the front lines. Elion doesn't want anything to happen to her sister, and this is the reason she has decided to lock her in a cell till she receives some sense. Elion states that Louise is the daughter of an important man and she is supposed to be kept safe. Elion will be holding on to Louise's wand, so she has no way of casting an explosion spell to break out of the cell. Louise totally agrees with Elion, and he will be staying guard at the door. After Elion has left, Colbert shows up. He tries to talk to Louise about the war. He doesn't fancy war because no matter how you put it, war means murder. Colbert doesn't want any of his students to go through something like that. He tries to convince Louise to forget about going to battle. Later that night, a battleship appears above the academy. Menville and his men are inside the ship. They are prepared to rain down hell on the school. Menville and his men soon infiltrate the school. They take out the few guards that they come across. Menville tells his men to get into position and begin their plan. Tabitha is the first to notice that something odd is going on in the school, and she goes to Kirch's room to inform her. Some of the invaders make their way to Agnes's room, but she takes them down because of her training. Agnes rendezvous with the rest of her unit and tells them to armor up in preparation to repel the attackers. Colbert also notices that something is happening. He wants to go and check it out. He tells Hiraga to stay and protect Louise in her cell. Agnes receives the report that the invaders have taken hostages and they have gathered them in the cafeteria. Inside the cafeteria, Julio is among the hostages and he is trying to rile Menville up to get him to slip up, but Menville is an expert and he is not going to fall for Julio's cheap tricks. Menville tells the hostages to keep calm and they might make it out alive. Osmond offers himself up as a hostage so that Menville can release the students, but he refuses. Elion and Catalea also do the same, but Menville does not accept the deal. He wants all the aristocrats' children. Having all their children will give them an incentive to force Henrietta's hand to stop the war. Agnes and her unit now have the cafeteria surrounded. She tells Menville to give himself up and she won't kill him. Some of Agnes's unit tries to sneak into the cafeteria, but Menville sees through them and he attacks them with fire. Meanwhile, Colbert has gone to his lab to send a message. Now in the cell, Hiraga and Louise have both heard the explosions. Louise manages to convince Hiraga to give her her wand so she can leave the cell and help out. Hiraga has no choice but to comply. Louise uses her explosion spell as usual and she destroys the door. Menville tells Agnes to stop what she is trying to do or else he will start executing hostages. Agnes and her unit rush into the room, but Menville easily destroys their weapons with his fire magic. Agnes charges toward him with her sword. While the duo are fighting each other, Menville reveals that he once burnt down an entire village and he enjoyed it. It immediately dawns on Agnes that Menville is responsible for the destruction of her hometown. Meanwhile, Tabitha, Kirchi, Hariga, and Louise have met. They are trying to come up with a plan. Agnes gets furious and she attacks Menville ferociously. Menville manages to disarm her. Colbert runs into Hiraga and the other three. He tells them to leave the school while they can because he doesn't want them to be involved in the fighting. He has sent for reinforcements already. Kirchi is not ready to go because it will take some time for the reinforcements to arrive. She tells Colbert to leave if he wants to. Now in the cafeteria, Menville tells Agnes that he was not the captain of the unit that raised her town. He was the vice captain then. Flamesnake was the captain. He was referred to as Engia then. He is a very cruel person, and even Menville is searching for Flamesnake. Menville wants to take revenge on him for giving him a scar. Flamesnake was the one who burnt Menville's eyes. Colbert and the kids are still looking for a way to handle the situation. He tells them to leave everything to him. He leaves for his lab and tells Hiraga to follow him. Menville continues his story of how Snakeflame burnt the village. He explains that Snakeflame is so powerful, and he manages to burn down the whole village with just one strike. Menville was attracted to this power, and he wanted it. He attacked Snakeflame from behind, but he was too powerful. He sucked in his attack and replied with a counterattack, leaving him with both of his eyes gone. While Colbert and Hiraga are in the lab, Colbert tells Hiraga that he would like to visit Earth one day. He is interested in their technologies and their way of life. The two are busy making balloons inside the lab. Kirky is getting impatient waiting for them. Menville asks the principal to send a message to Henrietta to withdraw withdraw her troops from Albion, or the students will die. Osmond argues that he doesn't have much influence on the Queen, and she will end up ignoring him. Colbert and Hiraga arrive with the balloons that are filled with unknown substances. Colbert tells the kids that the balloons are his way of rescuing the students. They release the balloons into the cafeteria, and when everything explodes, it leaves a loud bang that disrupts the enemy's hearing and vision. Hiraga, Tabitha, Kerchie, Colbert, and Louise are able to infiltrate the room to try and rescue the students. A fight breaks out, but Menville doesn't seem to be affected by the effect of the balloons. He reveals that he doesn't even use his eyes again. He has evolved to the point where he now uses temperature to see like a snake. Menville grabs Kerchie and is about to burn her to death when a blue fire appears and blocks Menville's attack. It turns out that Colbert is Captain Flamesnake, whom Menville is talking about. Colbert tells Hiraga and Louise to rescue the students and get them out of there. Louise successfully uses an undo spell to remove the captive's binds. Agnes stands in total shock when he hears that Colbert is the foe he has been looking for. Colbert and Menville are fighting, but she keeps interfering in the fight because she wants to kill Colbert. She charges toward Colbert in a blinding rage. In the process of this, Menville directs his fire toward Agnes. In a bid to save Agnes, Colbert jumps in, saves Agnes from the scorching fire, and gets burnt instead. Colbert lies on the ground with his clothes ripped. Agnes sees a mark on his back, and this reminds her of the person who rescued her from the fire. Menville is ready to finish Colbert off, but Colbert is not going down without a fight. Colbert attacks Menville with his blue fire, but he manages to absorb the fire. Menville says he has been training for the day he will face Colbert again. Colbert no longer has the strength to fight, and he falls to the ground. Menville puts his staff in the air and cooks up a very bright, scary, and fierce fire. He is about to finish the spell when Agnes rushes over to him while he is vulnerable. She pushes her sword into him and ends Menville right there. Agnes turns to Colbert and asks him why he saved her. Hiraga and the rest of the kids rush over to hold their teacher. Agnes holds her sword in the air with the aim of ending Colbert. The kids beg her not to eliminate Colbert. Colbert tells the kids to allow Agnes to kill him. He has made a mistake in the past, and he deserves to atone for his sin. Colbert narrates that his unit of mercenaries was hired to wipe out the village because there is an epidemic rampaging it. Colbert and his men get there. Colbert shoots fire into the village without investigating. Minutes later, one of his men arrives to tell him that there is no sign of an epidemic in the village. Colbert realizes his mistake and runs into the fire to find survivors. This was when he saw Agnes in the fire. He risked his life to get her out of the fire. Since then, he has made the decision not to kill, and he doesn't want any of his students to end a life too. This is the reason he hates wars. He turns to Agnes and asks her to kill him. However, he begs her to make him the last person she will terminate. Agnes gets angrier as Colbert talks. Just then, Louise tells her to put down her weapon because Colbert has breathed his last. The following day, Agnes finds Hiraga at the hangar, where the jet fighter plane is parked. He gives him a letter they found in Colbert's place that was addressed to him. Louise collects the letter to read it to him. Colbert tells Hiraga through the letter to not lose himself in the war. He begs him not to take a life. He also stated in the letter that he would like to visit Hiraga's world one day. Hiraga's eyes are filled with tears as he hears the contents of the letter. Louise asks Agnes if she will be able to forgive Colbert, and she replies that she has no idea. After Agnes leaves the hangar, Louise and Hiraga hug each other and shed bitter tears. Later on, Henrietta invites Louise and Hiraga to Albion. She has a special mission for Louise. The general informs Louise of what they want from her. There is a large army resistance located in the south city of Gotha. The resistance will block their advance to Albion's capital. They need to get rid of the troops located in this area to have a clear chance of making it to the capital of Albion. Henrietta wants Louise to go over there and destroy the enemy forces with her void magic. Henrietta doesn't want the civilians to be caught in the line of fire, and this is the more reason she wants Louise to help out and make things easy for the soldiers who are planning to make their advance. After being briefed on all the necessary information, Louise accepts the mission and states her determination to serve the princess with all of her might and strength. Hiraga is shocked by Louise's willingness to serve the nation, even if it is at her own peril. Shortly afterward, the duo makes use of the jet fighter to fly over to their intended destination. Hiraga is angry that they were summoned to Albion just to be an instrument of war. They soon arrive at the military stronghold, and Louise begins to chant. Bright light shines around her as she chants her spell. Just then, she falls back into the plane. Delfinger reveals that Louise doesn't have the strength to wield the void magic for now. She had used all of her strength the last time she used the magic. Hiraga flies the aircraft over the target, but Louise tells her to turn back. She wants to try again. Her second trial is another failure. This has given the enemy Dragon Riders the time to gain on them. Hiraga is reluctant to shoot down the Dragon Riders because Colbert told him not to get used to killing. The Dragon Riders start to attack, and Hiraga has no choice but to return fire. He shoots down the Dragon Riders, but the aircraft has sustained damage already. They nose 5 into the snowy mountains. The duo is now in enemy territory. Later on, the general informs Henrietta that Louise and Hiraga have not returned from their mission. They no longer have a choice but to face the enemy head-on. Henrietta reluctantly gives him the go-ahead to march out the troops. Agnes asks Henrietta what she plans to do about Louise and Hiraga, but the princess has no reply for her. Louise and Hiraga are busy navigating the harsh, cold mountain together. They stop to spend the night. Hiraga suggests that they strip and hold each other tight so that they can survive the night, but Louise replies to him with a punch to the head. Hiraga passes out from the punch, and Louise gets scared that he is dead. She takes off her clothes and lies with him to keep him warm and cozy. The following morning, Hiraga wakes up feeling awesome. He wonders why this is so, and Dell informs him that Louise cuddled him through the night. Louise shuts Dell up before he can spill further. Meanwhile, Sheffield has ordered his men to retreat from Gotha and allow Tristane to take the city. However, she orders them to take away all the city's food supplies. She is very sure that the enemy troops will not last long without food. She also doesn't care if the citizens of the city starve to death. She is ready to sacrifice anyone to be victorious. She also tells her men to track down the aircraft that crashed into their territory. She doesn't care about the pilot, but she is interested in the machine itself. Up next, Hiraga and Louise run into one of the dragon riders that he shot down. He appears to be wounded. They decide to carry him to prevent him from dying out in the cold. The dragon rider fights Hiraga and his necklace flies off. Louis picks up the necklace and finds out there's a girl's picture on the pendant. The dragon rider doesn't want Hiraga to help him because he believes in honor. Hiraga lets him know that he will die if he doesn't allow them to help. Hiraga has never been the one to understand all the ideas concerning aristocracy and their honor. Louise also believes in the same thing the dragon rider does. They believe that it is an honor to serve their rulers. The dragon rider finally introduces himself as Henry. The trio continue to share their views concerning war, and Henry is impressed that Hiraga doesn't have the intention to kill. He calls him a strange one for that. The only reason Hiraga is fighting in this war is to protect his loved one, Louise. He is not ready to kill anyone for politics. Henry then reveals that the girl in the picture is his fiancée. He left just to come and fight in the war. Hiraga scolds him and calls him trash. He reminds him that he was human before he was an aristocrat. Louise tells him to return home and get married to the woman he loves. Moments later, Albion soldiers searching for the crashed aircraft pass by. Hiraga and Louise hide in the woods while Henry attends to the men. He tells them that the aircraft is on the other side of the mountain. Just then, a white dragon appears in the sky. It turns out to be Julio. He lands the dragon and he gets the two lovebirds out of there. They return to the base and Louise pledges her allegiance to Henrietta once again. She reveals her determination to do whatever the princess asks her to do. Hiraga could just stand there in total shock when he hears this. It is for the New Year's festival. Everyone in the city is celebrating. Louise and Hiraga end up arguing about who is right and wrong in the war. Louise gets angry and leaves Saito in the street. She makes her way to the palace where she meets with Henrietta. Henrietta has another mission for her and Hiraga, but Louise is the only one present. The general informs Louise that the two nations have agreed to a truce because it is the new year. However, the general doesn't trust Albion. They might want to carry out a surprise attack when least expected. Hiraga's aircraft has been recovered and the general wants the two lovebirds to fly to Albion's capital and spy on them. They want to know if they are making a move or not. The reason they can't send a dragon rider is to avoid accountability. If Louise and Hiraga are to fall into enemy territories and are captured, they can easily say that they are students who are just having fun. Without hesitation, Louise accepts the mission. She finds Hiraga, who is busy fixing the aircraft. She decides not to talk to him about the mission. She goes to Julio instead. She asks Julio for a favor. She wants him to take her to the capital of Albion. Hiraga sees her talking to Julio, and he gets jealous. He runs over to challenge her, but Louise doesn't care. Louise says she is going on a mission. Hiraga wants them to go together, but Louise refuses. He watches on as the duo flies away. As they head to their destination, Julio asks Louise why she doesn't care if she hurts Hiraga. Louise claims that Hiraga doesn't understand her. They have different views on the war. Hiraga makes his way back to town. While he is walking through the city, he runs into Siesta. He is surprised to see her in Albion. Siesta reveals that she came with her uncle. Just then, the uncle appears out of nowhere, and it is none other than Scarin. Scarin is surprised that Hiraga knows Siesta. He reveals that Siesta has been disturbing him concerning Hiraga. Meanwhile, Julio and Louise have made it to the enemy's capital. They are attacked by dragon riders, but Julio manages to evade them and head back home. Now in Goth, Hiraga is having a meal with Siesta and her relatives when Geach enters the room. He shows Hiraga his medal and boasts about it. He claims that the general gave him the medal as a reward for his accomplishments in the war. He considers this the greatest honor as an aristocrat. Louise returns to their room to find out that Hiraga is not at home. She and Dell start talking about Hiraga. Dell scolds her for not reciprocating the love Hiraga has been showing her. All she has been doing is whip him. Louise reveals that she appreciates Hiraga, but she finds it hard to tell him how she really feels. Dell suggests that Louise tell Hiraga how much she loves him, but she is not ready to do that. Dell even suggests that she propose to Hiraga, but she shuns the idea too. She is an aristocrat while Hiraga is a commoner, so it is quite quite impossible for her to woo Hiraga. Dell then scolds her for not willing to get down to show Hiraga how much she loves him. Dell suggests that Louise wear an attractive dress to get Hiraga's attention. Louise changes to an attractive dress and waits for Hiraga to come back home. Unfortunately, Hiraga returns home with Scarin and the rest of the group, leaving Louise embarrassed. They return to the tavern to continue the night. Siesta thinks of wearing an attractive dress to get Hiraga's attention too. She excuses herself, and when she comes back, she looks all appealing with her big bang. Louise gets jealous and tries to strip Siesta. She ends up pulling off her top to reveal her big melons to Hiraga. Elsewhere, Sheffield has polluted the city's water supply with the Unvari ring. She wants the soldiers to turn against each other. Back in the tavern, Hiraga argues with Giche about honor. He tells the group that it is not worth dying for a ruler. Louise gets angry and berates Hiraga. She says she is ready to die for Henrietta. The duo gets angry at each other and ends up going their separate ways. Siesta runs after Hiraga. She holds him and reveals her intentions. She wants them to stay together because she is feeling cold. Hiraga accepts and they go to a room together. Meanwhile, the soldiers have started acting weird. While they are together, Siesta tells Hiraga that she loves him. She draws him close and kisses him. Suddenly, a fight breaks out in the city. The soldiers turn against each other. An explosion hits the building where the princess is staying, which ends up killing the general. Siesta and Hiraga notice that there is a commotion outside. Siesta doesn't want him to go because she is not ready to lose him in someone's war. She gives Hiraga a sleeping potion. She tells him to add the potion to Louise's drink so she can sleep. The duo will have the opportunity to run away with this. Meanwhile, Louise is busy screaming through the city looking for Hiraga. Louise gets cornered by the soldiers, and she is about to be eliminated when Hiraga shows up and saves her. They find out that the enemy troops are also making their way into the city. Dragon Riders have stormed the city, and the city is in total chaos. By the following morning, Henrietta had successfully retreated to the port with her personal guards. The Cardinal is also with her. People are been taken away from dangers with ships. Henrietta has refused to leave till everyone has been taken away to safety. She plans to follow the last ship leaving the port. Now in the port city, Louise refuses to leave because she has been given a special mission by the Cardinal. He wants her to stay back and be the rear guard. It wasn't an order, but a request. The Cardinal is thinking about the princess's safety, and Louise doesn't hesitate before accepting the task. Hiraga is shocked when he hears this. He cannot believe that Louise is willing to sacrifice herself again. She is so particular about honor that she is ready to do anything to uphold her honor. Louise tells Hiraga to leave her. She doesn't want him to die for her own cause. With tears in the eyes, she says goodbye to Hiraga. Hiraga accepts to leave, but insists that they make a toast first. While he is trying to open the bottle, Louise sums up the courage to tell him that she wants to get married to him. She wants her marriage to Hiraga to be the last thing she does before dying. Hiraga accepts her proposal. They go to a shop to buy a special flower that is meant for lovers. After this, they make their way to a church to get married. Hiraga pours the drink for them and he spikes Louise's drink with the sleeping potion that Siesta gave him earlier. They drink together. The duo face the altar to say their vows. Hiraga tells Louise that he loves her, but she finds it hard to say it back. The flowers they bought bloom together at the same time